city an hour ago near Chioting University. The girl looked surprised when she was approached and politely asked to go out, then she asked again. The guy in the shirt put his hands in his pockets when his friends asked what else it could mean when talking about people of different genders, and then asked her to just say yes already, because they were a perfect couple. The man lifted one finger when he said that he knew she was a little confused, but asked her to look around, because now she was standing in the middle of his heart, strewn with 999 roses, and then asked how she felt about it, and whether she thought it was very romantic. Flowers were laid out around the people. Amanda was in front of the guy when she asked him to wait, then he exclaimed that this was not all, that there was something else. Bob opened the box containing the jewelry as he explained that it was a magic crystal that he had been trying hard to get from the dungeon. The ring was shown up close as he added that if he sold it, it would be worth at least 200,000, and that he had stayed there specifically to propose and give it to her. Amanda's face sweated as she asked if he had really been in the dungeon, and she thought about how this place was not for mere mortals. Bob stood in front of her as he answered that he had, and then asked if she could not see who he was, and then said that he was proud to say that no one in the entire Chioting University could enter the dungeon except him. The girl looked at the hooded stranger, who politely asked her to leave. The protagonist sat down near the roses when he said that there was a bending angle of the curve and that this flower should be placed in that direction. Then the men began to discuss who this guy was, suggesting that perhaps he was the boss's new friend. Bob was holding a box in his hands when he exclaimed that she should understand his sincerity, so he would stop talking in hints. The guy handed the ring to the protagonist, who thought that it would be better that way. The young man in the shirt bent down, standing in front of Joseph, when he politely asked to accept his love. Sweat appeared on the brunette's face. They were watched from the side, wondering what this guy was doing. Bob looked at the protagonist in confusion, who asked if he really told him that. The angry man threw the box on the ground when he asked who he was. Then the protagonist decided to say his name. After that the guy asked about who was interested in his name, and that he did not see what he was doing. Bob looked ahead carefully. There was no one in the girl's place, so he wondered where she had gone. In front of the young man were his guilty comrades, whom he asked about whether he had not told them to look, and then said that she had run away without warning him, to which they replied that this stranger had blocked her, and that he had suddenly appeared, so that they began to look at him, and did not see Amanda. Joseph looked ahead with disdain when he said that the form that had been recently established had been broken again. The box was lying among the flowers when he asked how the confession could be successful if everything was so neglected. The protagonist bent down, reaching for the roses. Bob gritted his teeth in anger when he thought about the guy being sick. He slapped the protagonist in the face when he told him to stop. Joseph looked surprised. He fell to the ground. Bob walked up to him, exclaiming that if he was that sick he should go get treatment, and that he shouldn't have gone there and done that, then adding that he could see that he was looking for death. The protagonist's mouth dropped open as he asked him to stop, explaining that he was just trying to help. He kicked him. Bob's comrades ran forward, calling for the boy to be beaten to death for daring to ruin everything. The protagonist lay in a pool of blood as the boy asked him how he dared to ruin his plans, adding that he would beat him up every time he saw him. Bob's lackeys were by his side when they asked if this was too much, and if he would die from it. Then someone replied that the boy was not moving and seemed to be truly dead, after which their boss said that this world had changed a long time ago, and that the law meant nothing to him even if he was dead. The mob of villains passed by the body of the young man when they were told to leave. Joseph's face was bruised when he thought about dying. His hand was shown when the boy thought about the pain and cold, and also about how he could not even move his fingers. Suddenly his pupils narrowed greatly, then he suddenly did not feel pain. A glow appeared above his body, then he decided that it was a hallucination. The protagonist looked up intently, then the system notifications about loading and about the fact that a check had begun appeared, and also that the results of the biological check showed that this was a local Earth species with no capabilities, and that the original parameters of the genes remained intact. A window of the system appeared above the beaten boy when it confirmed the owner and asked if he wanted to restore the damaged functions of his body. Behind Amanda, there were guards running as she asked them to hurry up, explaining that someone had just gotten in her way and given her the opportunity to escape, and then she saw that a fight had broken out and one of them had been badly beaten, so she asked them to hurry and save him, otherwise something bad might happen. There were flowers and candles in front of the girl, as she exclaimed that it was there. Her pupils narrowed. There was a heart of roses in front of the people, as she realized that there was no one there. The guards were standing behind her, looking around, as they asked the lady if she was sure that they were there, as there was no one there now, to which she replied that they definitely were, as the flowers and candles were still there. The man with glasses opened his mouth slightly as he suggested that they had most likely left already, and that it was okay, that they had left the flowers and candles, and that there were no blood stains, so it couldn't be that serious. Amanda looked at the escort who told her that it was time for them to go back and that if there really was such a thing they would find out about it tomorrow, so she agreed with him. The girl looked away when she asked about how many times she told them not to call her mistress since she was a university student. Amanda crossed her arms when they agreed with her, calling her that again. The girl frowned when she repeated that she told them not to call her that, so they responded in kind. Clouds were floating across the night sky. A light was on in the window of the building. The guy was sitting on the bed. He frowned at the system window and said that he had been seeing this for a long time and he couldn't get rid of it. In front of him was a system window that said that he had one new notification that he needed to check. The protagonist was lying on the floor when he realized that even if he was hiding under the bed, it was appearing right from under the sheets. The protagonist covered himself with a blanket when he exclaimed that he always sees it floating in front of his eyes. Joseph grabbed his head when he wondered why it was there. Because all pop-up windows in the browser can be closed. But it does not work like that. The brunette covered his eyes with his hands when he said that even if he does so, he still sees it, which is still next to him. Many system windows were shown. The protagonist opened his mouth when he shouted that he would look and asked to stop bothering him. Then the system reported that he had fully restored his body, completed the setup and can view his status and skills. In front of the young man was a pop-up window saying that he can now close the interface. The protagonist closed his eyes when he asked to remove it. He opened his mouth slightly and exhaled. Joseph lay down on the bed near the window. He covered his eyes with his hand when he said that it finally disappeared and that he already had a headache. The protagonist opened his eyes when he asked himself what it really was. He remembered being hit and how it appeared and said that when he was being hit it was so clear that it couldn't have been his imagination and that he saw it then and was saved. The protagonist was lying in bed looking up. He was sitting on the edge of the bed when he exclaimed that it was back and the system informed him that he had 3 new notifications to check. Joseph touched his hair when he said that it was already annoying him and then asked to open it. Several system windows appeared in front of the boy when he decided that if he looked at them he could close them. The protagonist rubbed the bridge of his nose when he realized that his eyes were now hurting, deciding that he would go straight to bed without taking a shower. The protagonist stared straight ahead when he asked what it was. The boy tried to smile when he said that it was probably his imagination and that if he slept it would definitely go away, and then went to sleep. The boy's bed was next to the window. Joseph was lying with his eyes closed. His face was shown close up. The exhausted boy opened his eyes, cursing and ordering it to close. The protagonist's mouth opened wide. He sat up in bed when he asked why it wasn't going away, and then gave up, deciding that he would see what was wrong. The protagonist looked unimpressed when he looked at the notification, which said that there was one task for a newbie and that he needed to complete it. Joseph put his finger on the system window when he asked to return to the previous interface, which said that he was currently on the verge of survival, and that his current level was 0 and his ability to withstand danger was close to 0, so he needed to level up faster, and there was a task listed there, which was to master combat skills, specifically the novice left uppercut. And a warning that improving his physical fitness would speed up the completion of tasks, improving his perception would help speed up the leveling up, and he would receive a reward for completing the novice task. The protagonist looked forward with displeasure when he thought about not completing it and that he couldn't bear it. The application icons were shown as the boy thought about how he hated these unfinished task reminders since he was a child, and unread messages were too annoying for him, which is why he doesn't have WeChat or QQ, but in the case of this thing, he doesn't know where it came from or how to delete it. The boy closed his eyes. The protagonist lowered his eyelids as he said that it seemed like he had no choice. Joseph stood up straight as he added that if he completed this task, everything would be fine. A shadow fell on the boy's face as he wondered if this wasn't just a basic level, and why it was bothering him so much. The protagonist clenched his fist as he thought about how strange it was that as soon as he stood up, he felt a strange power filling his hands. The protagonist raised his limb up as he realized that the power, angle, and pose of the blow were instantly formed in his mind, and that it was incredible, but he didn't care about leveling up. Joseph looked forward with determination as he thought about how he would not allow this unfinished quest status to keep appearing in front of his eyes. The youth frowned as he looked ahead as he concluded that he would never allow this. A window was shown. Soon, the night turned into day. Drops were visible on the floor. The protagonist placed his hands on his knees, breathing heavily. A system window appeared in front of him as he asked about how he did, then he was informed that his left uppercut proficiency had reached 10%. The protagonist leaned forward as he exclaimed that he would continue, thinking about how he hated leaving things unfinished, and how if he couldn't complete a quest, he wouldn't even start it, and if he had already started it, he would finish it. The sun shone on the Chunzen High School building. The girl was holding a piece of paper in her hand when she told the boy that he got 0 points on his English exam again, and then asked him why he didn't want to work hard in his English lessons. The other students were watching them when Joseph answered that he wanted to study math and that he didn't have time for English. Then Kate countered by saying that he had already gotten 140 points on his math exam and that he was already the best in the class. Then the boys thought that they were arguing again. The brunette's eyes were closed when he answered that it wasn't the maximum score, so it didn't matter that he was the best in the class and that he would only be happy when he got the maximum result. The girl looked ahead with delight when she warned him that if he continued like this, his English teacher would start bothering him, and then asked him about coming to her after school so that she could help him brush up on the language. The protagonist opened his palm as he exclaimed that it was not necessary, and that until he got a perfect score in one subject, he would not be able to study the others. Kate puffed out her cheeks. The rays of light reflected off the window as someone announced a delivery. The delivery man stood in front of the protagonist as he said that the punching bag he ordered had been delivered and then asked him to sign for it, asking if he wanted to use the installation service they could provide, to which the boy replied no, and then thanked him, explaining that he was not used to people entering his house. The boy stood next to the projectile. Joseph clenched his fists. He punched the punching bag. The facade of the building was shown 3 days later. The boy was lying on the floor, breathing heavily. There were abrasions on his arm. The protagonist touched his hair, smiling as he said that it must be 100% already. A system window appeared in front of him, stating that his left uppercut proficiency had been raised to 300%, and that the requirement to reach the 10th stage to advance to the next level had been met, and he exclaimed that he should have said that earlier, and then wondered if 300% wasn't enough. The protagonist turned towards the door when someone spoke to him, asking if he was home, and if everything was okay, since he hadn't been to school for a few days. The boy approached the door when he replied that he was coming. The pink hair of a classmate appeared. Kate clenched her fists, and looked up when she wondered why he was only coming out now. Joseph looked tired, so she asked why his face was so pale, adding that he looked like all the life had been sucked out of him. The girl held her falling comrade. Kate looked at him sheepishly and called his name. The protagonist opened his mouth slightly when he said that he was very hungry. His friend looked away, saying nothing. Clouds were floating in the sky. Roofs of buildings were visible in the distance. The sign with the name of the cafe was shining brightly. The students were sitting opposite each other when the girl said that he was organized even when hungry and that he should eat, then he asked to wait a minute. There was food on the tray. The protagonist began to eat very quickly. The classmate propped her head up with her hands when she thought that he was the same as always. There was dirty packaging on the tray. Joseph put his hand on his stomach when he said that he was overeating. He extended his hand to Kate when he thanked her for inviting him to eat, otherwise he would have starved to death, and then asked how he could repay her. Then the girl asked him to forget about it, then wondered if they weren't close enough not to worry about it. Then he countered by saying that, however, she knew he didn't like to be in debt. The friend looked up thoughtfully when she asked for time. Kate looked away attentively when someone exclaimed that it had dropped it, wondering if the machine had broken down. The girl stood with her back to her friends, asking if she couldn't give her at least one. Then the classmate asked the protagonist how about if he could get something. Then she would consider his debt repaid. Then he asked her again and agreed. They headed towards the stranger, who cursed when she realized it had fallen again. The brunette looked at the side carefully. The protagonist's body was enveloped in energy when she thought about how powerful his aura was and how he must be a master. Joseph's pupils narrowed greatly. He placed his hands on the control panel. A bunch of stuffed animals were shown. The girl looked at one with a smile when she exclaimed that it was incredible, and that he had done it on the first try. The toy fell, then the stranger said that she was very sorry. Kate winked when she objected, explaining that it was no problem and that she should watch and learn. The toys were arranged in a row 5 minutes later. The brunette looked displeased when she asked what he was even doing, wondering if he was just lining them up and what was the point if they couldn't even be pulled out. The protagonist looked away when he asked which one she liked. The girl with pink hair drew her eyebrows together when she mentally encouraged him, saying that was it. The guy touched the controls when he said he understood. The device grabbed the eared toy. The girls watched what was happening when the stranger advised to point it a little to the left. The pink toy hung in the air. The protagonist frowned deeply. The girls watched with delight as the prize moved. It suddenly fell out of the device. The toys hit each other. They all fell out of the machine. Then someone exclaimed that there were so many of them. Joseph and Kate touched hands when the brunette said that it was just incredible. Someone touched the toy. The boy's classmate winked again when she said that she would take this one and give the rest to her. The dark-haired stranger smiled widely when she asked if it was true, and then thanked them. Dusk fell on the city. The protagonist walked next to his friend. The girl looked at the toy with warmth when she addressed him. She pursed her lips. Kate's mouth was slightly open, looking away when she said that she heard that Bob beat him up, and then suggested that this was why he hadn't been going to school lately. The protagonist's eyes were closed when he replied that it was nothing serious, and that he shouldn't think about it. They stopped in front of the building when he added that they were there, and that he would not be going up with her. Joseph smiled, looking away as he told the girl to relax, saying that he would come to school tomorrow. He had his back to Kate as he said goodnight. His classmate was holding a stuffed animal. She looked away, squinting. The city buildings of the next day were shown. 3 boys were standing near a wall. Bob started to light a cigarette when his lackey said that he heard that the boy the boss beat up did not die, but had not been to school for a few days. Then he was told that he was smart, and that if he came, he would kill him. The villain with the cigarette in his mouth looked forward when he was asked if he was the one who bullied Joseph. Kate put her hands on her hips when she said that she was warning him never to cause him trouble again. The men silently looked in the same direction. Their mouths dropped open as they laughed, wondering who she thought she was to warn them, adding that the girl was brave. Bob walked towards Kate as he addressed her and advised her to understand that the consequences of her threatening him would be severe. The pink-haired girl frowned as he added that he saw that she was nice, so he would forgive her this time. Bob loomed over Joseph's friend, smirking as he concluded that she should come and play with them. Clouds were flying over the dome of the school. Two boys appeared in front of the protagonist. They looked askance at the protagonist, saying that he was the one who angered Bob and got beaten half to death, and that he really came back to school. There was a symbol on the sign. Joseph was standing in front of a mirror. He covered his mouth with his hand. His eyes reflected the system window, which indicated that the beginner's task had been completed, and that as a reward, perception and physical fitness had been increased by 1%, and a beginner's rank glove had been received. Bob and his friends were heading towards the guy when he said that he was unlucky. He looked at the protagonist with satisfaction when he realized that this was the same fool, adding that he was exactly what he was thinking about. There were 5 people in front of the protagonist when their boss exclaimed that he did not expect to see him there, and that the world really is a small place. Joseph looked forward in concentration when he thought about them being there to anger him again. The boy's eye was shown close up when he asked the villain where he got the doll from. The bald guy was holding the toy in his hand. There were blood stains on it when the guy asked if it was true that it was not from a slot machine. Bob smirked as he looked ahead as he informed him that he was there to talk to him about the doll and that it seemed like he had asked a friend to help him. The protagonist's eyes widened as he realized that it was indeed Kate's doll. The protagonist looked at the fist of the guy who called him names. Bob thrust his hand forward as he exclaimed that he thought it was time for him to die. Joseph deftly dodged the attack. His pupils narrowed as he considered that it was a mediocre punch. Bob was in front of the protagonist. His foot was planted on the floor. The protagonist got into a fighting stance. The disgruntled guy gritted his teeth as he asked if he still wanted to fight. Bob's mouth opened wide as he ordered his minions to grab him. The bastards rushed towards Joseph, calling for him to finish him off. The dark-haired youth looked ahead indifferently. Bob and his comrades clenched their fists as they wished death upon the protagonist. The protagonist bent his arm, standing sideways. He delivered a precise blow to the opponent's face. He threw his head back, spitting out blood. Bob flew back from the force of the blow. The boys opened their mouths in surprise as they asked how he dared to touch him. The angry brunette rushed forward, clenching his fists. The bodies of his opponents lay in front of him as he said that she better be okay, because otherwise he would finish them off. Bob opened one eye as he replied that he had misunderstood everything, and then spoke about this girl. The guy was lying on the floor, his arms stretched out in front of him. The bastard was in front of Kate last night, when he called her a little girl and suggested that she play with her brothers. She looked forward from under her brows, smirking. The girl kicked Bob in the face. The school building was illuminated by the sun. The students were sitting at their desks. Kate grabbed her head when she asked herself how she could have lost it, then she was asked if something was missing. The pink-haired girl put her head in her hands when she answered that a very important doll was missing and that it was in her bag when she came to school. The brunette brought her hand to her mouth when she turned to Kate, saying that some guy was looking for her. Joseph was waiting in the hallway. The girl blushed when she shouted his name. The guys watched their friend run away, who exclaimed that he came, then they wondered if it was really her and who this man was. The main character stood in front of her when she asked what she could do for him, then he answered that he heard that she was looking for Bob last night and that she should not worry about it anymore, assuring that she would be fine. He had a toy in his hand when he asked his girlfriend to take it, not to look for it or lose it again. Kate smiled contentedly when she asked where he found it. The protagonist looked down when he warned her that he would not be able to find it again if she lost it again. The girl turned her head to the side when she answered that she did not care. She opened her eyes slightly when she thought that he was pretending well. Joseph stood with his back to her when he said that he was leaving. A system notification appeared in front of the dark-haired guy, which said that he had moved to a new level, and that the next stage of the task would open soon, so he was strongly advised to check for updates in a timely manner. Then the young man said that he understood and told him to check. The protagonist put his hands behind his head when the system asked him to complete the intermediate combined training, then he began to swear and call her names. Light was reflected from the dome of the sports center. Men were hitting the equipment in the boxing gym. The fist hit the bag when the protagonist thought about the fact that combination punches were indeed much more difficult than a regular left uppercut, but he had it mastered 300%. In front of the guy was a punching bag. When the system reported that his perception was improved and his strength increased, then he decided that he would practice the right uppercut, and then he would master combination punches. Joseph looked ahead with a frown, thinking about his energy returning, and about his body recovering very quickly from exhaustion and his perception becoming better. Then the system windows with his characteristics appeared. The young man looked at the drops in front of him, thinking that he began to worry more about these characteristics, and maybe his obsessive-compulsive disorder had also worsened, and that no matter what the purpose was, it would kill him if he did not end it. The girls were watching the protagonist, commenting on how he trains day and night, and how 3 days had passed. Then someone asked who he was, noting that the young man was very determined, after which another exclaimed that he was very handsome and that she loved pushy guys. The man with a bare chest hit the bag. He looked away carefully. Bill frowned deeply when he wondered where this scoundrel came from, adding that he was just a poser. The protagonist glared at the punching bag. The guy in the glove touched the bag. Joseph looked amazed. The muscular man was in front of him when he addressed the protagonist, saying that he was doing it wrong. Bill put his hands on his waist when he explained that seeing how hard he worked, he was forced to teach him real boxing. Then it was explained that he was the first Akita champion in this sport. The protagonist closed his eyes when the system reported that the right uppercut skill was mastered at 70%. Then the guy explained that he needed to train and asked not to waste his time. Joseph hit the projectile in front of the boxer. The man gritted his teeth when he asked about the fact that he really refused, and then called him an arrogant boy and advised him not to regret it later. A school building was shown. There were hieroglyphs on the plate. Amanda was playing a musical instrument. She was sitting with her back to her. The girl's eyes were closed. A man appeared from her side, who turned to the lady, saying that they found something. Then she asked if he really forgot that he should not call her that. The man adjusted his cap when he asked her for forgiveness, and told her that he found the man she was talking about, and that his name was Joseph. Amanda smiled when she asked where he was. The dome of the gym was shown. The protagonist was standing in front of Bill, who wondered if the guy thought he wasn't good enough to teach him, or if he was challenging him, and then offered to wrestle him so he could show him what real power was. The protagonist pointed to himself when he asked if he was going to fight him. The boxer slammed his fists together when he answered that he didn't want to fight, but to teach. The audience looked worried when they realized they were going to fight, and that he was a professional fighter, and then wondered who his opponent was, and someone said they knew, and that he was a weirdo with obsessive-compulsive disorder. Amanda stepped forward when someone asked if it wasn't her, assuming she was there to watch the fun. Joseph was standing next to the brunette when the girl thought that she was absolutely sure it was him. Amanda looked away as she wondered how he would handle the professional, deciding that he had gotten himself into trouble, and that although the man was kind and trustworthy, he was incredibly straightforward and stubborn, and could easily get hurt. Bill smirked, looking away as he realized that the school's crown jewel was there, and that he had to show himself. His muscular back was shown. The boxer swung, gritting his teeth. The protagonist crossed his arms, defending himself. Bill punched him. The boy looked ahead in confusion as he thought about what had happened, and that it felt like he was punching cotton wool. Then the system alerts appeared, stating that a 30-second defense had been activated, and that he needed to complete training exercises and achieve 80% progress in intermediate combinations. The protagonist smiled, looking ahead as he exclaimed that true progress was only possible during battle, and that he had changed his mind, and then challenged his opponent to defeat him. Bill's cheeks blushed as he questioned him, and wondered what he was saying. The girls looked ahead attentively as one of them said that the atmosphere was a little delicate. Amanda looked thoughtful as she considered that, as far as she knew, a wrestler had enough strength to kill a strong cow with one blow, and this guy not only withstood his blow, but also mocked him, concluding that he seemed strong. A smile appeared on her face as she said that it was very interesting. Dark shapes appeared as someone shouted that it was quite noisy out there. The girl looked away attentively. Joseph's eyes widened. Bill's mouth fell open, frowning. The man in the green shirt clenched his fists when he asked if they were fighting. Then it was revealed that his name was Klaus. The guy with dreadlocks looked ahead when he exclaimed that he wanted to too. There was a car parked outside the building. The half-naked man was sitting on the couch when someone approached him and asked him to help him with something. Then he asked again and asked if there was a reward. Bob was holding a box when he asked how he could forget about it, since it was about his pride. Then he added that if he helped him deal with one guy, the ring would be his. Klaus looked at the jewelry when he realized that it had a magical crystal in it. Then he wondered where he got it, since even he had a hard time getting it. Then he assumed that he was taking him for a fool and hoping that he would fall for it. Bob's face sweated as he explained that he bought it for $200,000 on the underground black market specifically to show his respect for him, and that he heard that it was stolen from the Fan family, assuring him that he knew it. The man with dreadlocks opened his mouth wide as he laughed, and called him honest. Klaus hugged the guy and agreed, saying that he would fix it. Then the guy said that it hurt, and thanked him. Clouds floated across the sky. The large dome of the hall was shown. The audience opened their mouths when they started talking about the man in front being Klaus and his gang, and how the one who offended him was already a corpse. Then the girl asked why they came to school, since they were street thugs. After that someone asked for security. Bill put his hand to his chest when he thought about how he was the only one who could protect everyone when there was a crisis on the strong side, and then turned to the leader of the bandits, saying that if he had something to say to him, then he shouldn't embarrass the others. Klaus stuck his finger in his ear when he asked who he was and told him to disappear. The man with dreadlocks looked ahead arrogantly when he asked which one of them was Joseph, and then told him to get out, because someone had paid $200,000 for his life. The boxer looked towards the protagonist. Sweat was pouring down the protagonist's face when he asked if they were really looking for him. Joseph stood in front of the bandit, who asked if that was really his name. The protagonist stared ahead when he asked what they wanted from him and if it was true that they weren't from their campus, assuming that they were there to show off. Klaus looked ahead with disdain as he replied that he honestly didn't want to cause trouble, but no one could resist the dungeon's magic crystal. Amanda looked shocked when she realized it was the ring. The protagonist was shown in profile as he realized what was going on, thinking that Bob had hired him. The thugs with bats appeared when their leader ordered them to surround him and not let him escape, and they responded that they understood. The villains stood on either side of the boy. Bill appeared in front of Joseph when he reminded him that this was school grounds and warned him that he would not allow other students to get involved in this, concluding that he could fight him if he wanted. The man's mouth fell open and he clicked his tongue. He kicked the boxer in the chest and told him to shut up. Blood began to flow from the boy's mouth and nose. The people present looked shocked as they shouted that it was cruel and mean and that it was also possible to kill. Klaus swung his fists. Someone stopped his hand. The protagonist glared ahead as he cursed and asked him to stop, asking why someone was always trying to drag him into trouble and if there was some misunderstanding, and then suggested that they just sit down and talk. The bandit leader was shown in profile as he wondered if he was chickening out. He pulled out a weapon from his belt as he exclaimed that in that case he should ask his club if it wanted to talk to him. Klaus swung the bat in front of him. The protagonist deftly dodged his attacks. Joseph looked up as he thought about how hard it would be to handle him. The man gritted his teeth as he said that he was quite flexible. The clothes on his body were torn. Klaus' eyes were closed as he asked him to see if he could dodge it again. A glowing weapon appeared. The protagonist looked forward in surprise. The boy's mouth dropped open as he asked if it had gotten bigger. Amanda's eyes widened as someone asked what was going on. Klaus held the spear out in front of him. Ben looked at the lady, who asked him if he thought he was a gifted person, to which she was told that there was indeed a change in the force, but he had not fully awakened his abilities. Humanoid monsters were shown as it was explained that several decades ago the world suddenly changed and various monsters began to appear. A serpent with a human body towered over the people as it was explained that some began to discover superpowers in themselves to defeat the monsters and that they were called gifted. The dark-haired boy flexed his arm when it was explained that this power could only be awakened once, and that it was divided into S, A, B, C, D, E, and F ranks. The blonde man sat on the throne when it was told that, in addition, a gifted who reached the S rank was able to become the supreme ruler of all mankind, surpassing all the ruling classes, and that thus the era of martial arts had come to the world again. The man placed his hand on his chest when Klaus thought about how he was supposed to be the bearer of the power, and how a traveling sorcerer had told him that as long as he became stronger, he would be able to go beyond the capabilities of gifted, concluding that it was a pity that he was too skinny and ended up waking up there. However, even so, the power of awakening granted him a strong physique and the ability to strengthen weapons. A light aura enveloped the boy with dreadlocks. He opened his mouth wide as he called the boy a brat, exclaiming that it was his time to die. A stream of blue energy rushed towards the protagonist. Bill sat on the floor as he thought about what he had heard about Klaus's power, and how he couldn't move a finger, and how he didn't expect Joseph to take the challenge so decisively, and how he could handle something he couldn't handle. The boxer frowned, opening his mouth as he advised the boy to run, warning him that they were going to kill him. The spear flew past the protagonist. The protagonist looked forward with determination. He extended his hand towards the opponent. The brunette stopped in front of him, knocking his weapon away. The bandit's pupils narrowed as he asked how it happened. The protagonist swung his fist. Bill remembered his attack as he realized that he had adopted his fighting style. Joseph hit the opponent in the chest. The man's eyes went blank. The brunette broke the spear when the system reported that he had completed the intermediate combination training at 100%. The protagonist dealt Klaus blow after blow when the system notification appeared that he had completed this training at 200%, and that perception had increased by 1, and physical fitness by 2%. The man's back was shown. The leader of the bandits flew back from the force of the guy's blow. The protagonist looked from under his brows when he exhaled, after completing the training at 300%. Klaus gritted his teeth in pain when he wondered how a mere mortal could hurt him. His pupils narrowed greatly when he assumed that he was one of them. The comrades held the leader's body when they asked if he was okay, and then suggested that they all beat the young man to death. Then he called them fools, asking about how they could afford to get involved with someone who had real strength. The dreadlocked man looked forward with concern when he asked if the guy was from the fan family. The protagonist stood up straight when he asked what kind of family it was, then replied that he had no idea and gave his name. Klaus covered one eye when he suggested that his friends leave there, since he had lost. The bandits headed for the exit. The protagonist touched the projectile when the boxer thought about how strong he was. Amanda looked at the guy with a smile, thinking about how he was hiding his strength and how interesting he was. The girl went towards the exit when she asked Ben to keep an eye on him, explaining that she wanted to know how many more secrets he had. Then he replied that he was listening. People crowded in the center of the hall when they started talking about how there was finally order and how they should rest. The bandits were walking down the street when Klaus cursed and exclaimed that he had met a prodigy. Then his comrade asked what a man with such abilities was doing in a normal university, and that the leadership shouldn't be unified. The boys looked back when they were politely asked to wait. The man showed his badge when he assumed he knew what it meant. The man with dreadlocks looked surprised when he shouted that he was from the Fong family, thinking about how he had once dreamed of entering their house, but was rejected because he was not fully awakened, and how they really wanted to invite him today. The man in the suit held up a badge as he told the thug that he had used his power in front of normal people and had done many vile things, and that he had thus broken the rules of the Awakening Association, summing up that since he had not yet fully awakened, it was only a warning, and then asked if he realized that if he did this again, he would lose his powers completely. There was a blue sky above the building. People were walking past the houses. A hooded boy was shown as a classmate greeted him. Amanda smiled kindly as she explained that she wanted to thank him for his help. The protagonist looked scared as he recognized her. He took a step back. The protagonist gritted his teeth as he asked who she was. The girl closed her eyes as she thought about the face he made as if he had seen something vile. The brunette tucked her hair behind her ear as she said her name, adding that today in the small park, thanks to him, she was able to escape. Joseph's face was sweating. Her cleavage was showing as he realized that her neckline was asymmetrical. The boy looked away in horror. He grabbed his hand as he exclaimed that he had to hold back and that he couldn't do it. Amanda looked worried as she called him by name. The protagonist opened his mouth and screamed that he couldn't stand it. He touched the girl's shoulder. Her face turned very red. She slapped her classmate in the face. Amanda looked embarrassed as she called him a scoundrel and asked him what he was doing. Someone was watching them from behind the bushes. The men with glasses were sitting next to each other as one called the guy names, threatening to kill him, then the other asked him to calm down, because the lady didn't call them, so they should wait. The protagonist was in front of a girl who asked him how he dared to touch her, adding that if he hadn't helped her then, the conversation would have been different. Then he asked her to stop. Joseph put his hand to his face when he asked her to stop dressing like that. The flushed girl glared forward when she replied that what she wore was none of his business, and then asked what that expression was, summing up that she didn't let him touch her, and that he made her angry. Amanda turned her head to the side when she said that since he helped her once, she would give him a chance to explain himself. The guy had his back to her when he asked her not to appear in front of him like that. The girl was engulfed in flames when she said that he was definitely hitting on her and looked at her with disgust, and that no one had ever treated her like that, and then exclaimed that she was furious. The guards appeared behind her and asked if she would order them to kill him, assuring them that they would handle it in a jiffy. Then she explained that there was no need to kill him and that they should keep an eye on him, to which they agreed. The protagonist was walking down the street. He closed his eyes and sneezed when the system notifications appeared, saying that his perception had increased by 2% and his fitness by 1. The protagonist touched his nose when he said that he felt like he was cursed. A system window appeared in front of him with his current progress. Then he thought about how real combat has its advantages, and how when he beat those guys, his stats improved to 300%, but after that, he was given the task to improve his sidekick. A new system window appeared, when he thought about something he was used to, and how he would try to get over it as soon as possible. Joseph looked at the people behind him, thinking that he had also recently noticed something important, namely that his perception level was much higher than normal people. The brunette brought the phone to his ear when the boy suggested that maybe it was all about his obsessive-compulsive disorder, and that the stronger it was, the sharper his perception was and the faster he increased his level. There was a grasshopper sitting on the ground. It jumped high into the air. The protagonist looked at the insect when he thought about what he had also discovered, that by using perception, he could instantly learn new skills through simple observation, like that guy's punch, and that thanks to this, his skill could improve many times, concluding that there seemed to be no limits and he could increase 100% several times in a row. The boy put his hand behind his back when he decided that if he continued to train, he could even complete the 300% plan. The protagonist jumped high into the air, thinking that he had no idea what this system was or what it wanted from him, but he believed that by doing its tasks he would be able to go beyond it, free himself from pop-up notifications, and breathe deeply. The guy jumped over the high fence. Joseph looked pleased when he realized that in order to finish this task, he needed to prepare very well, and that right now he should use his heightened perception to master various skills, and then he would complete all the tasks much faster. There was a dark sky above the house. The brunette kicked the projectile. The protagonist was in the shower at 8 in the morning. The floor was shining with cleanliness after 10 minutes. An extension cord was shown. Someone marked what they had done with a pen. There was a to-do list on the wall in front of the guy. The protagonist was standing near the door when he exhaled and thought about his obsessive-compulsive disorder getting worse. He approached the elevator. An old woman turned to him and asked if he was going to school, and then advised him to make sure he locked the door before leaving. Sweat appeared on Joseph's face when he wondered if he did it. The guy quickly ran away from the old woman. The protagonist touched the wall while at school. He looked ahead as he thought that after all this, it was a blessing to be outside. Muscular men appeared in front of him. The protagonist frowned as he looked ahead as he wondered what Bill wanted. The boy clenched his fist. The men bowed to Joseph and greeted him, calling him boss. The boxer looked at the boy with admiration and informed him that the members of their club had unanimously chosen him as the new leader. The boy placed his hand on his shoulder. A happy Bill was behind the protagonist as he exclaimed that from now on, he hoped that he would always lead them in the fighting world to new heights. The men extended their hands to the protagonist, calling him boss and asking him to teach them how to fight. Joseph began to run away from them as he told them to leave him alone. Kate looked ahead with a smile as she greeted him. She looked after the running boy. The boys watched the chase as the boy asked who it was, and with such a large retinue, the girl wondered if it was the heir of the 4 families that she had heard about. The protagonist hid around the corner as he wondered when he had become so unlucky. He looked ahead carefully as someone said his name. The unfamiliar men stood up straight as they greeted him, explaining that they were the envoy of the Fan family, and that in this area of S City, they represented the Awakening Association, and that news had reached them today that he was the new awakened huntsman. The man held a black card in his hands as he added that they would like to invite him to join the training squad, and then invited him to join their huntsman. Then it was revealed that in order to find and protect the treasures of the dungeon, the Fan family had gathered their army. The protagonist was in front of the stranger when he asked him again, then he said that he must have a lot of questions. The mustachioed man presented the silhouette of a monster when he explained that in this world, rangers and ordinary people are very different, and that after what happened several decades ago, humanity lived in a fake world created by the state, thinking it was calm and safe, and also that the young man thought so before his awakening, but if he joined the ranks of rangers, he will understand that this is not so. A shadow fell on the brunette's face. Joseph brought the card to his head when he asked about what he would get in return. The messenger's lips were closed. A guy with a chest appeared behind him. The protagonist looked at something shining in amazement. The box contained daggers when the guy thought about the perfect gradient, sorting by size, and that he had never experienced such feelings before. The protagonist took the chest when he answered that he does not use throwing knives, then he was asked to return them. Joseph looked at the stranger, who asked if this could be considered consent, to which he replied that he would think about it. The protagonist took a step forward. His foot passed through space. Blue energy appeared under his shoe. The protagonist was holding the chest in his hands when the system advised him to be careful, as energy fluctuations were detected around, adding that he should prepare for battle. The brunette looked to the side in fear when he assumed that there was an enemy. A man stood in front of him. The stranger in glasses looked forward when Joseph thought that something was wrong with this man. Someone approached the young man from behind. The protagonist bent his arm, looking to the side. A huge snake opened its mouth. The protagonist gritted his teeth, looking ahead. The man was watching the battle from the side. Hugo was holding a watch in his hand when he announced that the test was beginning. The hero flew to the side from the explosion. He looked at him in surprise and asked what the hell was going on. The protagonist ran forward at a rapid pace. Suddenly, he crashed into an artificial barrier. The monster looked at him. Joseph looked at him in amazement and thought, how did this monster appear here? It's all a lie. He's sleeping. Yes, it's an illusion. Smoke flew out of the monster's mouth, and the thought occurred to him that it stunk. The hero frowned. Looking straight ahead, he thought that the internal defense was activated. This poison is real, that guy, so he is too. The protagonist clenched his teeth in amazement. He jumped up abruptly. Joseph looked away in surprise. The man turned his head. The thought occurred that he was now inside the barrier he had created. At first glance it looked like this guy was still on school grounds, but in fact he was in the 173rd magic trap, which was tens of miles away. The monster looked at the hero. The thought occurred that of course the monster in front of him was real too. If he didn't take this seriously, it would swallow him up in an instant. Holding the watch in his hands, the man wondered how long he could hold out. The protagonist jumped back abruptly. He rushed forward abruptly and shouted that it didn't work like that. They had to go on the offensive. Joseph struck with his fist. He gritted his teeth and exclaimed. The hero jumped back. Looking down, he thought, damn, she had hard scales, a fist trained 300%, nothing against this snake. The protagonist ran forward rapidly, thinking that this creature had good protective armor, cheating, and then shouted that he didn't even have a weapon. Joseph looked away in surprise. He jumped forward abruptly. The hero grabbed the weapon. Turning his head, he shouted that he couldn't escape, but he could try. The protagonist swung the blade sharply. The weapon rested against the monster's skin. Putting his hands behind his back, the man thought that he wasn't strong enough. He was somewhere around rank F, or even less. Closing his eyes, Hugo said that these talentless people don't know what they're doing. This guy really attracted the attention of the only one, and he ordered to recruit him. However, if he knows what's going on, it's not his problem. Joseph fell to the ground. Frowning, he thought that it was too difficult. Even though he got closer, he couldn't break through the defense at all. He was some kind of weirdo. He was developing in a real fight again. Swinging his weapon, the hero thought that at first he was scared, but now he wants to fight this giant. If he continues to use his perception, he will be able to learn its weaknesses. Jumping up, he added that it seems that right now a random attack will be able to break the scales if he hits here again. Striking, the protagonist shouted that it was a bullseye. He smiled and laughed. Joseph jumped back in fear. The monster headed towards him. The man abruptly rushed forward. Taking the hero by the shoulder, he said that he should look up. Bright beams appeared in front of the monster. Hugo grinned, looking straight ahead. He raised his hand up. The hero descended to the ground. Frowning, he thought how strong. The protagonist looked at the box in amazement. He was examining the weapon. The man took a step forward. With a wide smile, he said, "Let me introduce myself. He is Hugo, the director of the personnel department of the Fong Family Training Squad. The bosom of their family is the source of strength and the cradle of gifted people. This means that with great strength comes great responsibility. The Fong family members encounter such monsters every day." Looking straight ahead, the man asked how he was feeling, and then thought that now, he would definitely refuse. Right, he used a D-class monster. Standing in front of the hero, he added, "Let them see how scared this kid is." The hero looked at him in amazement, and thought that Slash was. The man put his hands behind his back. The thought occurred to him that he was perfect. Clenching his fist, the protagonist said he wanted to play. Smiling, he added to join the Fong Family Training Squad, and then thought that if the Fong family only gathered gifted and strong people, if he could find a sample of perfect strength there, then the improvements would come much faster, and the cancellation of the system installation would not be far off. Gritting his teeth, Hugo wondered why he agreed. Rushing forward, the girl asked what happened to Joseph. He ran away and didn't even say hello. She stopped and thought, there he is. Frowning, Kate thought, isn't that Hugo? Why is Joseph next to him? Raising his hand, the man said to remember, tomorrow, to which the hero replied, yes, he understood. Waving her hand, the girl said that here he is. Looking to the side, the protagonist asked what she was doing here, to which she replied that she was looking for him. The Fan family was bothering him again. Everything is fine, to which he added that with him, he is fine. With wide eyes, Kate said that but his clothes are dirty, to which Joseph replied that he just fell, and the uncle helped him. Hugging him, the girl asked why he fell. He was not hurt. Looking at her, the hero said that's enough, to which she asked why his heart was beating so fast. Looking at him, the girl asked if he had received any internal injuries from running so fast. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist thought that it was all because she was too close. Clutching his head, he added that didn't she know that he couldn't stand it when people invaded his personal space, let her move at least a meter away. The people looked at him in amazement. The thought occurred to him that the mere thought of another person breathing on him was driving him crazy. Closing his eyes, Joseph thought that no, he couldn't think about it anymore, otherwise he would suffocate now. The girl opened her eyes wide and turned. Looking down, the hero thought that although she was not like other people, she was absolutely pure. Stretching her hand forward, Kate said that he shouldn't be afraid, she would protect him. Frowning, the protagonist replied that he shouldn't cause problems, he could handle it, she didn't need to constantly think about how to help others. The girl grinned and thought, no, he started reading the annotations again. Raising his finger up, Joseph said that last time she went to look for Bob, she knows how dangerous it is. Fortunately, she was not touched and let go, and if she had been beaten. Frowning, he added that and also, she just asked if the Fan family bothered him, it seems she is well acquainted with them. The man was standing around the corner. Looking down, the hero asked how she knew about the Fan family. Closing her eyes, the girl asked again that she was very famous, didn't he know? Putting his hand behind his head, the protagonist asked again that it was true. A high-rise building appeared. It was said that the Fan family is one of the 4 top clans, being in City C. It became a supplier of dungeon resources for the Ministry of Defense in City X. It is a force to be reckoned with, controlling 10% of the resources of City X. People were standing near the car. Lowering his head, the guy said that he was welcome. The girl got out of the car. She walked forward. Standing in the building, people said that they welcomed. Amanda moved forward. Grinning, the man thought that they were back. She looked so graceful today, even more beautiful than a goddess. Smiling, the girl turned to him. Looking to the side, Amanda asked that he met him, what he said. Stretching his hands forward, Hugo asked if it was worth talking about it while they were here. He agreed to join them. But his strength is quite useless and does not deserve her attention. If she wants to see something really worthwhile, let him introduce her to a few newcomers. They are quite good. The girl looked down. Looking at him, she said that it is not necessary. She trusts his taste, so let him not worry. Stretching her hand to the side, Amanda said that he should remember and not allow these newcomers to be lazy. They must be thoroughly prepared. She grinned, thinking that when he appeared here, everything would become much more interesting. Frowning, the hero said that it was as if a chill ran down his spine. Stretching his hand forward, the man shouted that everyone should listen. Their mistress treated everyone equally. She was interested in each of them. They should work hard. He looked at her in amazement, and added that they should pay attention to their steps. They ate little porridge. The girl walked forward. It was heard that they should look at the mistress's gait. Compared to them, the so-called huntsman, her gait was much better. Looking straight ahead, the guy thought that he did not understand anything and did not even want to ask. To which the other added that he did not need to flatter her like that. Amanda stretched her arms out to the sides, and the man said that their mistress was the embodiment of wisdom and beauty. Suddenly the girl stumbled. The man caught her and turned to her. Amanda looked down in embarrassment. Hugo looked away and shouted that they should take a look. Their mistress was so close to people, she was afraid of being too perfect, so she stumbled on purpose so that the huge gap between them would not be felt so acutely. They know what it is called, wisdom. The man stood in the office. Joe looked out the window. Smiling, Amanda said that he had returned from Gyeonggi. Putting his hand on his hip, The man asked that if he had not returned, who would manage all the affairs, to which the girl replied that she still had to study, otherwise she would not get a specialty. Looking away, Joe added that why did she want to go to a regular school so much, being so wealthy, he did everything for her, to which Amanda replied that she was just a simple girl. Lowering her head, she added that she was not a huntsman. Closing his eyes, Joe said that she should relax, because soon she would be responsible for the family business. Managers should not worry about strength. They are able to win people's trust with their minds and care. Grinning, he added that he had already found those who would be her support, they would help her. Her son also had outstanding abilities, so she could rely on him. The girl looked away and replied that they would look. Holding a cigarette in his hands, Joe said that he heard that she had recently become interested in a specific person and sent Hugo to find him. He was quite scary, they should not scare people with him. Grinning, Amanda said that he volunteered himself, and even sent a D-rank monster to test the newcomer, and he withstood, and if Hugo scared him away, then he was not worth it. The girl was standing around the corner. She closed her eyes and said that she felt that he was stronger than he seemed at first glance. She couldn't wait to see how many surprises he would give her. The fan family's training field appeared. The hero turned his head to the side. Fighters appeared. It seemed that there were a lot of people here. Swords appeared. It was said that everyone had weapons with them. They looked very expensive. Looking to the side, the protagonist thought that it would be better to keep his distance. Some of them looked dangerous. Smiling, the guy asked why there were so many people here. Were they all recently awakened from different provinces? To which he was told that yes, except for the military. All the resources of the dungeon are controlled by the 4 major clans. If he is not part of them, he can only hunt in those areas of the dungeon that do not belong to them. They are not particularly rich in treasures, but there are many dangers there. Joseph looked at his number. He looked to the side, hearing that everyone who received a number is asked to go through the selection. A pyramid appeared. It was said that among all the levels, F rank is the lowest. After awakening, the level is fixed, and very few can fully awaken their abilities. A glow appeared around the people. It was thought that most of the awakened ones receive F rank. Their total number is about 90%, of which only 1% are people with D rank or higher abilities. The number of S rank hunters tends to 0. There are not even 10. They are strong enough to rule an entire country. In fact, the army of City M obeys a foreigner, the only S rank hunter in City X. A crowd of people stood in front of the building. Stretching her hand to the side, the girl said that he should bring his hand closer to test its strength. The hero stretched his hand in front of him. A bright glow emanated from the sphere. Rank F appeared on it. Lowering his head, the protagonist froze. He walked forward. The guy clutched his head and shouted that he was only an E-rank caster. He once summoned a huge wolf and thought that his rank was D, to which they replied that they knew. He could become invisible for 5 seconds. Other people thought that he was an A-rank assassin, but in fact, he was also an E-rank. Looking at them, the protagonist thought that it was understandable that they were not that sad. Unless they were not an E-rank, why were they showing off? He looked away in amazement. Looking at the sphere, Joseph heard that his result was a D-rank berserker. The man walked forward. It was heard that they found a D-rank man. He was a D-rank. The hero watched him silently. The guy smirked and said that this is the life. The protagonist frowned and thought that if he completely completed this, what level would he reach? The people were standing in the center of the recruit training. Taking a step forward, the man said that they were all dressed in uniform and were new recruits of the fan family. Frowning, he added that from now on, he would be his instructor in the use of various types of weapons. The monk sat in the middle of the forest, and heard that legend said that in ancient times, there was a unique martial art that could awaken internal power. Holding the weapon in his hands, the instructor said that by concentrating it inside the sword, they would be able to hit a target miles away. Looking straight ahead, he added that although they were awakened huntsmen, their abilities were nothing compared to the legendary power. Raising the weapon up, the man said that along with their abilities, their true strength lay in how they handled the weapon. Lowering the sword, he added that the difference was in the angle, force, and speed. The disciples looked in amazement upon hearing what could affect their destructive power. The man swung the weapon. The hero's eyes widened and he thought it was perfect. The tubes flew away. The students looked at him in surprise. He heard that his swordsmanship was amazing. He was a warrior. No, he remembered that he was a mage. His power was incredible. He seemed to be even stronger than a berserker. The man raised his head up. He swung his weapon sharply. The protagonist froze in amazement and thought it was perfect. The trainer swung his weapon. Weapons appeared. Joseph looked up and thought that they were all perfect. He smirked and added that here it was. The recruit training center appeared. A view of the weapons training hall opened up. Lying on the ground, the guy said that he was exhausted, to which the student added that he was just an E-rank mage. No matter how much he trained with weapons, it was all useless. He would never get into the attacking team. Looking straight ahead, the young man asked that if he was assigned to the supply department, why should he train? Because others could do it too, really, to which the recruit replied that he really didn't understand that. The man struck him and shouted that they ignored the words of their elders. If they didn't know how to handle a weapon, they wouldn't even get into the supply team. Frowning, he added that they should train harder while running. Looking at the weapon, the guy said that he didn't need to know how to handle a weapon, he was a mage, he would learn spells. But he couldn't even enter the dueling hall, really, only an idiot would train so hard. The hero swung the weapon. He closed his eyes. The protagonist swung the sword. He struck the air even more. Joseph sighed heavily. He grabbed the weapon tightly. The hero took a step forward. He swung the weapon sharply. The protagonist suddenly struck. He lowered his head and sighed. Notifications appeared that the weapon mastery skill, the ability to handle a short sword, was honed to 100%. His level was increased. Grinning, Joseph thought that he did it and raised his level. He feels his perception expand. Now he will practice with an axe. Looking to the side, the guy asked who he was. So hardworking, hanging around here for 4 days without a break. To which the other added that he was definitely diligent. What a shame that he only had rank F. The hero swung his weapon. He frowned. A notification appeared that the weapon mastery skill, the ability to handle an axe, was honed to 100%. His level was increased. Looking at his weapon, the protagonist thought that the medieval sword was next on the plan. What a shame that the elder did not show the perfect attack. He will have to learn it himself. He cannot reach 100% through simple training. He needs a real duel to master this skill. Putting his hands behind his back, the man shouted that after a week of training, each of them should have found a suitable weapon. Now they can take it and go to the duel room. To which he was told that they can finally fight, no longer wants to train alone. The hero stretched out his weapon in front of him. He frowned, hearing that why this kid does not come. Does not he want a good fight? He does not have the guts. He heard that when they first see a monster, some people wet their pants. The protagonist waved his weapon, hearing that they came here to hunt them, so why is he wasting his time in the training room? While waving his weapon, Joseph thought that it was said that once a Jaeger awakens, his abilities do not change, so further training is unnecessary. Everyone focuses on killing monsters and uses the rewards they get to buy equipment and improve their strength. They think that this is the only way to progress. They do not know how to improve their abilities. And do not even think about the relationship between adjusting movements and improving skills. The students entered the room. The guy smiled and said that he heard that some F-rank idiot was just waving his weapon around in the training hall. He had no idea what he was doing. To which the man replied that he was just the teacher's pet. Closing his eyes, the student said that he thought this was just a way to attract the teacher's attention. People walked forward. It was heard that he was personally chosen by someone from the Fong family, nothing more. Looking straight ahead, the man asked that there were such people among them. William looked to the side and said that Hugo, that old man, is getting stupider. Closing his eyes, the guy answered approvingly. Looking at him, the young man asked who the hell he was, why was he following him, wanted to say something. To which he replied that he was a new D-rank berserker. Smiling, Chuck shouted that everyone knew that he was one of a kind. He was going to marry the daughter of the head of the Fan family. Their future was limitless, so he would like to. Lowering his head, he added that he was asking for his help. Smiling, William said that he was smart. Well, since he was a D-rank, he would put in a good word with the staff, and within a month he would join his team. He did not need to waste time here. The guy smiled and said that he was so amazing, he was like a new dad to him. The man swung his weapon sharply. The hero pulled the weapon to the side. Frowning, he said that he was finally finished. A notification about internal strength appeared. The protagonist's eyes widened as he thought that inner strength, was it really the same as what the elder had said earlier, powerful? Clenching his fist, he added that he was now skilled in all types of weapons. Walking forward, Joseph said that he needed to try it out in battle. The hero smirked and asked that this was the portal to the battle zone. It looked very impressive. Frowning, the man shouted that he should stop, he couldn't enter, to which the boy asked that he couldn't, why was that? He extended his hand forward and said that the portal to the battle zone was only for those who had received level D and above. His rank was too low, he couldn't allow him to enter. Looking straight ahead, the protagonist heard that wasn't the portal open to everyone, so why couldn't they use it anyway? Low-ranking privates also had abilities, it was unfair. The man waved his hand and replied that rules are rules, preference is given to those who are more talented. It's the same everywhere. If they want to complain, let them look for a leader. A glow appeared around the guy. It was heard that the lowest link in the food chain, the strongest will survive. The man held items in his hands. It was said that high-ranking rangers can go to the best levels of the dungeon, get more valuable resources. In each group or guild, 90% of the loot goes to the top. The people smiled. It was heard that for now the weak can only act as support, covering their backs, or while they are crushed like ants during guild wars. The people held weapons in their hands. Smiling, the man asked what they really thought, that the Fan family is a shelter. Of course they should provide the strong with an advantage. If they want to find a scapegoat, let them blame their mother for giving birth to such weaklings. Joseph looked away, hearing that all he could do was accept that he was a loser. Frowning, he thought that low-level people could only accept that they were losers. The hero took a step forward. Standing in front of the man, he asked what if a person's true strength was not determined by their F rank, to which the teacher replied that he shouldn't try to act tough. Before a real battle, many newbies would believe that they were at a higher level until they walked in and shit their pants in fear. Trash like him was only looking for death there. The man extended his hand out of the portal and shouted that they needed people. The protagonist looked at him in confusion. The guy opened his eyes wide and shouted that they desperately needed tanks. Who are they? Let them come quickly with him. Looking at him, the man asked that he was from Chuck's squad, ran into difficulties, to which the young man replied that you could say so, and therefore they needed help immediately. Brother Chuck promised a reward when it was all over. Joseph grinned and said that was just fine, he would go. The guy raised his eyebrows and said great, anyone else, the more the merrier. The underground city appeared. Gritting his teeth, the young man shouted that damn, it was only a D-rank monster, and already so insanely powerful. The creature stretched out its arms to the sides. It was heard that it owned not only combat techniques, but also magic. The people pointed their weapons. It was said that damn, the boss is so strong, and small demons continued to appear. The guys looked surprised and said that why don't they retreat, it's just a simulator, there is no need to risk so much, even if they don't die, everything feels real, you can even go crazy from this. Chuck looked straight, listening to what exactly. He heard that a newbie from the previous team broke his leg during such a fight. Despite the fact that his leg was not damaged, he could no longer use it. If this continues, they can. Smiling, the guy said that if he shows an outstanding result in the underground city of D-rank, he will make him a captain. Chuck gritted his teeth and shouted that they should not give up, let him pull himself together if he is a man. The monster swung his weapon. He abruptly struck the ground. His eyes lit up. Gritting his teeth, Chuck said that it was so hard. Looking at him, the monster shouted. The young man held back his blow. Looking to the side, he shouted that the man who went for help did not return. Let them go to the portal and take a look. Suddenly, a portal appeared in the air. Lightning emitted from it. Walking forward, the guy said that he should hurry up, let them catch up. The hero turned his head to the side. A building appeared. He heard that it was an underground city for training in combat conditions, a solid atmosphere. Looking to the side, the young man said that he did not expect this place to have such a destructive aura. He was afraid of it even more than the battle, to which the man replied that he should not worry, he would be fine with him. Rushing forward, the boy said that they should go faster. Brother Chuck would not last long. Suddenly, the man flew to the side and shouted. He slid along the ground. The boy smiled when he heard that they were here, to which he replied that it was great, let him join the battle quickly. Chuck looked away in bewilderment. The hero looked in amazement when he heard that wasn't this the bookworm who could only swing iron, what use was he? To which the boy replied that many did not dare to go when they heard that they had problems, only they dared. Holding the weapon in his hands, the student said that they were happy with what they had. Stretching his hand forward, Chuck shouted that they should surround the boss from the left and right flanks to attract his attention. Let them repel attacks. Ghosts flew to the sides. It was heard that he and the magician remained in the cordon and cleaned up the lower demons. Looking to the side, the mage asked what he should do. The youth shouted, wide-eyed, that he was an idiot, he had to attack them, otherwise they would become a hindrance in the battle. The hero frowned and said that's how it is, they don't attack unless they show hostility. Holding the weapon in his hands, he added that then. Suddenly, the spirit looked at him in amazement. The protagonist stood in front of the ghost. Joseph frowned. The ghost extended his hand towards him. The hero blocked its blow. Swinging the weapon, he thought, this is a difficult level for a beginner, it's time to try out the new sword style he mastered, and the only perfect strike. The protagonist rushed forward, thinking that the terror he felt was different from the one he felt when he fought the D-rank python that day. Joseph frowned. Swinging, he thought, this is just an ordinary demon, nothing more. The hero struck the demon. Suddenly, it turned its head to the side. Looking at the creature, the protagonist thought that this was the first time he used this in battle after intense training, and almost killed it in a second, if he wanted to make this strike more powerful. Joseph slid along the ground. Clenching his fist, he thought that as he thought, even though he was only rank F, he was no match for rank E system monsters. Who knows, maybe he could challenge that python then. The ghost extended his hand forward. He struck the ground. The hero swung his weapon. A blow came flying at the demon. The magician looked at him in surprise, thinking that he looked so calm. This monster was really that weak. It was also rank F, did that mean he could defeat it too? Swinging, he shouted, okay. The guy struck the monster and shouted, let him try it. The demon looked away. He swung at the guy furiously. The monster's eyes lit up. The young man opened his eyes wide and said that it was too scary. The hero looked away in surprise. He parried the creature's blow. Frowning, the protagonist shouted that he shouldn't worry. A monster of this level wasn't as scary as it seemed at first glance. He shouldn't let it confuse him. He should stay behind and watch him deal with it. Beams were flying near the monster. Gritting his teeth, Chuck shouted that damn it, no matter how much he fought, the shine of this sword didn't fade. Frowning, he added that he had no choice but to take extreme measures. Raising his hand up, the guy shouted about iron blood. He opened his eyes wide. Pointing the weapon forward, the young man shouted that out of 10,000 awakened level D, only he had such a mutation, it instantly increased his defense and power. Let them all attack with him, divide and conquer, let them block his blows. Chuck smiled and shouted that they should attack. The guys rushed towards the monster and shouted that he should die. A blow flew at the demon. Looking to the side, the hero shouted that he should stop sitting around and do something, otherwise, what good was he? The ghost stretched his arms forward. He suddenly rushed forward. The magician clenched his teeth in fear. Rushing forward, the guy shouted that no, he wanted to go home. Beams appeared around the monster. Chuck struck the monster. Looking to the side, he thought about what was going on. After strengthening his attack much more effectively, he had not even hit him once since then. But why was he moving slower and slower? The guy opened his eyes in amazement and added that maybe the monster's sword was causing paralysis. The magician, running forward, shouted that it was too scary. He opened his eyes wide, hearing that he was running away in the midst of the battle. Let him come back. Gritting his teeth, the boy thought he was paralyzed in midair. The demon's eyes lit up. He swung his weapon sharply. Looking to the side, Chuck thought he couldn't move. He opened his eyes wide. Bright rays were flying around the demon. A glow appeared in the air. Looking straight ahead, the boy asked what Brother Chuck had evaporated, to which the student replied that in the dungeon, the movement was automatically triggered until the subject received a fatal blow. If Brother Chuck had disappeared, that meant. The boys rushed forward. It was heard that this did not bode well. They were running. They could not cope with this themselves. The young man ran to the portal, shouting that he should not have stuck his nose in there. He abruptly ran into the portal. Stretching his hand forward, the boy shouted. Lowering his head, he said that he had finally gotten out. Opening his eyes wide, the boy asked what Brother Chuck was. He had just seen him inside. Why was he here? Frowning, the guy shouted that he was still asking, was it all because of him? As he struck, he added that he must have distracted him when he ran away, otherwise he would have dodged that blow. Lying on the ground, the mage said that he didn't think there would be ghosts. He was terribly afraid of them. He didn't do it on purpose. Chuck gritted his teeth, hearing that what was the point now? They had failed the mission, to which he thought that it must be his fault. How could he lose? It was impossible. Looking to the side, he shouted, let them beat him up, leave no living place, how dare he ruin his mission? The hero frowned. The demon in front of him evaporated. Looking straight ahead, the protagonist said that he had finally cleared out the lower-level demons. Suddenly, he looked in confusion. The monster stood still. He heard that the boss was still here, but where were the others? His health bar appeared. It was said that he was not finished off. Holding the weapon in his hands, Joseph said that since they had started the fight, he should be kind enough to finish it. It was inconvenient to leave everything as it was. Rushing forward, he added that he simply had to destroy him. The hero opened his eyes wide. The general of the undead army stood still. Jumping up, the protagonist thought that he could really see the boss's skill set. It seemed that this system was not so useless. Joseph raised his sword above his head and shouted. The demon parried his blow. Jumping aside, the hero said that the defense was high, but hit weakly. If he was careful enough and did not let him paralyze him, he could win. A glow appeared around the demon. The protagonist gritted his teeth and said that this was a great opportunity to fully master this ability. They swung their weapons at each other. A blow flew at the guy. Suddenly, someone struck him in the face. He raised his head up and heard a voice saying, hold him tighter and don't let go, he'll beat him until he calms down. Chuck clenched his teeth and shouted. If he hadn't been distracted by him, he wouldn't have lost. The girl looked at him in amazement and said, if this goes on, he'll be beaten to death. The guy replied, keep quiet, he's unlucky enough to anger a D-level awakened person. If he does something without thinking, he'll get hurt too. It seemed like someone was still alive, and that person was so scared that he couldn't even run away. There was silence in the crowd, and suddenly a voice said, stop this mess right now. The guy frowned and thought. The people looked at him in amazement. Looking straight ahead, the hero asked, how can you blame others for being humiliated by your boss, as a leader? Looking down, he added that if he wanted to blame someone, he should blame himself for his weakness, loser. Stretching his hand forward, the protagonist shouted that he should blame himself. The students looked at him in surprise. It seemed that this guy had gone crazy. What a brave man. He called Chuck a weakling. He wanted to die. An F-rank private said such a thing to a D-rank awakened. He had gone crazy from long training. Gritting his teeth, the guy asked again. The student fell to the ground. Flexing his fists, the young man said that he should repeat who he was. Frowning, the hero replied that he said that he was too weak. Rays appeared around the demon. He looked forward angrily. The protagonist gritted his teeth and thought that the aura of this monster's blade had dispelled the protective effect of his gloves. Things were bad. Dodging, he added that his sword had a 10% paralysis effect. It wouldn't last long. He had to calculate the time of the strike precisely. Frowning, Joseph thought that he could defeat it with a perfect attack. The hero swung his weapon. The demon's health bar decreased. Grinning, the protagonist shouted that okay, that's good. He pulled the weapon to the side. Joseph's eyes widened. Swinging the weapon, he thought, now the halberd. The hero abruptly cut off the demon's hand. The monster raised its head up. A thought appeared that great, almost finished it off. The protagonist swung his weapon. He clenched his teeth tightly. Joseph struck the demon. The health bar completely decreased. Grinning, the hero said that he did it. He opened his eyes in surprise. The demon began to fall back. Looking at it, the protagonist asked, "What the hell?" The ghost clenched his teeth tightly. Joseph frowned, thinking, damn, he was freezing. Looking at the notification, he asked that the inner power has the conditions to activate. The hero reached out to the notification. The protagonist stretched out his arms to the sides and shouted. He raised his head up. The protagonist smiled when he heard that the conditions to activate the inner power were met. His gaze suddenly froze. A notification appeared that a mortal threat had appeared. A glow appeared around the hero. Suddenly, he activated his inner power. The protagonist tightly gripped the weapon in his hands. He swung the weapon. A blow flew at the demon. Joseph frowned angrily. He cut the demon in half. The hero landed on the ground. The rune fell down. The protagonist looked surprised when he heard that a tear of death was received. Picking it up, Joseph asked what it was. Messages appeared that a reward for defeating the ghost general. Looking down, the hero asked what the afterlife swordsmanship, the boss's move. The protagonist clenched his fist tightly. He looked at the particles in amazement. A bright glow appeared around him. Stretching his hand forward, Joseph asked what it was. Raising his eyebrows, he said, "Let the skill window open." Notifications about combat skills appeared. Putting his hand to his face, the hero thought he would be completely finished with this. But he only advanced 10%, they are kidding me. Standing in front of the portal, he said that if he can't deal with a boss who was defeated by someone weaker than him, it is obvious that he is weak. Rushing forward, Chuck shouted that he is a bastard. The protagonist deftly dodged his blow. Gritting his teeth, the guy said that he will kill him. Joseph dodged the attack again. Berserker looked at him furiously. The hero held his blow. He grabbed the guy's hand. Frowning, the guy thought it hurt. How was he doing this? Why was this F-rank private so strong? The protagonist swung his fist. The guy looked angrily. It was heard that he wanted to hit him. Let him not be so arrogant. Looking straight ahead, the girl shouted for them to stop. They looked away in amazement. Walking forward, Amanda asked who allowed them to fight in the training room. People were standing in the control room. Suddenly, the young man looked in amazement. His eyes widened, he exclaimed. Looking at him, the employee asked what was wrong, to which the guy replied that nothing, just a mosquito bite. Raising his eyebrows up, the guy thought that the F-rank private dealt with the ghost general. Maybe an error in the data. No one should know about this, otherwise he would be in big trouble. Pressing the button, he added that everything needed to be restarted quickly. A glow suddenly appeared in the air. The people looked at them, and it was heard that they were still fighting. Frowning, Amanda asked that they even know what consequences a fight in the recruit training area would lead to. The hero frowned. Running forward, the man asked what she was doing here. Looking straight ahead, the guy asked if this was really the legendary only daughter of the Fong family, to which he was told that she was so pretty, a bird out of their league. Putting her hands on her hips, Amanda said that she couldn't believe that they decided to start a fight here. Where was he looking? She looked away angrily. Looking at the guy, the girl asked that he looked terribly beaten. What happened? Closing his eyes, the man said that it seemed that this newbie was too weak, so he got hurt during training in the dungeon. Looking away, Amanda said that he should go and examine him, to which the guy responded approvingly. The girl looked surprised when she heard that there were healers among them. Let them help him. Amanda frowned and thought about how he managed to get injured in the simulator. The recruit trainer was lying to her face. If she couldn't do anything, she didn't deserve to be the daughter of the Fan family. Lying on the ground, the guy thanked her, to which the healer replied that he should shut up. The camera was hanging on the wall. Raising his hand, the guy said that this is what happened. Putting her hands on her hips, the girl shouted that how brave. Frowning, she added that as one of the leaders of the Fan family's Awakened Association, she was responsible for the actions of rangers like them. Looking straight ahead, the hero heard that she was also shocked that people could behave like this. They hadn't made any progress. But they were poisoning the weak. They should be ashamed. They were going to the dungeon together, so they should rely on teamwork and cooperation. The boys lowered their heads when they heard that while their teammate was being beaten, they just stood there and did nothing. Frowning, Amanda shouted that if they did this, how could he trust them with his back in future battles? Stretching out her hand, she added that he was the instigator of the bullying, which went against the beliefs of the Fan family. He was expelled from the training group. Chuck widened his eyes and asked that they were expelling him. Closing his eyes, the man said that he was one of the best students among all the newcomers. If they expelled him, it would be a great loss for them. Looking away, Amanda asked what he thought. He had the right to stand up for him. He allowed the students to fight and lied. He was no less guilty to her. He was also expelled from the Fan family without the right to return. Let them take them away. They began to carry the boys away. It was heard that no, the leader asked him to take care of Chuck. Amanda closed her eyes and sighed. Looking to the side, a student said that their mistress was incredible, to which another added that she was so majestic, noble and beautiful, the true heir of the Fan family. Grinning, the girl said what about him? The student looked away in amazement and asked that she was going to expel him too. It couldn't be. Walking forward, Amanda asked that he remembered her their last meeting near the university. The hero looked at her in amazement. Grinning, the girl thought that he was scared. It was useless to regret how he behaved with her that time now. They stood in front of each other. Looking at the hero, she asked that he didn't want to tell her anything, and then thought that if he bowed down to her for helping her that time, she would forgive him. Looking away, the hero shouted that she absolutely had to dress like that. It was really awful, and she was standing right in front of him. He was very uncomfortable, trying to be cute. The girl shuddered, hearing that it was awful. She looked at him furiously and shouted that he was crazy. What the hell, she wasn't dressed well enough. His shirt was asymmetrical, the colors were different, he was an idiot, let him die. Adjusting her glasses, the men thought that she was beside herself with anger every time she met him. They turned around when they heard the name. Walking forward, William said that it was just a small fight, there was no need to kick people out because of this. Looking to the side, the girl asked who it was. He called her by name, to which the disciple replied that she did not know. It was William, the adopted son of the head of the family. He was practically her brother. He had heard that he was a B-level awakened and that he was currently the strongest huntsman of the Fan family. Looking at the guy, Amanda said that maybe he did not understand yet. This guy was bullying others, and if he did not stop, he would kill someone. If they let him stay, it would lead to a big disaster. The young man smirked and said no, she didn't get it. He accepted this kid into his team. If he took him over from now on, there would be no problems. He held his hand out and added, come on, let him deal with it himself. Amanda looked away and asked what he was going to do. William held his hands out to the sides and said why shouldn't they give him a chance? Who is he bullying? Let him beat Chuck, give him a chance to get revenge, and the problem would be solved. Everything was fair, to which Chuck replied, okay, he would endure it. Sitting on the ground, the guy heard him come here. He closed his eyes and said he was fine, and then thought that if he did, he would definitely finish him off. The hero frowned and thought, good move, no one would dare hit him, and the matter would have to be hushed up. Smiling, William said that if he refused, then the conflict was over. Pointing to himself, the protagonist said that he would do it for him. Frowning, the guy asked what Joseph, a familiar name, to which Chuck replied that he had forgotten, that was the guy who was chosen. Looking down, William thought that he was brave, someone stronger was supporting him. Looking away, he said that well, that was wrong, since he hadn't touched him, why should he hit him, advising him not to interfere. The man took a step forward. Smiling, William said that he didn't care if he hit back, he wanted to end their fight. If he lost, he would leave. But if he won, then let him roll. Okay, so be it. Looking straight ahead, he thought that he saw no reason to refuse. Raising her hand, Amanda asked that he would definitely cope. He was a D rank. To which Joseph replied that this guy would win if he didn't put him in his place. He had to do it so that he wouldn't bother them anymore. Standing in front of him, the girl shouted that why was he doing this? Let him look at her. To which the hero replied that okay, just let him not come closer. A thought arose as to what was going on here. He heard them arguing a minute ago. Usually William behaved differently. How did she know him? Frowning, the guy thought that he was her relative. Gritting his teeth, he added that no, he knew her entire family, and if he was not related to her then. Looking to the side, the young man said that he should hit him harder, to which Chuck replied that he shouldn't worry, he was much weaker than him. A view of the room opened up. The guy looked in surprise and asked that he was definitely an F rank. It seemed as if he was no worse than Chuck. They started fighting. The boy's eyes widened and he thought, damn, this brat is only an F rank but he's still standing strong. This guy managed to dodge every attack. What's wrong with him? The hero clenched his teeth tightly. The boy glared and shouted, damn, he forced him to take extreme measures. He rushed forward and added, let him die. The protagonist dodged his blow. He suddenly jumped up. Joseph slid along the ground. Frowning, he thought that this guy wanted to kill him. The young man swung his weapon furiously. A glow appeared around the hero's hand. A thought occurred to him. Well, then he'll try his new ability on him. Purple beams appeared in the air. The protagonist stretched his hand to the side. The guy's sword suddenly broke. Chuck fell to his knees. His eyes widened and he said, how could he break his sword? The guy looked at him in surprise and said that Joseph had indeed won, to which he was told that it was incredible. A private F rank had beaten a berserker of level D, to which Amanda said that it looked like he was much stronger than he thought. Putting his hand to his face, William thought that it was strange. He had used the sword as an energy conductor, thereby increasing his strength. This was definitely an afterlife swordsmanship. He could only get it in one way to destroy the Ghost General. But how did he manage to defeat him if he was not capable of it by definition? He was level F. Maybe the test had given an inaccurate result. Smiling, he added that it seemed he was wrong. He could not even imagine that he was so pathetic, would exclude him from the search party. To which Chuck asked again. Taking a step forward, William said that he thought the test results were unclear. They would conduct it again so that such misunderstandings did not happen again. To which the hero asked what was testing again. Frowning, he added that he didn't care what level he was. He wasn't proving anything anyway. Smiling, Amanda said that he was just asking him to take the test again. She also thought the result was wrong. If he got a higher rank, he would be able to enter higher levels of the dungeon, join the reconnaissance team and more. Didn't he think it was a good idea? Standing in front of the hero, the guy said that yes, if his strength was really that great, then let him be sure. He would immediately enroll him in the sabotage squad. A sign appeared in the testing room. The protagonist was lying under the machine. He looked away, hearing that it was great, let him come here. Frowning, the guy asked what was the result, to which the girl replied that he should wait a second, the data was being processed. The man extended his hand forward and said that as they could see, he was indeed an ordinary F rank, his characteristics were unremarkable. Raising her eyebrows, Amanda asked what could be wrong, the device was faulty. To which the girl replied that he should calm down, they were using the best technology. The possibility of an incorrect result was completely excluded, this young man was definitely an F rank. Looking to the side, William thought that he was an F rank, then he definitely could not defeat the ghost general. Looking at the hero, he added that therefore he was not able to master the afterlife art of fencing, the source of his power was the system, so the device was not able to evaluate it. Wide-eyed, the guy thought that unless someone deliberately changed the parameters of the boss to help him obtain this ability. Clenching his fist, he added that this guy, was really the source of all the problems. Grinning, William asked that he did not want to join the reconnaissance team and go to the dungeon next week. Turning around, the hero asked what he meant, hadn't he been there today? Looking straight ahead, William said that today he visited the beginner simulator, which is to gain experience before entering the real dungeon. He wants him to go to a real dungeon, and he knows that he is strong enough for it. Raising her eyebrows, Amanda said that he is just an F rank ordinary, going there is too dangerous, they can't just, to which the young man replied that he should not worry, it will be a very ordinary E rank dungeon, he does not know how. But even though he is an F rank, he was able to defeat Chuck, a D rank berserker, so an E rank dungeon is too tough for him. Smiling, William asked what do you think about it, let's go. The protagonist looked down and thought that in a real fight he makes progress faster, in a dungeon he can greatly improve his skills, which will help him get rid of this damn system. Looking to the side, he said okay, he's in. Stretching out his hand, the boy said great, welcome to the Fong family's sabotage squad. Joseph looked down. He put the glove on his hand. Shaking his hand, the boy said he'd see him next Friday. Looking straight ahead, he added that but when they got there, they might encounter some difficulties he couldn't help with. Portals appeared. It was said that various monsters appeared in the dungeon. It was connected to another world, from which monsters constantly emerged. Awakened rangers found that they could kill them to get monster crystals. The boy held a rune in his hands. It seemed that they bestowed great power and were therefore highly prized. Over the past few decades, new dungeons began to appear all over the world. A glow appeared around the planet. It was said that when this happened, a real hell came. From time to time new dungeons appeared, and the old ones disappeared. The Fan family showed up. An idea came up that in order to gain control over a decent number of dungeons, the 4 major families had assembled special reconnaissance teams consisting of carefully selected people. People were standing in front of the portal. It was heard that this newcomer had not yet arrived. The sabotage squad stood at attention. It was said that if he was late, they would just leave him here and go. One of the managers of the Fan family received him, so he would have to wait. Smiling, William said that what seal, so impatient. Standing in front of him, the man said that he should excuse them, they were not complaining. To which the guy replied that they should not worry, he was not swearing. Looking to the side, he added that anyway, he brought this guy with him, Joseph, a private F rank, let them take care of him and make sure that no incidents happen to him, to which he was answered approvingly. Holding the weapon in his hands, the man said that they would go, to which the hero responded approvingly. The squad moved forward. Jasper looked away and thought that he seriously wanted them to take him with them, and the girl thought that well, he doesn't look so bad, she supposes. Frowning, Archie thought that he really didn't want to get involved in this, and Ted thought that why the hell was he messing with them. The squad entered the portal. The hero followed them. Suddenly, he looked in surprise. The squad stood in the middle of the dungeon. The thought arose that this was a real dungeon. The battle was beginning. Frowning, the protagonist thought that it was a cave. He had no idea what kind of monsters could live here. A notification about the dungeon appeared in front of him. Holes in the walls appeared. The squad stood still. Looking to the side, Joseph thought that the tunnel of worms, hoped they would not look too strange, it would be just disgusting if they were too asymmetrical. Frowning, the man said that it was enough to stare around. When they crossed this bridge, monsters would start appearing, and the girl added that he should be careful, they would not be able to protect him forever. The squad moved forward. A huge tunnel appeared. A glow appeared around the people. It was heard that they were approaching. Let them get ready, increase defense. The monsters rushed forward sharply. The squad ran towards the creatures. It was heard that they were moving forward. Frowning, the hero thought that she had forgotten to put a boost on him, to which the girl replied that he should not sit behind, otherwise he would not receive a reward. Rushing forward, the protagonist thought that it did not matter. The squad began to fight the monsters. The guy swung his weapon. The man struck the creature. The warrior swung his sword. The monster's eyes lit up. Jasper looked at the hero. Smiling, he said that it was not bad, he was not scared at all by his first dungeon, he was quite experienced, it was a pity that. Joseph swung his weapon. The girl looked away and thought that even considering the fact that he was only F rank, it seemed that defeating him would not be so easy. The monster looked at her. Stretching her hand forward, Monica shouted about seducing a succubus. Suddenly, the monster's eyes lit up pink. In fact, a blow flew. Grinning, the girl thought that she seemed to know how to arrange a small accident for him. The hero struck the monster. The creature began to swing from side to side. The sword stuck into the monster. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist thought that it was stuck, some low-quality sword. Suddenly, he looked in amazement. A squad appeared. Joseph took the weapon out of the monster. It was torn to pieces. The monster looked furiously. The hero's eyes widened as he thought what was wrong with him. He coordinated his attack. Suddenly, a blow flew at him. The monster was approaching him. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist shouted that there was another one. Why were they all aiming at him? The monsters collided with each other. The squad looked straight ahead. The thought appeared that it was all over. The monsters had finished him off, so even an autopsy would not be able to prove that it was their doing. Suddenly, the girl looked in amazement. A glow appeared around the hero. Looking to the side, he thought that it was the art of the afterlife, ghostly fetters. The protagonist swung his weapon. The monsters began to writhe among themselves. Joseph froze in front of them. He landed on the ground. A notification appeared that the task was 15% complete. Looking straight ahead, the hero asked what they had finished. There were still monsters here, to which the man replied that yes, they had finished. Looking to the side, the protagonist thought that in this dungeon the monsters dissolve after their death. Seeing the bodies on the ground, he was ready to go and clean them up. Stretching his hand to the side, Joseph said that then they would go further to the next level. They knew the way, so let them lead the way. Walking forward, Jasper said, "Okay, follow him, now they will fight the boss." The squad went straight. Pointing to the side, the hero asked that they would not go there. He noticed that the monsters were crawling out from there. Turning around, the swordsman said that there were only small monsters there, and if they went this way, they would be able to fight the boss, so there was no point in going there, after him. Frowning, the protagonist said that then they should go to the boss, and he would go here. Standing in front of the tunnel, he added that if they didn't completely clear this dungeon, he would feel uneasy, to which he was told that he didn't understand. There was no point in going there, this guy. The girl looked at him in surprise and asked what they thought. He noticed her and decided to go alone on purpose, to which Jasper replied that he wasn't sure. He didn't seem to be that attentive. But, frowning, he added that okay, let him follow him then. If he denies it, then he understood everything, in which case he would have to finish him off with his own hands. And if he didn't mind, then everything was fine, and he could find another way to finish him off. Smiling, Monica replied that she understood. Rushing forward, she said that he should wait a second. It was dangerous to go alone. She would go with him, to which the hero asked what she was. Wide-eyed, she added that she was a mage. She could heal his wounds and help him from a distance. Did he mind? Walking forward, the protagonist replied that it didn't matter to him and the others wouldn't need her help, to which the girl replied that it wasn't at all. They were C and D rank hunters. This E rank dungeon shouldn't cause them any problems, to which he responded approvingly. Grinning, the man said that it looked like he didn't understand anything. They would leave this matter to others, to which Ted asked what they would do then, and he replied that they would fight that boss. They wouldn't delay paying their reward. Raising his head up, the hero said that it was getting darker. They should have taken torches with them. Smiling, Monica said that he shouldn't worry, she would take care of it, to which the protagonist replied that it was great. Holding the weapon in his hands, Joseph said that now he could see what they looked like. Cannibal ants appeared. Rushing forward, the hero said that he shouldn't put out his light. The monster's eyes lit up. In essence, a blow came. The protagonist swung his sword. Looking straight ahead, he thought that this E-rank dungeon looked too weak, all because he was able to defeat a D-rank boss. What an easy task. Monica watched the battle silently. The sword stuck behind the monster. Smiling, Joseph said that he was done. Let's go. Closing her eyes, the girl responded approvingly, and then thought that this was too easy for him. She needed to come up with a reason to turn off the light. He cut them in a second. He is really an F rank. Walking forward, the hero said that they were coming, to which the girl responded approvingly. The protagonist looked away in confusion. Standing behind him, Monica asked what he was doing, to which he replied that he thought that since there were large and small creatures here, maybe some of them were hiding in these crevices. Joseph's eyes widened as he asked her to look around, to which the girl thought she was being weird. Beams appeared around the hero. He began waving his weapon. The exit from the tunnel appeared. Lowering his head, the protagonist said that they had finally gotten out. Looking at the gorge, Joseph thought that it was a dead end, but he had only completed the task by 60%. There should be more monsters here. Looking straight ahead, Monica said that it was quite high here. Suddenly, she hit him on the back. The hero's eyes widened. Falling down, he screamed loudly. Frowning, the girl said that he should not blame her. He had upset their master. Lowering her head, she thought that he would not survive after falling into such a deep hole. Closing her eyes, Monica said that she wondered what reward they would receive for completing this task. Walking forward, she hummed songs. The sword was stuck in the wall. The hero hung on it. Gritting his teeth, he said that damn William, he ordered these people to kill him. Raising his head, the protagonist added that he couldn't see how far he had fallen. Looking to the side, he said that he needed to find a way to get up. Noticing a glow, Joseph asked what it was. With wide eyes, he added that maybe they should go down a little lower. The hero pulled the sword out of the wall. He began to fall down. At the bottom of the hole, a light appeared. The protagonist stabbed the sword into the wall. With wide eyes, he asked what the water was. Joseph landed down. The hero froze in front of the water. Suddenly, eyes lit up from the hole. The protagonist looked at the monster in amazement. Turning his head, he said that there were monsters down here too. An E-rank ghost moth appeared. The monster flew forward. Frowning, Joseph shouted that the powder weakened the prey. He can't waste time. Looking straight ahead, he shouted about inner strength. A bright glow appeared around him. The hero began to swing the weapon. The monster looked in surprise. Blows flew at the creatures. They were cut into pieces. The body parts of the monsters fell to the ground. The protagonist looked in amazement. Raising his head, he asked that after defeating the boss, the task was only 99% complete. He definitely couldn't miss anyone. Maybe they were too inattentive. A dungeon appeared. The monster was lying on the ground. The squad was standing next to it. Smiling, the man said that great, let them collect everything, they need to go. Crouching down, Ted asked that just a few demonic crystals and materials for the shield, are they even worth anything? Ranky dungeons really are just a waste of time, to which Jasper replied that he shouldn't worry about it, the manager will reward them, he doesn't want to do something like that anymore. The girl came out of the tunnel. Looking to the side she turned, to which Jasper asked that she was also leaving, she did everything. Smiling, Monica replied that of course, she threw him off the cliff, it was so deep there that he definitely wouldn't survive. Walking forward, the man said that it was great, they needed to report quickly, the manager would give them a reward, he was a good boy. Walking near the water, the hero asked what was strange, if they did not let the monsters through, then he let them through. He looked into the crevice. The protagonist stuck his hand in there. Sitting on the ground, Joseph said that it was strange, even after searching everything around, he could not find a single monster. He looked at the Fong. Holding a stone in his hands, the hero asked that there was something under these stones. He began to throw away a pile of stones. The protagonist looked in surprise and said that it looked like some kind of altar. Looking at the table, Joseph said that one of the corners had broken off, so it was not symmetrical. The fragments were lying on the ground. It was heard that it was interesting if it could be repaired with the help of these pieces lying on the ground. The hero began to fasten the fragments. He put the horn on the table. Standing in front of him, the protagonist said that there were a couple of cracks left, but it looked better. Putting his hand to his face, he asked that this tray was not in the center, and that was all, maybe it was bent. The protagonist stretched the plate. Putting it on the table, he said that it was much better this way. Joseph's eyes widened in amazement. Looking to the side, he asked again. Looking at the glow, the hero exclaimed. A whirlpool appeared in the water. The water began to go down. Looking at the hole, the hero asked what the secret passage was. Lowering his head, he added that the remaining 1% was down there. The protagonist jumped into the hole. Crystals grew from the walls. Suddenly, a monster appeared in front of him. Smiling, Joseph asked what a D-rank monster was in an E-rank dungeon. The Spider Queen screamed furiously. She suddenly released a web. The hero dodged it. The protagonist jumped up. Frowning, he thought that her attacks were slow, he could dodge them, maybe he could defeat her. The web flew forward. A glow appeared around it. A net appeared behind Joseph. He opened his eyes in surprise and asked again. The web began to glow green. Gritting his teeth, the hero screamed at the hell, he can't get out. A web flew at his feet. The protagonist was completely tied up. The Spider Queen looked at him. Looking straight ahead, she screamed loudly. Gritting his teeth, Joseph exclaimed, a notification appeared that poison was detected in his body. Blood flew out of the hero's mouth. He looked up. The Spider Queen smiled widely, to which the protagonist asked what the hell, he was going to die here. He closed his eyes in pain. Joseph lies on the ground while the system informs him that the neurotoxin is making his body go into a semi-conscious state, and that his poisoning progress is 50%, and now it's 51%. There are spikes on the ceiling of the cave. The guy looks at them and wonders if he's still alive, because he's not dead, but he doesn't understand how. He looks forward. In front of him is an anthropomorphic spider, and he's in her web. And in front of her are even more of her kind. Small spiders are looking at the guy. Joseph smiles because he understands that she wants to feed him to her kids while the poisoning progress is 62%. The scene moves to the city. Kate looks at her friend and says that she heard that there's always an antidote to a poisonous substance nearby, to which the guy asks if she read it in a book, because he's sure it doesn't work in real life. She smiles and insists that she would not say so, because after all, symbiotic relationships are characteristic of living beings. She imagines something poisonous and says that if something or someone is poisonous, then only someone who has resistance to its poison can live next to it, because otherwise he would not be able to survive, and clarifies why she is wrong. Joseph looked down and thought that it sounds quite logical. He starts analyzing the environment on the spot. The guy is lying on the ground, while the system notifies that there is quartz nearby, but it does not have the detoxification effect, There is also a kidney, it contains spider poison. There is centipede feces, which contain the digestive juice of the centipede and is also poisonous in this way, and there is also moss, which also contains spider poison. Joseph looks into the void and thinks that nothing around is suitable, and therefore the books are just fiction. Joseph looks at the spiders but and continues that he has entered a spider's lair and it looks like he is really destined to die here, and his poisoning progress is already at 70%. The guy is dragged forward until he sees the oolong ginseng plant, which is also a parasitic plant, and the system tells him that it has the ability to detoxify and grows on rotten soil, gets its nutrients from the waste of toxic substances and is found in mosquito caves, spider lairs, etc. Joseph reaches out to the plant because he understands that it is a useful thing. The system continues that the poisoning progress is 72%. Joseph holds a bunch of ginseng in his hand and thinks that the poisoning progress has stopped at these leaves and asks if he has a passive ability to produce antitoxin. He drops the leaves after the system notifies him that if he crushes these leaves, he can reduce the effect of the poison. He himself understands that the poisoning scale is not yet full. Joseph looks at the scale and asks it to fill up faster. There are leaves of a plant sticking out nearby. Joseph looks at them in surprise. While the poisoning is equal to 73%. He picks more leaves, while the percentage is one more. The guy stopped, because he thought that the scale had stopped growing. The scale grew by 1% and Joseph panically picked up more. The percentage is rapidly growing up to 93%. The spider calls out to the children. She spread her front legs to the sides. She smiles and calls him to eat. Joseph sees a notification that the poisoning progress has reached 100% and he has started analyzing the poison. The guy looks at the sky. The system notifies him that the poison collection is equal to 100% and now he has a permanent resistance to this poison. Joseph dropped the web in surprise, while he himself thinks that it seemed to him that he would die, because he did not know that the system had such functions. The spider closes her legs from the light. The guy furiously picked another ginseng. He squeezed it in his hand. Joseph takes his sword. The children are stunned by the revived dinner. The guy cuts the couple in two. The children fly apart in different directions. Joseph looks satisfied and says that he is full of strength again, and the system says that his poisoning progress is 0% and the poisoning state has been removed. The spider calls out to the children in rage. Joseph prepares to hit her in the navel. She dodges. Joseph cuts something off her and says that he doubts that she will be able to transform if he cuts her off. The guy happily goes on the attack and thinks that when he fights such huge monsters, he can reduce the reach of their attacks and fight them at close range. Joseph frowned. The spider stands still. She lets out a scream. Joseph dodges her blows. The guy slips between her legs. He hits her in the fat belly from below. She is perplexed. Joseph cuts her along the abdomen. The brunette slows down. He turns around sharply. The spider makes a grimace of pain. Now she shoots web. It hits the walls of the lair. Joseph looks on in surprise. The spider bares her teeth at him. A purple glow emanates from her. The guy runs away to avoid getting dirty. Joseph changes his direction. The brunette tears off some plant to the very base. He closes one eye because it hurts. A small spider has bitten him, and he says that he completely forgot about them. Joseph cuts it with a turn. The spider looks at the child's death in horror. The spider's chest changes color. The paws also change color. The abdomen also changes from the tip. She lets out a scream, while the system says that in front of Joseph is the terrible queen of spiders in her berserker form. Joseph is perplexed by the fact that she has a second form. The guy bounces off the wall. He smiles and notes that the sequence of her attacks has hardly changed, and he hopes that she does not think that he will not be able to reach her there. He attacks her. The spider quite blocks all the blows. Joseph opened his mouth in surprise, asking how they could jump back, because he was using his strongest skill now. The guy dodges over and over again. He pushes off the ground. Joseph looks down. The brunette realizes that he is surrounded and has nowhere else to move. He clenches his teeth in fear and wonders if she thought of this from the beginning. The spider looks at him contentedly, while Joseph notes that this monster is really smart. The guy looks at the web trap and scolds himself for not thinking of resolving them as soon as they appeared. Joseph looks up and continues that he should have guessed that this was her plan, but now it is too late to think about it. He frowns, thinking that if he starts cutting them mindlessly it will get even worse. The spider looks at him madly. She exudes toxin right from her mouth. Joseph looks at this. He holds up the ginseng and tells her not to think it will work on him, while his system notifies him that he has gained 30 seconds of resistance to the poison. He charges straight through the toxin stream. The spider looks at him in confusion. Her belly button shoots out webbing. Joseph prepares to counterattack. The guy cuts her web in half. This way he gets closer to the exit hole. He stabs her in the belly button. Joseph is pleased with himself, saying that there should be no armor on spider warts, and asks if he is right. She screams while he asks if this is her weak spot. The blade begins to glow. The spider screams in pain. The guy emits a lot of light. Pieces of the spider queen lie on the floor. Joseph runs forward. He notices something and stops. Joseph realizes that she is decomposing and notes that there will probably be no third phase of transformation. Joseph looks at the scared spiders and asks if they are begging for mercy. He does a roundhouse kick, saying that he would not look for them if he did not need to finish them all off. The brunette takes the life of the dead spider's offspring with several blows. The system informs him that the system quest to destroy all the monsters in the underground city has been completed, and the reward for the quest is a storage ring, which allows you to shrink objects and store them inside the ring, and objects can also be taken out at any time, and that the level of the gloves has been increased to medium, and the ability to use defense against poison and physical attacks once a day has been obtained, and that his mastery of the afterlife sword art has reached 100% and increased to level 2, and that mastery of internal power has increased to 20% and mastery of perception has increased by 10%. He looks at the diagram of his characteristics. Joseph smiles and notes that the real battle has greatly increased his characteristics, and the diagram has also increased. Soon he will be able to fill it completely. The system also tells him that he has completed a secret mission in the underground city, and is receiving a puzzle piece as a reward. Joseph stares at it in confusion. He examines the item and asks if it is a puzzle piece and why there is only one. He sees a notification asking him to collect all the puzzle pieces to restore an item called a god bone. Joseph throws it aside and asks if he should collect all the pieces and who would do something like that. The piece suddenly changes its flight vector and returns. Joseph opens his mouth in shock. The guy looks at the screen and asks if it has penetrated the system. Joseph, horrified, interrogates the system if this is a mandatory task and why it constantly complicates his life. The brunette begins to scream at the entire lair. Amid sparks, the system says that a mysterious god bone fragment has appeared in portals around the world and energy fluctuations have begun. The man with the beard looks questioningly. The voiceover says that the most powerful of this world sensed that something was about to happen. Dark silhouettes look around strangely. The scene shifts to someone's hallway. William is sitting on a chair and asking how it went, because for their sake he hopes that people will not know that there is something fishy about this death. Monica awkwardly says that they would not dare to fail the task that William gave them and that she pushed him off a cliff that seemed bottomless, and he should be dead unless he learned to fly in the process. She continues to smile and says that when the portal closes, his body will teleport out, and everything will look exactly as if he died from the fall and no trace will be found. William gets up from the chair and says that this is good, but can be considered a great achievement, and adds that she will be generously rewarded. William takes her by the chin and continues that she should tell him what she wants, and he will certainly give it to her. She looks down sheepishly and replies that she wouldn't dare ask him for anything, she would be willing to accept any reward he offers her, to which he smirks and notes her foresight. The man slaps her on the butt and tells her not to worry, as he will take care of her. She looks at him sheepishly and sighs. The boys close their eyes. He turns to them and tells them to leave their account numbers in the evaluation hall, and he will transfer their reward to them a little later. Against the background of a dwarf tree, William continues that they should not forget that they should pretend to be unhappy when they go there so that no one will suspect them of what they did, to which everyone unanimously agrees. The scene moves to the evaluation hall. People are standing near the receptionists. The group approaches there, saying that they want to report their results. The girl with the ponytail notes that the mission information says that their team consists of 5 people and asks where the 5th one is. Everyone is loudly declaring that he died, and even though he was low-ranked, he had great potential and they couldn't protect him. The girl holds the rectangle in her hands and notes that it's a real tragedy and thinks that people die here every day. Why are these devils behaving like this? She weighed the square objects and says that this time they got about 240,000. Someone from behind screams and asks him to wait. Joseph looks at them and says that he also has something here. Monica is horrified and asks why he is alive. 2 more of the team are tensed. The brunette smiles and asks again what she said, because didn't they tell her that he died? The woman with the ponytail looks at him and asks him to show her his resources. The guy puts his hand in the bag. Joseph pours blue stones onto the scales. There is a storage ring on his finger. Someone saw the number of stones, because they are too small and there are too many of them. The girl sees the figure of 500,000 and specifies the rank of the dungeon where they were. She is surprised to name the figure of 500,000, because if divided by 5 people, then each will receive almost as much as can be received for clearing a dungeon several ranks higher, because this is a net daily income of 100,000. The plot moves to the William family's meeting room. The girl with bangs bows and says that this is all for today. Joe frowned and asked her to wait another second, because she said that an abnormally high profit was registered today from one of the underground cities and asked her to clarify what exactly she was talking about, to which she replied that she was talking about the insect cave, and according to the report of the employee of the evaluation halls, the profit was twice as much as average. William angrily hits the table and asks again about the insect cave. Violet Eyes gives him a positive answer, for it is said that a man named Joseph brought in about 500,000 worth of magic crystals by himself, and the total profit reached 1 million, which is half of their family's share. Amanda is dumbfounded when she calls out the name Joseph. Joe asks what is wrong with them, and what all the fuss is about. William and Amanda look down and say that everything is fine. The man with the ponytail smiles, saying that Joseph is a low-ranking hunter who joined them recently, and that the young lady personally recruited him. Amanda looks at the floor awkwardly. Joe smirks and says that it is unexpected and clarifies if this means that she personally knows him. The girl blushed and answered positively, adding that he is a student of their school, and after she saw what he is capable of, she asked William to invite him to their training group. William fearfully turns to the leader and says that the squad the guy joined are his subordinates, and they said that Joseph separated from the team without permission and refused to obey orders. They also said that he acted strangely and did not look like a good guy at all. The gray-haired man noticed how he behaved and says that although Joseph is of such a low rank, he works very hard and has the best grades in the weapons class where he taught, and if he is honest with them, then he also likes the guy, and in his personal opinion he is a reliable person and does not look like someone who would steal things. William frowns and wonders if this old man is tired of living. The others just exchange glances. Lori looks at the notepad and adds that according to the statistics of the underground cities, all profits are within normal limits and their indicators have increased in the insect cave. This fact excludes the possibility of robbery. Joe rubs his chin and continues that in other words, even if they do not look at the fact that Joseph has a low rank, he is quite gifted. Amanda smiles and replies that even though the rank is low, he is still able to defeat a hunter of a higher rank, but she does not know why he is still rated one rank lower. Joe raises his hand and says that this is good, and since this man is good at making money, he offers to officially make him part of the assault team, and since it was Amanda who recruited him, from now on he goes under her direct subordination, and besides, he has long been thinking about letting her participate in the company's affairs because later she will imagine her to create her own assault team. The girl stood up and agreed. William nervously bites his nails, thinking that even such a simple task was beyond his strength, and that he is incredibly worthless. Joe looked at him with displeasure and asked what was wrong with his face, because maybe he wanted to tell them something. William smiled awkwardly and denied it, because everything was fine. He snapped his fist and thought that this old man was annoying him, and that he would pay with death for ruining his plans. The plot takes us to the university. Someone is giving a lecture. The students are indignant and look at Joseph, until he realizes that even the teacher is staring at him. He is walking with Kate. She asks where he has been lately. He has not been seen anywhere, and he has not even responded to her messages. The guy smiled and replied that he was too busy and his grades are pretty good, so these 2 weeks will not particularly affect anything. Kate frowns and adds that there are rumors that he has joined the fan family and asks if that is why he has been disappearing. Joseph looks awkwardly and thinks that he has realized the reason why everyone around him is acting so strange and does not understand who has already managed to let it slip, and replies that he does not understand what she is talking about, because he does not have any abilities and he is definitely not going to join the aforementioned family. The girl sighs and thinks that it does not matter, and if he does not want to talk about this topic, then nothing can be done. A view of them from behind. Someone is screaming in an alley. Someone is being beaten, while someone sends everyone to hell and says that he has never met someone like that and asks if he can just die, while the blonde says that she will make him spill everything. Kate looks there and notices that they are mocking him. The pink-haired girl stands in the passage and orders them to leave the guy alone. The redhead grinned and asked what she was talking about, because she must have gotten it all wrong, and the second added that she shouldn't poke her nose into other people's business, because it only concerns them. Kate shouted back at them, asking them what they thought was fair or not for a crowd to attack one person. One of them ran at her, asking if she thought he wouldn't beat her because she was a girl. Joseph sent him back with one blow. The team member flew back to the others. Joseph gritted his teeth, saying that if they had any problems, he suggested they just discuss it, because there was no need to beat a person for no reason, and added that the way they mock the weak here shows what cowards they really are. The redhead recognized him as Joseph. The blonde asked if he was a family member. The group suddenly started to run, because they thought their victim had acquired a bodyguard. Kate approached the guy and asked if he was okay, because they could take him to the hospital if necessary. The guy in the bandana yells that they should thank him for staying alive and brags that he now has a personal bodyguard and that they should just try to beat him up. The two stand in bewilderment. The man in the bandana continues that they are just nobodies and so on, while Joseph notes that the guy seems to be completely fine, and the girl suggests that they go. The guy turns around to thank them. He looks into a completely empty alley. The scene is again on the campus. Joseph looks at something in surprise. The man in green is recruiting for the Joseph Club and suggests that they come and swoop in, because recruitment for his club begins today. He looks ahead and continues that despite the fact that some people have awakened their powers, most are still ordinary people. But some awakened hunters try to mock those who are weaker and ask if they will put up with this state of affairs. But today Joseph plans to become their savior and help them free themselves from the oppression of those who mock them, and invites them to join his club, where he will protect them and do this no matter who the participants are and how many there are. He will protect absolutely everyone. People look at Steve while he continues that not long ago he himself was also mocked. But he came to him and saved him, and that is why he decided to speak out about it, that the end of those days filled with suffering has come. The first asks if he has gone crazy, holding such a recruitment at school, To which the blonde replies that a couple of days ago he heard that Joseph joined the family, and then this news seemed funny to him. But then he learned his rank on top of everything and asked himself if this guy is even capable of protecting anyone. The second adds that people of this rank can be enough for ordinary people, but what to do in the case of stronger hunters, because it is so convenient. After they talked about him for a couple of days, he finally showed up. Joseph runs at Steve with all his might. He angrily hits the table, asking if he made the counter for him. Steve looks at the debris in horror. The guy screams that he could not even imagine such a thing, because he is trying to attract people to a group created in honor of a person he does not even know. Joseph looks angrily and asks what he was thinking at all and clarified did he tell him that he needed a fan base, because he would simply destroy his social life with such methods. Steve happily replies that his heroism yesterday touched him to the marrow of his bones, and it seemed to him that he was able to change the whole world, which is why he is trying to help him and asks if he does not want to help people. Joseph does not slow down and denies the above, asking him to leave and not dare to repeat such a thing again, because they are not friends. The plot takes us to the city. The man rubs his chin and laughs, saying that he heard that Joseph got involved with that guy and everything ended pretty badly. And the second adds that Steve was still pestering and you can't scare him off so easily. The blonde says that her baby is in the center of attention. Kate thinks discontentedly about the fan club and notes that she thinks that this is not such a bad idea, because it turns out that Joseph's actions can attract the attention of the Ronin with their ulterior motives and therefore they should act more carefully. The voiceover also mentions that since the abilities began to awaken in people, those who were lucky enough to have such power gained an advantage over those who were deprived of power, and eventually the state began to take control of those who had any abilities and many of them joined the security forces. But there are still those in the world who try to take advantage of their advantages over ordinary people. He continues that some individuals commit even more terrible acts, because during the day such people usually honor the law, but secretly from everyone they enjoy killing ordinary people, and at some point they united and began to call themselves Ronin and do not pose much of a threat to their society. In the background of the back streets of the city, the squatting man asks if he has heard that there is some very brave guy near the university, and they say that he is trying to gather a group to protect ordinary people, to which the second one smirks and asks if he has declared war on them and notes that he needs to be taught a good lesson. The first one notices something and draws the attention of the second one. The guy pulls up his hood and whispers that the passerby has very expensive clothes and must be very rich, to which the second one suggests that they get to work quickly. The man in the suit stretched out his hands and asks to let him go because he has money, and he can pay, and will give them everything they want with a request not to kill him. The guy lit a fire and says that the old man did not understand him, because they are not here to steal money from him. The first one continues that they came to kill him specifically because of his money, and the second one that they really don't care about the money, because they just like to listen to the screams of rich people like him. While the guys are about to kill the man, someone appeared on the horizon. Someone caught one by the head. The second one was not left out either. The unknown person slams their faces into the asphalt. The guy screams in pain. The unknown person looks at the victim and asks if he is okay. The man looks in horror and asks who she is. The girl does not show her face and answers that they are guardians. Their goal is to protect ordinary people from hunters. A blue thing with an emblem fell on the floor. Kate looks at it. A lamp shines from the window. Joseph looks at the ceiling and says that he cannot believe that such idiots really exist and asks how this is even possible. He looks at his phone. Someone wrote him a message apologizing for what happened earlier, and as an apology he got a pass to an unattended dungeon and invites him to join him, and all the loot will be his. Joseph looks displeased and does not understand where he got his phone number. The guy refuses, to which he says that they are friends and asks him to make time for him. Something is happening in the background of the building. A man with a ponytail is standing by the car. Someone is preparing to attack him. The old man turns around in time. William killed him and asks how he dared to go against his direct orders and decide to protect Joseph. There is a card with a wolf next to him. People covered the corpse with cloth. The paramedic shows the card to Joe saying that this was found near the corpse. Joe looks at it and asks if it is Ronin, because how could they kill a man in their parking lot, and how did this even happen? The plot moves to a bright room. Joseph happily asks the boss what dungeon they are going to today. Monica is indignant why this guy is still here. And the second one asks why he is not dead yet, because of him they lost their reward. Jasper gets angry and says that there is a team for a raid of a higher rank over there, and they do not have enough supplies and he recommends that he go with them. Joseph calmly looks away. A group of mages goes into the portal. They all find themselves under the scorching sun. Joseph looks at the dialogue box asking if there is a quest here, to which the system gives him the quest objective of destroying all the monsters in the dungeon, and the reward for completing the quest is a physical recovery skill. The man with the blindfold looks around. There is a sandstorm ahead of them, and he gives the command to get ready. A monster bursts out of the sand. The man with the blindfold directs the mages to neutralize it. They cast a spell. Each of the mages directs their magic at it. The creature is bound by magic rings. The commander gives the order to kill. The mages, as one, shoot fire at it. The monster flies apart in flames. Joseph sees that the quest progress is already 20%. He looks stunned and thinks that this is amazing, because the monsters did not even have time to get close. The commander takes him by the shoulder and continues that the first wave was finished, and now the supply team is coming. They must collect all the loot while they move on. Joseph watches the mages go. As they fight, the system reports that the progress is already at 39%. Someone threw a sausage into the sky and the progress is now 50-10%. Joseph looks up in horror while the commander orders them to be tied up. A high-ranking boss named Tonian appears. The mages prepare to attack as ordered. Joseph watches the lightning in the sky. Lightning strikes the monster one after another. The commander gives the order to continue the attack while the monster begins to fry. Joseph is surprised by the amazing power of the mages. The monster glows blue while the progress of the task is already 99%. The guy looks at the satisfied mages who are getting ready to go home, and another one suggests going shopping. The guy notices something stone sticking out of the sand. A proud turtle appears. Joseph takes up his sword and asks if there is another monster here and asks for permission to kill it. The commander smiles and asks him not to worry, because she has very high defense and even the highest ranking masters cannot penetrate it, and last time the fan family called a top level hunter to kill her, but the magic crystals that fell from her cost about 20 yuan, so the game was not worth the candle and it was a waste of money and time. The magician also smiles and adds that she has high defense, but she cannot attack, so he should just leave her alone, because she will simply be in the background. Joseph asks if she is really that strong, because he does not believe them. The guy injured his hand and notes that this is true, to which the commander urges him to leave. The brunette clenches his fist and asks him for permission to try again, while he himself thinks that the turtle must be the remaining 1%. Joseph is preparing to hit the turtle, while the girl in the hat notes that he is very stupid, and the commander says to forget it, because he can come back anytime. The guy strikes with the sword. After some time, he is still trying. The turtle is already rolling his eyes. Joseph tiredly notes that his actions really have no effect. The guy exhales and decides to think of an easier option. He imagines a chainsaw and suggests trying it. The guy holds the sword in concentration. The energy is transformed into large teeth. Then it is transformed into smaller teeth. He remembers the old man's lessons and thinks that he has already seen a suitable technique. He opens his eyes sharply. Joseph is preparing to saw the turtle. The system notes that it was a perfect blow. The turtle has a cut on its neck. Joseph is glad that he is starting to succeed. It has already gotten dark, and he is still not far behind the poor turtle. The scratch has become deeper. Joseph looks displeased and says that this cannot be, that at first he could give about 10 perfect blows, and now only 3, because if he cannot use this technique, then he will not defeat this turtle. The system notifies him that this was the 97th perfect blow. Joseph grits his teeth and tells himself not to rush, just calm down and remember his best hit. The guy tries to cut the turtle. The turtle is so tired that it started making frog sounds. The system counts the 98th perfect hit. The turtle's defense is broken. Joseph frowns and notes that he finally wounded it. He hits it again, which counts as the 99th. The turtle tiredly prepares for death. Joseph delivers the final blow. He cuts off the turtle's head. The system counts the 100th perfect hit. The system notifies him that he has completed the task of destroying all the monsters in the dungeon, and he will receive a reward in the form of a physical recovery skill and his stamina will be instantly restored once a day. He disappeared from the dungeon. The system also notifies him that the afterlife swordsmanship of level 2 and the compression of the sword aura can be increased to 100% and upgraded to level 3, and that he has performed a series of 100 perfect strikes and has received the ability of Judge, thanks to which he can improve any technique to a perfect state. And the ability itself can be improved to break through higher, and the ability allows you to overcome the upper limit of any skill. Joseph sat down tiredly on the floor and clarified the name of the skill. A picture of an adult Joseph and his partner. The guy is fighting the king of the ice wolves, while the voiceover says that after Joseph received the title of judge, his strength has increased many times over. He stands in front of the ghoul, and the latter continues that in 2 weeks he managed to pass several low-level dungeons, after which he became even stronger. Joseph sits on the phone, thinking that the low-level dungeons of the Fan family no longer cause him any problems, but he is not yet qualified enough for high-level ones and he needs to find a new way to train. He reads the correspondence and continues that he wonders what rank the dungeon is that Steve told him about. Against the backdrop of the city, the voice continues to say that today, dungeons are something like mineral deposits. Most of them are monopolized by the government or huge groups, but dungeons continue to appear, so it is almost impossible to monopolize them all, which is why dungeons with no rank often appear. He continues that the income of such dungeons is extremely unstable, so the Fan family and others are not eager to claim them, and these dungeons are still under the control of the government. But they are often not used in any way, which is why they are called ownerless dungeons. He says that anyone can enter such a dungeon, as long as they have a pass, and many single cultivators who are not in the training group of large families go to such places to train. People are walking somewhere. Joseph looks around. Steve waves his hand and says that he is here. He introduces Mike to Joseph, saying that he is currently in the fan family. Then he does the opposite, and says that it is Mike and that he has been through a huge number of abandoned dungeons in 6 months, and that he is a real star among solo cultivators. Mike asks him discontentedly why he came so late, because he had been waiting for him there for half a day. Joseph sullenly replies that he does not understand what he is talking about, because the meeting is scheduled for 9 o'clock and he arrived on time, after which he asks if he is looking for a fight. Steve whispers in his ear that he has a rather nasty character, and he is very impatient, and he hopes that Joseph can stand it, because they will still have to work together, so starting a fight would not be the best idea. Steve smiles and says that he asks them to wait here, and he will go and make sure that they can enter the dungeon. Steve goes to the guards and says that they have not seen each other for a long time, while they ask if it is him again. Joseph frowns and thinks that he did say he got a pass to the dungeon, but perhaps he shouldn't have judged this book by its cover. Steve says he got 2 passes again, while one remarks that he's a resourceful guy. The guard's face changes and replies that it's a low-level pass, and this dungeon is a bit higher rank, so it's not suitable. Steve smirks and asks to just let them through, since they're not some kind of crooks, to which the guard replies that he doesn't, even if it's so close. The man in the bandana smiles and insists, asking if they didn't like the method he recommended last time. Since he has something better this time, they can make more money this way, and why shouldn't they? Both guards exchange glances. Steve waves his hand, saying he's done and they can go. A portal opens in the ruins of the city. The system notifies that they need to destroy all the monsters, and the reward is unknown. The goblins grin. The guys look around and are perplexed by the goblins. Joseph frowns and thinks that there are too many of them, therefore, there will be problems. Mike snaps his fingers. Flames burst forward. The goblins burn alive, while the progress of the task is estimated at 30%. Steve and a couple of people look at him happily and say that this was to be expected from him, because he is so strong. Joseph looks puzzled and wonders if he is a mage, because judging by the distance, it looks like a high-ranking assault team flame, or even stronger. Mike urges them to follow him. They enter an empty room. The guy snaps his fingers. Flames illuminate the room. More goblins run towards them. Joseph prepares to attack with his sword. He strikes them multiple times. The system estimates the progress at 50%. The guys are happy in that he is also very strong and they were very lucky this time. Mike frowns and asks if he's really that stupid, because this floor is already very old, and he's also using cutting attacks, because he'll just break the supporting beams and the house will collapse, and he'll just have to wait until he dies. Joseph angrily asks who he thinks he is to teach him, and he asks again, while Steve tries to calm them down and asks why they don't just destroy all the goblins, because their priority is the mission and suggests moving on. The squad goes down the corridor. Joseph frowns and points to a crevice and asks to use fire to shine there, because he wants to see if there are monsters there, to which he replies with displeasure that if he wants to just waste time, then let him go there himself, because he doesn't have time to entertain him, and people like him don't have a single chance to defeat the boss anyway. Steve thinks tensely that these two are a great match, that getting them to work together is problematic. Mike turns around sullenly and asks if he wants to go with him, because if he wants to, then let him go, because he doesn't care where exactly he's going to mess around next. The people gossip that the guy is strong, but too slow, and therefore it would be better to follow Mike. A huge goblin wants to attack Mike. He touches him with his finger joint. The goblin immediately catches fire. The people turn to him, because he's still moving, and ask if he's going to kill him, to which he goes and replies that if they want to kill him, then let them do it, and asks not to waste his time. Joseph looks at him discontentedly, asking who he thinks he is. The brunette watches him and says that if he wants to go with them, then he should go, because he doesn't have to follow him specifically, to which he receives in response that he personally asked him to come, so he can't leave him alone. Joseph angrily kills the goblins with his sword. Mike pathetically kills the goblins with tongues of flame. The group stands near the door and someone asks if this is the boss's room. Mike knocks it out with fire. The group enters and looks around. The empty room with torches is quite large. The knight sits leaning on his sword. His eyes light up while someone asks if this is a goblin. Mike lights it without thinking and then asks why it didn't work. The knight gets up as if nothing happened. Mike realizes in horror that his enemy is wearing fire-resistant armor. The guy points his hand with the brilliant idea of simply increasing the flame's temperature. The boss deflects the fire with all his might. The pink-haired guy flies there on jet propulsion. The guy tries to finish him off with fireballs thinking that he will definitely overwhelm him with numbers. The knight puts out his hand and that's it. The guy angrily runs at him himself. The boss looks at him carefully. Mike puts his hands to his eyes and says that he will then shoot him right in the eyes. Flames rise from under the armor in different directions. The armor falls into state. It has decomposed. Mike notes that this is a complete trifle, while someone notes the huge amounts of materials that have fallen. In the background of the torch, they decide to quickly collect everything and go to the next dungeon. Joseph goes to meet them with Steve. Mike smirks contentedly and asks if he liked collecting scraps after him, because there are still some materials left, and if he likes it so much, he can collect them. Joseph gets angry. The group leaves exclaiming that they are going to the next dungeon, and someone agrees that he is so calm when they are walking with Mike. Steve sees a two-handed sword and asks why they left it, while the system notifies that the mission progress is 100%. Joseph is stunned that it seems that there are not even small monsters left here. The guy taps the walls and decides to check the dungeon for secret passages. Steve looks at the sword, which is glowing. The handle is shiny. The system notifies that the mission progress is falling by a few percent. Steve asks the guy to look ahead. Joseph is horrified to see a notification that the mission is already 97% down. The sword emits more and more green smoke. The goblin takes the sword. He lets out a scream. Joseph takes the sword and asks Steve to go back. The goblin swings. He hits the ground while the guy is trying to save himself. Joseph uses the ability on the sword and prepares to attack. He goes straight for the enemy. The goblin turned around while the sword is already at the level of his nose. The guy pierces him straight in the throat. Joseph clenches his teeth and uses the ability to release the wind of blades. The green guy is blown off his roof. The brunette lands on the ground. The enemy falls dead. Steve notes that this is great, because he killed the monster instantly. Joseph looks at him and says that something is wrong. The goblin's head glows. The headless monster gets up. He delivers a slashing blow. Smoke forms a prosthetic head. The goblin is fully restored. Joseph is confused by the fact that he was revived. The green guy goes on the attack. Joseph cuts off the monster's arm with a sword strike. It is said that this boss can resurrect, but he has a fragile body and low movement speed. The hero delivers a blow, cutting off the head. The guy attacks by cutting the body in half crosswise, and it is reported that the hero easily killed him several times. Joseph stands with his back to the cut monster. The creature with a severed leg fell to the ground. The body of the monster magically disappears. Steve runs up to the main hero and says that the light is disappearing. It looks like after 7 deaths he died finally. Joseph looks ahead and warns not to come closer, because something is wrong here. Blue magic was hovering in the air and someone said that the light is gathering in one point. The silhouette of a new monster appeared. In front of them stood the boss of rank A, the Goblin Warrior. The guys were shocked by what they saw, and the hero exclaimed that the monster had evolved. The goblin's eyes lit up. He took the sword in his hands. The guy opened his eyes wide in surprise. The hero dodged a bright burst of energy. He gritted his teeth, looking at it. The monster attacked Joseph. The guy leaned back and couldn't believe his eyes that with one swing he created 3 blades of light. He looked at it in horror. The hero jumped aside from the blows and screamed that each of them was capable of causing damage, and it was not an illusion. The guy dodged to the side and asked how to fight him. The goblin attacked past the target, not hitting the fleeing hero. Joseph ran into the wall. The monster jumped at him, and he thought he was finished. He put his hand out, ready to attack. The monster turned around sharply, sighing. Steve was standing behind him and summoned the magic shadow mockery. The young man crossed his arms and said that he would detain him and let the hero think of something. The goblin turned to Steve, interested in him. The young man ran away in fear, shouting for the damn boss to follow him so he could slap him. Joseph watched this and thought about whether he was able to use taunt, and wondered if it even worked on A-rank bosses since it was a high-level skill. He said that even considering the fact that he had killed this boss several times already, he still chose Steve as a target, since because of this skill he hated the young man more than him, not understanding how he managed to hide something like this. The young man ran away from the monster, screaming. Joseph adjusted his hair, and thought that it seemed like this skill was the only thing he had, and he wouldn't last long. The hero, taking the sword in his hands, closed his eyes and activated the judge skill and increased his perception to the maximum. Activation occurred. The hero saw the goblin attacking Steve in black and white and thought that it was incredible, and he could see their movements even with his eyes closed. The boy had his eyes closed. A flash of energy flew by. The hero with glowing eyes attacked the goblin from behind. The monster effortlessly blocked Joseph's strike. The boy looked away and shouted for Steve to stop his taunt and hide. The young man looked at him and shouted. The goblin blocked and threw the hero aside. Steve watched as the monster attacked Joseph with 3 blades. The hero smiled and thought that his perception was stronger now, and he could easily follow the trajectory of his sword. The goblin decisively took a stance and the boy thought that the monster was going to use some kind of technique. The hero, leaning back a little, carefully watched his actions and admitted that he could calculate his movements. The goblin went on the attack using a chain of 5 light cuts. Joseph watched him with concentration. He counterattacked using a perfect copy. The opponents had their backs to each other when they attacked. The energy strike hit the monster and the hero frowned, judging that his swordsmanship was much better than his. The goblin's body disappeared and a mission progress notification appeared, equal to 100%. Joseph smiled and said that it seemed like he had 9 lives and finally killed him. A mission reward message popped up, an ability called Substitute Doll. The plot said that after leaving the dungeon, Mike felt unsatisfied and immediately led the team to another abandoned dungeon. Frozen mountains were visible in the distance, and it was said that this was Arctic permafrost. A group of people followed Mike. The guys looked up, seeing something. A huge bird, shrouded in blue, was flying above them. It landed on the ice. The bird spread its wings. It was the boss of Brang, the bird of snow and ice. One guy behind Mike, smiling, asked if it was the boss. The second said that it was the boss of the ice element, and that with his fire element, Mike's brother would be able to hold him back, which meant that another victory was just around the corner. The guy activated orange magic with his hand. He released flames right at the bird. The boss flew up and dodged Mike's attack. The character watched the bird circling above him, and clicking his tongue, noted how agile it was. The guy raised his hand up and sent many energy balls, saying that then he would take it by numbers. The boss's gaze sharpened. He flapped his wings, gaining altitude. The bird redirected the flame balls back to the oncoming air. Fire poured down on the people from above, and they screamed about how hot it was and about the boss reflecting the flames right back at them. Mike looked up in surprise and wondering why this bird had both the attribute of ice and wind. The guy raised his hand and conjured a new ball, screaming, "How could he do that?" He raised a huge fireball above himself. The bird opened its beak and released chunks of ice towards him. The boss sent the ice down towards the people. Mike threw the huge ball at the boss. The chunks of ice and the fireball met halfway. Steam formed from which sharp, blade-like ice flew. Mike, with his hand raised, looked at what was happening in horror. The ice stuck into the people, who, screaming, tried to dodge. The guy watched with annoyance and thought about how his fire could not melt her ice spikes and that she was holding him back with her attributes. Mike turned around, looking after the crowd, shouted that they were in trouble and that they should retreat, and he would cover them. The people ran as fast as they could, apologizing. The men looked up at the bird, their mouths open in fear. It attacked with ice blocks, falling in front of the runners. The boys turned around in panic at Mike's shout that they needed to spread out to the left and right. The boy released flames onto the ice blocks. He looked at the melted exit in the block and shouted for them to hurry up. The boys ran out in confusion and thanked the hero, asking what he would do. Mike turned around, looked at them with disdain, asked if they were underestimating him and told them to stop talking nonsense and just leave. The boss brought down an ice blow on the boy. Mike, gritting his teeth, counterattacked with flames. Joseph and Steve walked out of the portal, the young man with a bag in his hands, laughing about how much loot there was. He smiled, looking at the overfilled bag, noting that today's catch was not bad. The hero grabbed his head and said that he would give him his share after he exchanged everything for money, and they would split everything 50-50. Steve laughed and said that Joseph was entitled to 60, and he was entitled to 40. The guy replied that he could split everything equally, it didn't matter. The young man looked away and asked the hero if he saw it. Mike and his company approached them, upset by what had happened and complaining about someone's hands being burned and someone's but being frozen. Steve approached the guy and asked what had happened and what kind of boss had managed to humiliate Brother Mike like that. The hero looked away in annoyance. The guys from his team threw up their hands and started talking about how this boss was too strong, he had 2 attributes of ice and wind and that he managed to hold off Brother Mike, adding that they barely got out of there. Steve looked at him in surprise and asked how strong he was and what he looked like. Mike got mad, turned his head and asked him to stop asking stupid questions. The young man laughed and apologized, admitting that it was rude of him. The hero put his hands in his pockets and, smirking, asked why he and this loser only just came out now, and said that he warned them, this is just a waste of time. Steve took out a bag of rewards and said that it was not true. In fact, they never defeated the boss, and that he had 9 lives and he kept resurrecting until he turned into an A-rank boss, adding that they put in all their efforts and were able to defeat him. The guys showed what they got from the boss. The protagonist adjusted his hair and noted that it looked like his impatient nature would lead to nothing good, so he advised him to behave calmly. As he himself was doing, Joseph said that he managed to defeat that boss. But Mike failed with his task and it looked like he was the only one wasting his time here. Mike instantly got angry at the hero. The guy turned around and called Steve, who smiled and said that that was all for today, and offered to work together another time. Mike watched them go and cursed that he could not afford to refuse. He thought about how, having faced a powerful opponent, he could not defeat him and did not even protect his team. He turned to the boys and thought that he had injured them with his own attacks, and that it was a shame. He thought that his father was right, and it was time to disband the team. The light on the upper floor was shining through the window. The hero, sitting on the bed, looked at the card, thinking that he had previously received this ability, allowing him to restore his physical strength once a day and that with full physical strength he now had 9 lives. The substitute doll card said that after the time expired, he would be relaxed, namely paralyzed for 24 hours. Joseph turned to the lit-up screen of his smartphone. He looked at the screen and saw a notification that the training group would be holding a competition tomorrow to find new members. The next morning, there was a view of the fan clan arena. A crowd of spectators were watching the stage and a message was heard that the annual selection was declared open. Joe sat on the throne smiling and said that today was the day they would get a chance to enter a high-level dungeon. Amanda looked away and said that she hoped he could show his full strength. The host with the microphone loudly announced that the groups had been determined and the participants who took the first 8 places would get their place in the fan clan. He said that this year the number of participants had increased to 112 people, Adding that he was sure that everyone would see a spectacular show, he asked to clap for those who agreed with him. The people burst into applause. The girl turned to the hero behind his back, asking if he was confident in himself. Joseph crossed his arms and replied that he did not know the other participants, and therefore did not know. The young man looked at this smiling couple. The opponents attack each other in the air. The guy reflects the enemy's flame magic with his sword. The man covers himself with a shield from the girl's attack. The hero waited with a serious face for the fight, and the host's voice announced that the next participant would speak on behalf of the young lady, and it was Joseph. The young opponent bumped fists and was announced as on behalf of teacher Fong Dun, an opponent named Yang. The opponents stood opposite each other, and the host continued to talk about how one of them was a high-class F-rank rookie, and the other was ranked 9th last year, offering to see what the outcome of their fight would be. The hero exclaimed that he couldn't wait. Yang stood up and apologized, saying that last year he was one place short of joining the advanced raid group and had been below rank C all year. But this year he simply had to get promoted. The host shouted into the microphone, announcing the start. Yang moved from his place and used the magic of a fierce tiger strike. He ran into a powerful blow from Joseph. Yang flew back, hitting the wall. The hero looked at the aftermath of the counterattack with impassive eyes. The boy was sitting unconscious against the wall, and the host said that the participant who had taken 9th place last year had been knocked out in a few seconds, and announced Joseph as the winner. Joe turned around and told Amanda that it looked like the rumors weren't lying and she had found a real treasure. The girl smiled and agreed. In the second round, the hero also knocked out his opponent. In the third round, the opponent was trembling on his knees. The host waved his hand and announced that 8 candidates had been determined. The team of guys stood with sad faces and announced that everyone should congratulate them. Joseph turned to his neighbors and said that he didn't expect them to stay. The young man with a bandage on his face turned to him and said that he had watched his fights and couldn't even imagine, because he had underestimated him before. The host clenched his fists and announced that the 8 could now take part in raids of dungeons of rank C and above, adding that the battle was not over yet. He said that there were still 7 games ahead, the results of which would determine the champion, who would receive rare items from the owner himself. Joe spread his hands and said, to add spice to the whole thing, they were ready to offer the winner several special items, including weapons. He added that they would be free to choose an item that suited their characteristics. He hoped that this way the duels would become much more exciting. The host announced a half-hour break, offering the players to make their choice. William gathered some of the players and said that he would rig the lottery a little and let them choose, and all that remained for them to do was to deal with Joseph at all costs. Monica objected, noting that this guy was damn strong, and besides, all this would happen in front of a huge crowd of people. The man shook his fist in anger and said that he had already prepared everything, listing that the guy's favorite weapon was a long sword, on which he had applied a weakening poison to the hilts of all the available swords and said that when he touched the hilt, the poison would slowly spread throughout his body, and they only needed to wait until he weakened and pretend that you killed him completely by accident. And after that he would undertake to defend them, stating that they were innocent. The young man, plugging his ear, asked why he needed all this, because if he was really strong, he would meet him in the final anyway, where he could personally deal with him, explaining that they should not resort to poison, because it was too noticeable. William looked at him and noted that the person doing the post-match autopsy worked for him. Because no one knew anything, he told him that he had everything under control, asking if he doubted it. The guy threw up his hands and said that he wouldn't dare. The host announced that they were back in the competition. He pointed to the table with weapons and invited the players to come up on stage and choose a weapon. The heroes walked around the table, examining the weapons. The guy looked at them and thought that these swords were too decorated and extremely asymmetrical, saying that his sword was still better. Joseph turned and walked away from the table, and the host announced that the hero did not choose a weapon and seemed confident in his abilities. Joe scratched his chin and noted that he had a lot of character. Amanda smiled and replied that he had obsessive-compulsive disorder, and perhaps he did not like the weapon. William touched his chin and thought about the fact that the hero did not choose any of the swords, which meant that the first step was a failure. He smiled, remembering something. The player held the weapon and smiled confidently, and thought that it did not matter. He had a red magic knife in his hands, and he reasoned that this bloodthirsty dagger is able to absorb a person's stamina if you touch it, and then they can do without blood. The guy looked with a sly grin, and William continued to think about the fact that the guy is a killer, and he has stealth skills, thanks to which he can easily strike at close range. William crossed his arms and thought that maybe he managed to avoid his first step, but the end will still be the same. The players approached each other with weapons, and the host said that the participants made their choice, and the first round begins. Monica, with fear in her eyes, noted that he was using his own sword. The host lowered his hand and announced the beginning of the battle. The girl raised her hand and shouted for them to stop. The hero looked at his opponent, who said that she gave up. The presenter asked her again in surprise, and she, lowering her hand, explained that she had already made it into the top 8 and that was enough to join, which meant she didn't have to fight anymore. The guy listened to her in surprise. The arena chanted angrily, saying that if she didn't want to do it, she shouldn't take someone else's place and get lost. William thought with disappointment that she was a coward. The diagram highlighted the names of the players and the presenter announced that the first round was over and Joseph had won. The second round was beginning. The opponent put a blade to the opponent's neck. The diagram was updated, advancing the names. It led the names to the final cage. The spotlights shone on the opponents, and the presenter said that everyone was waiting for the final match to begin soon. He exclaimed that the clash of two tigers would certainly lead to a fierce battle. The arena was bursting with the exclamations of the spectators. Joe watched closely and noticed that it was getting more and more interesting, because Joseph from Kwanshui would be facing Ting from Chunya in the final. He said that he couldn't wait to see the outcome of this fight. Amanda watched with a smile and agreed. William watched with a smirk and agreed. The host waved his hand and shouted that they had begun. The heroes collided, striking each other with their weapons. Ting looked into his eyes furiously. The sword and blade blocked each other. Joseph, gritting his teeth, grabbed the hilt with his other hand. Ting struck his opponent between the legs. He calmly watched as Joseph fell to the ground. The hero kicked his opponent aside. The guy attacked, throwing himself at Ting. He used the magic of 3 blades. His opponent looked in surprise and did not believe his eyes, seeing 3 blades of light. Only Joseph remained in the ring. He looked ahead and exclaiming, did not immediately understand what had happened. Amanda asked in surprise if this was invisibility. The boy looked around silently. He felt something and looked down. The invisible opponent hit him, but the boy blocked the blow, putting his sword. The weapon ended up near Joseph's body. The boy used magic and began to see the opponent in the fight. Tin, frowning, thought about what was happening. The hero attacked with 3 light blades. The invisible opponent was angry and thought that if he had not blocked his attack with his sword, he would have ripped his stomach open. He wondered what was happening and if he could see him. Tin approached the hero and decided to make sure. He extended the blade in front of his face, but the hero was looking the other way. The adversary thought that it seemed like he could not see. He frowned and decided to take advantage of the moment. Joseph sensed danger near him. He dodged the blade strike, bending down. The boy swung the sword around himself, barely missing the invisible opponent. Tin watched him and realized that he couldn't detect him until he attacked. But could he smell his killing intent? Joseph listened around him and thought about how he had increased his perception to the maximum. And even taking into account his invisibility, he could still detect his location if he sensed danger. Tin swung his blade. He began to move faster and thought about what would happen if he added a little speed. He carried out attacks, moving quickly around Joseph. The guy spun around himself, parrying all the attacks of the invisible opponent with his sword. William watched with disdain and thought that he had already received the first wound from the bloodthirsty dagger. He thought about moving, because the more he moved, the faster the effect of the bloodthirsty dagger would work. The hero defended himself, missing some blows and thinking about what was happening and why he could not keep up with his speed. The guy, out of powerlessness, pulled the sword out in front of him. He fell to one knee, plunging his sword into the ground. The opponent, now visible, stabbed the hero in the chest. Amanda screamed and jumped up, worried about Joseph. People in the stands were shouting about different things, about how it looked like they had a winner, wondering if it was murder, and how quickly he missed. Blood spilled onto the floor and a sword fell nearby. Tin gloated and said that killing people was so much fun. Suddenly, the hero grabbed him by the shirt and screamed that he was caught. The opponent got angry and screamed that he was finished. A sharp blow to Tin's face. From the strong blow of the hero, the opponent flew to the side. A notification popped up about a perfect right hook. The young man, sliding along the floor, flew far away. He was passed out and bleeding. Joseph clenched his fist and looked at the magic cross in front of him. The cross dissolved into thin air. A message appeared about the substitute doll, which neutralizes a fatal wound and immediately restores 15%. The puncture in the hero's chest tightened, starting to heal. The beaten guy lay on the ground while the referee shouted that he was knocked out. He managed to pierce Joseph's chest, but Joseph still managed to make a successful counterattack. It seems that he was saving his healing skill for the last resort. The man raised his hand and shouted that he was ready to declare the winner. The surprised protagonist heard that he was the winner. The audience began to chant with delight. Joe clapped and said that this was an excellent fighting tactic. His face suddenly became serious. The man looked at the dagger lying next to the defeated guy. Looking at the weapon, Joe wondered if it was a bloodthirsty dagger, noting that due to its overly aggressive nature, it should not have been among the weapons on display. Joseph's chest was pierced by a bloodthirsty dagger. Even with the healing, he could not recover. Holding his chin, the man mentally guessed that in addition to his abilities that they could not test, there were still many secrets within him. He glanced back and noted that Joseph managed to defeat a B-rank assassin fighting with an A-rank weapon. He was afraid that his true ability was not inferior to William. In the arena, the judge's cry was heard, asking the champion to come up to the stage so that the master could personally present him with the prize. Joe stretched out his hand and declared that a true genius had appeared in the Jiangshan family. The protagonist was really good. No wonder Amanda had always admired him. Smiling, the protagonist replied that Joe was too kind to him. The man said with a smile on his face that he thought Joseph wouldn't mind the sword as a reward. After all, he himself used a similar weapon. Looking at the blade, the man said that this sword was called Kuntong's Last Clouds. Joseph should accept it. The protagonist opened his eyes wide and thought that this was not it. Closing his eyes, the protagonist thanked the master and said that he did not need the sword. Amanda approached him and told Joseph to show respect and accept the sword. Enraged, William cried out that the protagonist should not dare to do this, because the master gave him a gift, and he refuses it. Joe, with a satisfied look, assumed that the protagonist did not like the sword, and then asked him to tell him what Joseph wanted. The protagonist calmly replied that there was no need. He was suddenly taken aback by the pain. The protagonist fell to the floor. He rolled his eyes. Stunned, Joseph woke up in a hospital bed. He began to examine the room he was lying in. The nurse looked in on him and asked if he was awake. Standing in front of him, the girl told him that when he lost consciousness, his heartbeat was irregular, and he was sweating heavily. She didn't think that Joseph would wake up so quickly. People with abilities are really strange. Smiling, the nurse asked him to wait a second while she called the master. Looking down, the protagonist began to reason that he lost consciousness due to the effect of the substitute doll. Looking out the window, the protagonist thought that this was the Fan family's medical center. The skill description said that he would be paralyzed for 24 hours. He wondered how much time had passed. Before using it, he defeated the turtle and received a skill that restores the body. He thinks he will be able to get back on his feet quickly. Joe came to the ward and asked if he was awake. Smiling, Joseph said that he was fine and would be able to go home soon. The man said with a satisfied look that the protagonist had a strong body. He was stabbed by a bloodthirsty dagger, but it took him only half a day to recover. If someone else had been in his place, it would have taken him a month to recover, after which he came to the conclusion that Joseph should be recruited. It was worth it. Joe looked at Amanda and said that he had a good feeling about him, considering the level of his abilities and his desire to follow her. The man touched the protagonist's shoulder and said that if he did not like the sword he offered, he could think about his decision, because he would give him everything he wanted. Leaving the ward, Joe said that they still had a lot of things to do, so they could not stay, but Amanda would keep him company. Looking at William, the man clarified what happened to him and how much he had to do. Joe calmly said that if William didn't have much to do, he would find him a couple of tasks. The bloodthirsty dagger that Joseph's opponent used was given to him by someone from the outside. He was William's man, so he had to find out where he got it from. Frowning, the guy turned his attention to him. Leaving the room, William replied that he understood everything. Crossing his arms, the protagonist thought that William would give him a dagger, and he was sorry that they had not managed to kill him. The guy walked down the corridor and punched the wall. He cried out with an angry look that all these years he had conscientiously helped the family with the union and the selection of new talents. All members of this family sincerely admired him, but he did not understand what the old man was unhappy with. William imagined how he stood in front of Joe as a child and reasoned that they did not have a son, so he was adopted and raised as their heir. But now Joe helps Amanda. William looked at the girl with an embarrassed look and reasoned that he thought that sooner or later this family would become his. Amanda should be his too. The girl looked at the protagonist with a furious look, while William reasoned that everything changed when Joseph appeared. Veins from anger appeared on the guy's face and he came to the conclusion that the situation had changed. He should contact his family. The plot takes us to the Fan family villa, which was surrounded by the night sky. William was sitting at the table and heard the question of why he contacted them. Pouring himself a glass of wine, the guy replied that there were no security cameras and no need to hide. Putting his hand on the table, William asked his interlocutor to leave. The man with a displeased look asked how the guy was progressing, who last time said that he would soon become the head of the Fan family. William frowned and said that there were some problems. He thought that Joe suspected him. The old man began to strengthen Amanda's power. He thought that he might want to hand over his place to her. Looking at the man, William noticed that he had tried to get rid of her subordinates several times, but to no avail. He did not think he could take the position of the head peacefully, after which the man cried out that in that case, while he was still the first contender, he should hurry up and kill Joe. Holding his chin, the guy said that he would need his help. Joe was old, but he still had his abilities. Directly killing the head of the family was too dangerous, so he needed the help of the Chien family. Folding his arms, the stranger asked what William's plan was. William smirked and said that the key piece of the puzzle was Amanda. He imagined the guys surrounding the girl and told her that he needed the high-class members of the Chien family to kidnap Amanda and then send a message that she was being held hostage in an abandoned underground city. Because there were too many abandoned underground cities, the old man would send all the people of the Fong family to search for her. After all, she was his only child. There was also a high chance that he would personally go to look for her. In the guy's imagination, a picture appeared of Joe sending people in different directions and said that in any case, they could take this chance to separate the old man from his strongest warriors, and after that, they would lure him into a trap and kill him. The bandits surrounded the man while William said that Amanda would be their insurance. If Joe really turned out to be invincible and managed to escape, they could just kill the girl. Amanda knelt in shock as William said that even if the old man chose another heir, he would have no choice but to hand everything over to him. Clenching his fist, the man said that no matter what happened, the power of the 7 fans would be handed over to the Chien family. Standing up from the table, the man said that that was great and that he would immediately report everything to the master. They would start today, after which William asked him to take his time, noting that if he did everything directly, it could easily lead to a conflict between their families. Smiling, the man emphasized the fact that he already had someone in mind to blame for all the blame. The plot moved us to the Fan family building. There were many people sitting on both sides of Joe. Frowning, the man said that as far as they knew, the trading reports he presented had not passed the verification. They were practically stolen by the Qian family, and then asked if anyone had any thoughts on this matter. The boys looked down in fear. The furious girl loudly asked what there was to discuss, adding that as far as she knew, the strategic reports they had submitted had been rejected only because the Qian family had submitted theirs an hour earlier than them, after which the story introduced us to the CEO Emily. Emily slammed her hand on the table and screamed that she would have believed it was a coincidence if it had only happened twice. But it had been going on for months. Someone must have been leaking their internal documents to them. She stood up from her chair and declared that there was a traitor among them. Joe looked back and said that he thought so too, and asked what William thought about it. The puzzled boy said that he had the same opinion. The most important thing now would be to find out which dungeon the Qian family had stolen and the time frame. That way they could determine when exactly the traitor appeared and narrowed down the suspects. The man bit his finger and said that he had been thinking the same thing. According to their investigation, the internal documents had leaked about half a month ago, and since then, all the applications from the Qian family were similar to theirs. Emily was furious and screamed that in that case, they should find out who had joined the Fan family during that period. Amanda was dumbfounded and asked about the month, after which Joe asked if Joseph had come to them about half a month ago. The puzzled girl said that he was only an F rank, he did not have access to such documents. Besides, lately he only attended raids on underground cities on weekends, and after they were over, he simply left. It was impossible. Emily stood over her and screamed that Amanda should not protect him, because this was a big problem for the company. Joe closed his eyes and said that they would deal with it according to the rules. Of course, no one would expel the main character. Amanda closed her eyes and accepted his order. The man tapped his fingers on the table and said that first they needed to get training and mission data on all the newcomers who had arrived to them in the last 2 months. After that the guys should start checking them one by one. People were walking down the corridor. The girl's face was upset. William touched her shoulder and said that she shouldn't be upset. Maybe she knew him as a person, but she didn't know what was hidden in his heart. She didn't know who Joseph really was. She should just wait for the results of the investigation. Amanda quickened her pace and said that he shouldn't worry. Smiling, William noted that the main character claims to have OCD, but in fact he was just pretending. He pretends to be cold to her only to shake her confidence, and only then get closer to her. According to his data, this guy is always in the company of some girls. His personal life is a real mess. Turning around, an irritated Amanda asked if he was talking about Kate, noting that she was just his childhood friend, and besides, she had already been informed that their relationship was rather reserved. Smirking, William said that this girl comes to his house. No one knows what a guy and a girl can do at home. Looking at him, Amanda asked if he thought that everyone in this world was like him. Noting that she knew what he did with his subordinate huntresses, she advised him to be more careful. His father could take care of this issue at any moment. Amanda waved her hand and left him with a satisfied look. William watched her with a smile on his face. The blue sky surrounded the city. The girl was standing in front of the door. She said with an embarrassed look that she had come after all. Embarrassed, Amanda stretched out her hand to knock on the door. Shaking her head, the girl wondered why she hesitated, adding that she had simply come to inform him of the company's decision, and not to confess to anything. She heard a sigh behind the door. Amanda pressed her ear to the door and asked what the sounds were. She imagined many beads of sweat running down Joseph and Kate's bodies. Taken aback, the girl wondered if William had told the truth. Amanda began to beat the door with her fists and screamed for the protagonist to open the door. The door began to open. Kate looked out of the apartment with an exhausted look. The girls were surprised when they saw each other. Holding a towel in front of him, the protagonist asked if someone had arrived there. Puzzled, Joseph asked what Amanda was doing there. The guys were scared and thought that the protagonist was naked, and this was true. Smiling, Kate said that she did not know what brought them there, and then asked to come in. The protagonist held out his hand and yelled for Amanda to stop and take off her shoes, as they had just done a thorough cleaning. The dumbfounded girl turned her attention to Joseph's feet. Closing her eyes, she asked if they had scrubbed the floors, noting that she had already thought about it. Amanda entered the apartment. Standing in front of her, the protagonist apologized. As he had a bachelor apartment, he couldn't even offer them stools. No matter what they came with, they would have to speak standing up. The enraged Ben yelled that he was uncultured. Since there was no stool, he should have at least offered the lady to sit on the bed. He didn't know how to receive guests at all. The protagonist answered with a serious look that this was impossible. They had just cleaned up. Amanda stopped the guard and said that it didn't matter, they had only come for a short while. She said with a sad expression that there was evidence that there was a traitor in the Fan family. Joseph was among those who would be investigated until he could train with them. Kate turned away and said that she had asked so many times if the protagonist had joined the Fan family, and he had brushed it off, and now they had even come to her home to expel him, to which Joseph replied that he was simply afraid that she would worry about him. Amanda watched them with a surprised expression. She approached the protagonist and asked him not to worry, adding that as soon as he was cleared of suspicion, he could return again. To which she replied that it did not matter, he had never really wanted to be with them, so he found a reason to break up with them. Clenching her hands into fists, Amanda said that the protagonist was already under her control, he was her man, according to the law, he could not up and leave on his own. Kate grabbed the protagonist by the hand and screamed that Joseph did not belong to her, she should not delude herself about herself. The girls began to pull the protagonist by the hands and argue. A loud scream was heard in the city. The guard followed Amanda and asked her not to get upset because he couldn't get away from them. Amanda gritted her teeth and said that this girl didn't even understand how training camps worked. Looking around, the man said that something was wrong there. Turning around, Ben said that even if there were no ordinary passers-by on the street, there should still be at least a couple of plainclothes police officers. Straightening his jacket, he asked Amanda to be careful. Taking off his clothes, the guard ordered her to hide behind them. A scream was heard from behind the building. A powerful force pressed Ben into the ground. His face was stunned. Amanda ran to help him. The girl suddenly turned around when she heard a voice telling her not to approach Ben because they didn't want to crush her. A pink liquid was sprayed in her face. Amanda lost consciousness. The mysterious stranger caught her. The bandits stood in a circle and discussed that the task was completed. They needed to take her to an abandoned dungeon. Sunlight enveloped the Fan family skyscraper. Joe was sitting at the computer. Static appeared on the monitor. The bandit waved and greeted him. He showed the tied-up Amanda and said that they had her in their hands. Joe looked at his daughter's face and listened to him say that if he wanted to return her alive and unharmed, he should prepare 30 billion. Pointing his finger at the camera, the guy said that it would be better to give them the money the good way. If they even suspected that he was up to something, the deal was over. The enraged man punched his fist through the monitor. Frowning, he wondered if these suicidal people dared to kidnap his daughter. The guys looked at the screens while the story told us that the video recording Joe saw with the kidnapper's demand was simultaneously broadcast on all the screens in the building. The girls held the papers in front of them. The blue sky surrounded the building. People gathered in the room. They were happily discussing that they hadn't gathered together for a long time. William followed Joe. Standing in front of the guys, the man asked if she knew that Amanda had been kidnapped. Furious, Joe emphasized that they must make every effort to catch the criminals and save his daughter. The guys accepted the order with a serious look. Joe pointed his finger at the girl and asked if she owned the magic of thoughtography and could determine the location of the criminals with its help. Puzzled, Chloe replied that she had already tried. Nothing worked. In theory, she can match the objects seen in the image with their location. Even seeing a grain of sand, she can find out what desert it is from. But in this case, she can't do anything. Dumbfounded, Joe asked what she meant, whether the background in the video was artificial or this place does not exist on the planet. Looking down, Chloe said that this place was not quite in their world. The dumbfounded man asked if she was talking about the dungeon. Grabbing the girl by the shoulders, Joe began to ask which dungeon Amanda was in and whose family it belonged to. Holding his chin, William said that in that case, they would have to use the tactics of a massive offensive. He thoughtfully noted that it was necessary to send as many people as possible to a total search of every unattended dungeon. If they did not find her among them, then she was in the dungeon of one of the remaining 3 families. Joe seriously stated that his words made sense. This was the only way. Stretching out his hand, the man shouted an order that everyone needed to go search and find this dungeon. They came to the intensive care unit. Joe approached the bed and asked how Ben was feeling. The upset guy apologized, because he could not protect his daughter. Looking at him, the man said that he had already sent all available human resources to search for her, but the search area was too large. If they knew anything about the kidnappers, they might be able to narrow it down, after which he asked Ben to tell him how it all happened. Suddenly there would be some leads. Lying on a hospital bed, Ben said that at that moment, they had just left Joseph's house. He noticed that there were no people on the street at all and told his daughter to hold on to him. Suddenly he felt something very heavy pressing on him from above, and then lost consciousness. Frowning, Joe asked again about the pressure from above. Looking at Lori, the man ordered to comb through all available government databases of registered hunters and provide him with a list of everyone with similar abilities. Dumbfounded, William asked if she was kidnapped at the moment, when they left the main character's house. Ben lay still and replied that the miss wanted to personally inform him about the start of the investigation to find the traitor. Holding his hand in front of his face, the guy began to whisper, asking if Joseph had anything to do with it, and whether it was a coincidence that after Amanda reported the investigation, she was immediately kidnapped at the exit from his house. The night sky enveloped the city. Kate was sitting on a swing. She said with a sad look that Joseph ran out of the house right after someone called, without even telling her where. People came up to her and asked if she was the protagonist's friend. The men stood in front of her and said that they were looking for him. Taken aback, Kate said that she did not know where Joseph was. The guys exchanged glances. The girl was scared by the question of whether she could go with them. Amanda was tied up and kneeling. The bandits were discussing with a displeased look that they could not wait for Joe and could no longer feel their legs from the cold. Frowning, the girl wondered if her father was their target. They continued to sit in the dungeon. The mountainous terrain was covered in snow. The sun's rays illuminated the permafrost zone. The guys walked through the snowy forest. The stranger followed his comrade and asked why Mike invited them both there, to which he received the answer that he invited him alone. Closing his eyes, the third guy said that if he knew where he was invited, he would never go. Mike frowned and thought that no matter how everything turned out, today he had to prove his superiority. The guys continued to wander through the permafrost zone. The monster appeared in front of them. The eyes of the bears glowed red. Looking at Mike, the guy asked what he would say about these monsters. Grinning, he replied that they were just small fish, the only problems would be with the boss. Mike threw a fireball at the bears. There was a loud explosion. The bandits turned around and asked if there was anyone outside and if they hadn't covered up all their tracks. The guy got to his feet and said he was going to go take a look. Flames engulfed the forest. Mike held his hand in front of him and said that the bears had been cleared out and that they were about to fight the boss. The guy asked thoughtfully if he had killed everyone, after which Mike cried out that he had burned every tree. The tree branches were burning. The guys left the battlefield. The guy, with a smile on his face, noted that since Mike had been defeated last time, they should first decide on tactics so as not to lose face again, after which he asked him to tell them about the skills of this boss and what he looked like so that they could develop a detailed battle plan, to which he received the answer that the monster looked like an ice bird. Mike frowned and said that the boss had maneuverability in flight. With the flap of his wings he could raise a squall of frosty air, create strong wind pressure, could blow out his flames, could condense huge ice crystals and use them in an attack. Even his fire could not dissolve them. During the attack she could combine the elements of wind and ice. Holding his chin, Steve said that he used to think that fire always beats ice, but it turns out that it happens the other way around. He was suddenly surprised. Looking at Joseph, Steve clarified that he had skills with the element of wind. The guy with a serious face replied that it would do. He hugged his comrades with a satisfied look and said that the wind, as a rule, can blow out the fire, but it can also kindle it. If they combine their efforts, then they can strengthen the flame with a wind sword. Firstly, this will increase the temperature of Mike's flame, which will help dissolve the ice crystals, and secondly, with his wind flow Joseph will be able to hold back the oncoming wind flow of the bird. Then the flame will not go out. Frowning, the main character replied that there is something in it. When you carefully blow on burning wood, the fire really begins to burn stronger. Closing his eyes, Mike said that they will try. Smiling, Joseph noted that Steve knows how to improvise in difficult situations. His opinion of him even changed, to which he received the answer that he is a professional in military history. All the combat operations of the past are in his head. If you need to analyze the tactics of the battle, then you can turn to him. Raising their heads, the guys noticed the boss in the sky. The ice bird was flying towards them. A blade appeared in the protagonist's hands. Steve, with a serious face, said that this was the first time they were working together. They didn't need to immediately turn on their skills at full speed. They needed to feel each other out. They needed to gradually get used to each other. Mike released a stream of flame. The boss flapped his wings. The protagonist sent a stream of wind in response. The wind enveloped the fireball. The stream of flame flew at the boss. The fire hit the monster's wing. The bird was taken aback when it saw its wing burning. It began flapping its wings. The boss concentrated blue mana near its mouth. The monster released ice blocks at the guys. The bird began flapping its wings. Mike created a huge cloud of energy above his head. Joseph surrounded himself with wind magic. The guys released the concentrated energy. They created a huge whirlwind of flame. Ice blocks flew into the whirlwind. The bird was shocked. A stream of fire surrounded it. There was a powerful explosion. The bandit watched the fight from afar. Turning around, the guy assumed that the guys there were not for them. They would finish off the boss and leave. Steve raised his hands in joy. Stunned, Joseph turned his attention to the forest. Looking to the side, the main character asked if there were humanoid monsters in this dungeon. He saw the entrance to the cave. The bandits met their comrade and began to ask what was going on outside. Sitting down next to them, the guy said that there were adventurers there who had already left. Closing his eyes, the stranger replied that it was nice. After all, it was an abandoned dungeon. Others could show up there. The main thing was not to poke their noses into their business. Amanda overheard their conversation and noted that it was not her father. The guys were looking at the treetops. Mike looked at the protagonist and asked what he was talking about, noting that all the monsters in this dungeon had the appearance of animals. Pointing his finger into the forest, the protagonist said that it was very strange, because there were human tracks there. The guys began to examine the tracks. Steve squatted down and said that these were at least a size 44, meaning the tracks were male. He suddenly turned around. Looking at the road, Steve said that the tracks led there. Frowning, Joseph suggested going to look, adding that they would not rule out the possibility of humanoid monsters. The guys started following the trail. We were transferred to the Fan family building. Kate stood in front of Joe. The man crossed his arms and asked where the main character was. Looking away, the girl replied that she had already said that she did not know. The enraged agent screamed that she continued to cover for him and could be his accomplice. Enraged Joe said that they had people there who were able to view other people's memories. If she had any guesses, it would be better to give them up right away. He would tell in advance when they read her thoughts. There was little pleasure in this. Kate held her hands in front of her and screamed that this was illegal. Gritting her teeth, Joe emphasized the fact that he was the law there. If she wanted to avoid torment, she should tell everything she knew. William burst into the office and screamed that they had discovered something. The guy ran to him and told him that while watching the video, the agents of their internal intelligence service found a clue. Pointing his finger at the photo, William noted that in the lower right corner there was a drop of melted snow, and when they spoke, water vapor settled on their lips. It was clearly very cold in this place. Pointing his finger at Lori, the man ordered to check all the cold dungeons. William stood next to him and said that they had already checked. Of the ownerless ones, there was only one in the permafrost zone. Looking at Lori, Joe ordered to immediately notify all search groups so that everyone would go there. The man put on his coat on the go and told William to follow him. The agent glanced at Kate and clarified what to do with her. Running away from there, Joe ordered not to take his eyes off her and not to let her escape. The girl stood quietly in the middle of the room. Rays of light enveloped the snow-capped mountains. The guys came to the entrance to the cave. Hiding behind a boulder, Steve said that he thought they shouldn't go in so soon. He added with a scared look that there were obviously people in this dungeon. When they saw them, they might think they were trying to take their loot. Seeing strangers, they might behave inappropriately. It was better for them to watch first. Stretching his hand, Mike said that he didn't care what they thought. They had come to find out what those tracks were. Steve grabbed his face. The guys started entering the cave. They moved along the dungeon. Examining the walls, Joseph said that he couldn't stand the stalactite grotto. Turning around, the bandit wondered if there were voices there. They rose from the ground and said that someone was going there. The guys continued to go deeper into the dungeon. Mike held his hand in front of his mouth and asked loudly if there was anyone there. The guys heard voices in front of them. They started running there. They came across Amanda tied up. Her face was dumbfounded. The surprised protagonist asked how she got there. The bandits were watching them. The guys ran straight towards Amanda, asking if she was okay. The girl with her mouth tied up was shaking her head from side to side in fear and moaning for them to come closer. Noticing this, the boy thought that she was shaking her head because she didn't want him to come closer. A moment later, he stopped, resting his foot on the ground. At that very moment, the ground gave way right in front of him. The protagonist, dumbfounded, looked ahead and didn't understand what was happening. Mike, who was with him, with a divided expression on his face, asked who was there and asked to come out. Suddenly, someone used crutches, and gritting his teeth in displeasure, Joseph asked what was going on. At the last moment, he managed to jump away from the place where the ground gave way again. After everything that had happened, the boy was very surprised. He put his hands in front of him to block the blow. Then the protagonist noticed something behind him. Sharply turning around, he called out to the guy with red hair, saying that there was something behind him. Hearing this, Mike scared in displeasure and sent fire magic forward. A volley of fire exploded right behind Joseph. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, a smiling man appeared, noting that he was a quick-witted boy, and apparently there was no point in hiding anymore. Coming out of invisibility, the warrior struck with his fist, which was cut. The man continued to attack the boy, while he ran away from him, and his ally attacked with fire. Dumbfounded, looking straight ahead, Steve declared that this was an invisible assassin and assumed that they seemed to be involved in something serious, while his friend, standing in front, asked him to stop whining and help instead. At that moment, an unknown person pulled out a dagger from somewhere. He made a deft swing of his weapon while the protagonist dodged it. At that moment, Joseph noticed another enemy approaching him from behind. At that moment, Mike kicked him aside. After that, he used his fire magic to finish off the enemy. Looking around, the guy with red hair did not notice the enemy. Looking straight ahead in surprise, Mike said that he had disappeared again. At that moment, he looked towards the boy who was fighting against the warrior. Putting his hand in front of him, the guy with red hair attacked with fire magic, telling his friend to watch out. At that moment, a stream of flame approached their enemy. Noticing the right moment to attack, the protagonist made it. Suddenly, he saw Mike running past him, declaring that he would not be able to escape from there. At that moment, Joseph grabbed him by the shoulder and stopped him. Looking back, the red-haired boy was very surprised. Right in front of him, the entire ground was crushed. A moment later, the stranger began to clap his hands, saying that the protagonist was a very nimble guy and was able to avoid several of his attacks. Coming out of the shadows, the man noted that Mike was no slouch either. Looking straight ahead with displeasure, the red-haired boy asked how he knew his full name, and Joseph thought that he thought it was his first and last name. Immediately after that, the stranger, spreading his arms out to the sides, asked that he also did not know about the young master from the Situ clan. Looking warily at his ally after hearing this, the boy wondered if he was from another family of dungeon owners. A moment later, the assassins rushed forward, declaring that everything was funny, and they kidnapped the heiress of the Fan clan, and the heir of the Situ clan himself came to them, so they caught 2 large fish with one net. Mike, very angry at their words, asked me to make him laugh, because they had not caught him yet. Immediately after this, the story moves to the entrance of this dungeon, where the guys were. Straight there, the awakened ones ran quickly. Turning back, Joe noticed them, and they explained that they rushed as soon as they were informed, and the others would soon catch up with them. At this moment, the head of the family, flexing his fists, noted that there was no time to wait, so they were moving out. William held the sealing crystal in his hand while all this was happening. A moment later, Joe and his subordinate entered the portal. The heir of the family found himself inside the dungeon right behind his head. At the same time, he broke the sealing crystal with his fingers. At that moment, the portal on the other side did not let the warrior through, which greatly surprised him. The awakened stood right next to the entrance to the dungeon and did not understand what had happened, claiming that the entrance was sealed and it was all a trap. At this time, heavy snow was falling inside the dungeon. Joe walked forward, noticing tracks in front of him. Turning back sharply, he said that there were tracks there and he needed to follow them. Looking straight at the portal leading to the dungeon, the head of the family asked where the others were, to which William replied that he himself had no idea, and asked if he should go back for them. Continuing to walk forward, Joe said that it did not matter, and they would go together. Right in the middle of the mountains there was a cave. The tracks that the boys followed led right inside it. Joe looked straight at the snow, saying that the tracks met there. Throwing off his jacket, the man said that they were clearly inside, so they needed to go quickly. Hearing this, William was very scared, explaining to the head that they needed to act wisely. They couldn't scare them away too early, because if they heard them coming in, they could kill his daughter. Turning around with a clearly angry expression on his face, the head of the Fan family explained that he didn't understand anything and that he didn't want to save his daughter, but kill the kidnappers. Noticing his boss's reaction, the heir of the family wondered why, and whether he really wasn't worried about his daughter's safety. Immediately after that, Joe quickly headed forward inside the cave, and William followed him. All this continued to happen in the snowy mountains. Right inside the dungeon, Joseph was fighting at this time. Mike was also fighting against the men, using his fire magic. Steve was watching all this, peeking out from around the corner, saying that things were bad and it seemed like it was time for him to run away. At that moment, the guy in the green suit noticed something behind him. Immediately after that, the boy abruptly turned to the side. The red-haired guy followed suit. A moment later, an unknown voice stunned the assassins, saying that Joe had arrived. After receiving the information, Amanda's kidnappers suddenly jumped up. Then they used the stealth skill and, as if disappearing, the head of the Fan family broke the wall, breaking forward. Suddenly, Joseph and Mike appeared in front of him, standing near his daughter. Noticing his appearance, the boy was very surprised. The red-haired guy was also stunned by Joe's appearance. Noticing the protagonist, the head of the family was very angry, saying that it meant he was there after all. At the same moment, clenching his hand into a fist, William, standing right behind him, said that it meant he was the one who kidnapped Amanda, and called him an ungrateful bastard. Looking straight ahead with displeasure, after all he had heard, the protagonist asked what he was even talking about. At that moment, the heir of the family looked towards the girl, telling her not to be afraid, because now they would save her. Hearing this, Amanda began to shake her head from side to side and mumble something. At that moment, Mike, holding his hand in front of him, called out to Fan's head, telling him to wait, because there was a misunderstanding, and they ended up there by accident, and his daughter was kidnapped by other people. Hearing this, Joe, putting on his brass knuckles, asked that he was that boy from another family, and were they really capable of such a thing? The guy with red hair was very scared and asked to listen to them. Menacingly looking straight ahead, the head of the Fan family said that he had enough chatter. A moment later, he tore his clothes, strengthening his body to level S, and shouted that they must accept their death. Immediately after that, Joe rushed towards the guys with great speed. The guys deftly jumped in different directions, dodging the enemy's lunge. They jumped back to come up with a plan of action. Suddenly, Mike shot his fire magic, shouting at his ally to step aside. The head of the family reflected the magic aimed at him with his bare hand. Then, he approached Joseph with great speed. John struck him with his fist, destroying his blade. After receiving damage, the boy flew back with great speed, flying past his ally. At this moment, the head of the Fan family rushed forward with great speed. Noticing this, the red-haired boy was very scared. Putting his hand out to the side, he shouted that he needed to quickly use less vortex. Barely standing on his feet, the protagonist used his protective gloves and immunity to physical attacks, which could no longer be used today, gathering magic in his weapon. Immediately after that, the guys activated their joint skill, sending it straight at the enemy. Joe was enveloped in a huge amount of flames and screamed loudly in pain. His daughter was very worried, watching everything that was happening. Holding his chest, Joseph asked Mike if he thought he was okay, while he explained to the head of the Fan family that if they hadn't counterattacked, they would have been in danger. A moment later, two hands appeared out of nowhere from the flames. One of them suddenly grabbed the red-haired guy by the throat. The other grabbed the protagonist by the neck. Immediately after that, Joe hit both guys with great force with his fist. Having received such damage, Joseph began to cough up blood. At the same moment, the head of the Fan family swung his fist to deliver another blow. Suddenly, blood began to pour out of his mouth. Amanda, frightened by what she saw, thought that her father was coughing up blood, which meant that he was having another attack. William, who was watching everything that was happening from the side, noticed the deterioration of Joe's condition and only grinned silently. Joe coughed up blood, leaning directly on the ground. Joseph watched this in shock and asked what was wrong with him. Was it really them who had caused such damage? At that moment, the head of the Fan family turned around abruptly, asking William why he was frozen there. Hearing this, he grinned maliciously, activating his ability, and told the head that he was already on his way. Immediately after that, the heir of the Fan family slowly walked straight up to his boss. A moment later, he attacked him with his ability right in the back. Noticing this, the boy was extremely dumbfounded. Joe continued to cough up blood and fell right to the ground. Watching this, Mike could not find words. With the last of his strength, turning around, the head of the Fan family asked that he was really in cahoots with the protagonist and his friends. Arrogantly looking straight ahead, William explained that there was no need to make him laugh, and he was not in cahoots with any of them. Immediately after that, the heir of the family directed her ability forward, declaring that he would soon finish them off too. Amanda's father, who was very angry at what he heard, rushed forward. He used his fist to block the enemy's ability. Noticing this, William was very scared. A moment later, the words that activated the crushing spell flashed through the cave, and the ground right under Joe began to collapse. Seeing this, the heir of the Fan family smirked, noting that they scared him quite a lot. At that moment, assassins appeared right behind him, while he added that it was not for nothing that he was the head of the family and the first one who managed to stay on his feet after this technique. Gritting his teeth in dissatisfaction after seeing this, Joe said that these were the people of the Chong family. A moment later, the crushing technique was used on him again, pressing him even harder into the ground. Looking straight ahead, the head of the Fan family asked with all his might why he betrayed him. When his hand was to the side, his adopted son only smirked. William wished him death with a sly smile on his face. Amanda, who was watching from the side, closed her eyes, not wanting to watch her father die. A huge stream of flame was heading straight towards William and the assassins, while Mike was screaming for them to back off. The secret assassins jumped in different directions to dodge the fire magic. It belonged to the guy with red hair, who put his hand in front of him to activate his spell. Immediately after that, the two men rushed forward, saying that they would take on these two, and their boss should kill Joe. A moment later, Joseph and Mike clashed in battle against the assassins. At the same time, William released his abilities, looking at the almost defeated enemy. Then he directed his power forward, wishing death to his opponent. Suddenly, Steve entered the battle, crossing his arms in front of him, using his ability, aggravating shadow, and asking if they had completely forgotten about him. At the same time, the three warriors suddenly looked to the side, asking what had happened. They were very surprised, while their legs were turning to the side. The assassins were rushing towards Steve at great speed, stating that their bodies were not obeying, and not understanding what was happening at all. At this time, William's ability also changed its course, which surprised him greatly. The attack of the heir of the Fan family was heading straight towards his allies. A moment later, William's skill hit them directly, destroying everything around. From such destruction, Steve flew to the side with loud screams. When the dust cleared, the assassins were no longer visible in that place. Seeing this, Joseph was very happy, noting that his friend did a great job. Mike was also happy, agreeing with his allies' words. At this point, Steve was holding his chest with a smile on his face, explaining that it would be a few more days before he could repeat this move. Looking straight ahead with displeasure, William suddenly asked where this guy even came from, saying that he hadn't even noticed him, but he managed to cause such a fuss. Immediately after this, the protagonist and the guy with red hair rushed to attack, declaring that they would no longer get in their way. At that moment, a huge whirlwind of flames headed straight towards William. Noticing this, he was very dissatisfied, declaring that it was too early for them to choke with delight. Putting his hand in front of him, the heir of the Fan family used his skill. His attack hit right into the whirlwind of flames. Noticing something wrong in front, the guys were very dumbfounded. A moment later, William's skill flew right next to them, and they barely managed to dodge. After that, Joseph landed on the ground a little to the side. Suddenly, a stalactite located right at the top of the cave began to break off. Then it fell right on the defenseless Amanda, which her father immediately noticed. Then Joe rushed forward with his last strength. At this time, the girl, closing her eyes, screamed loudly in fear. The head of the Fan family managed to come to the rescue at the last moment, catching a huge stone. After which he threw the fragment next to himself, while his daughter watched her father in shock. Immediately after this, Joe began to cough up blood, asking for forgiveness, because his body was too weak for level S. Having said this, the man began to fall, losing his balance. At that moment, Mike ran right up to Amanda and removed the ropes from her. Then the girl, together with Steve, held her father so that he would not make a mistake. Amanda turned to William with a menacing look to the side, asking him to tell her how he had been offended by her family. Standing right in front of the rebellious heir, she asked why he had done such a thing. Hearing this, William explained with a sarcastic grin on his face that the public would only know that the head of the Fong family and his daughter had been attacked by some bandits, and that they had all ended up killing each other. Throwing his arms out to the sides, the traitor repeated the words he had just said. After which, he aimed his enhanced skill straight ahead, adding that he had arrived there too late, so all that was left for him to do was inherit everything that belonged to the Fong family with tears in his eyes. At that moment, his attack was rapidly heading straight for Amanda. Noticing this, Steve, with his hands out in front of him, used his angry shadow ability. At the last moment, the trajectory of William's skill changed, heading straight for the guy in the green suit. Noticing this, Joseph was very scared and wanted to help his friend. In a moment, he managed to knock Steve to the ground so that the blow landed directly on him. Mike swung his fist, sending a fiery blow forward, asking how dare he lunge at him. At this time, the traitor, deftly moving his head to the side, dodged this attack, wondering if he really hoped to hit him with such slow charges. Looking straight at his opponents, the heir of the Fan family explained that even if they managed to dodge him for so long, this cave would not hold up. Putting his hands straight in front of him, he added that he would blow the hell out of the cave, and they would remain buried there. Very angry after hearing this, Mike asked if he really had gone crazy and wanted to be buried there with them. Standing right in front of his opponents, William explained that he had already called the Chien family, who would soon be there with reinforcements, and even if he got a little bit, he would be a hero who fought the kidnappers. Looking straight at Steve with a puzzled expression, Joseph asked him if he had any ideas, because he didn't want to die in this hole at all, and Steve explained that in this situation, if they managed to launch a powerful attack, it would cause the cave to collapse. Looking at the allies behind them, the guy in the green suit added that even if they were lucky enough to jump out, those two definitely didn't have that chance, and they would be stuck there. Holding his hand out to the side, Steve explained that if they all got out, William would become the new head of the Fan family, and he would appoint them as kidnappers. Stepping forward a bit, the red-haired guy and the protagonist said that it seemed like all they could do was destroy that bastard, while the friend standing behind them was about to suggest something, noting that their plan didn't sound very well thought out. At this time, the traitor was extremely angry, asking what the three of them were whispering about. A moment later, Joseph charged straight towards him at a high speed. Noticing this, William put his hand in front of him, aiming his skill forward, and asked him if he really thought that scum like him would even be able to get close to him. At the same time, Steve put his hands in front of him and used the skill Angry Shadow. A moment later, the Fong family heir's attack trajectory was changed, heading straight towards the guy in the green suit. At the same time, the boy swung his fist, preparing to use a perfect right hook. The traitor quickly dodged, noting that although close combat was not his strong point, he certainly could not defeat him with hand-to-hand combat. Hearing his words, the protagonist was very angry. A moment later, he grabbed William with his hands, not understanding what he was going to do. The boy quickly turned to the side and shouted at his friend to start now. Hearing the signal, Mike raised his hands above his head and was about to use Divine Flame. William, dumbfounded, was thinking that he could not be held back. Immediately after that, the heir of the Fong family kneed his opponent in the stomach. After receiving damage, Joseph, looking menacingly straight ahead, assumed that it seemed that he could not escape now. The traitor looked straight at him with a displeased expression, calling him a man-an and asking if he really wanted to die with him. A moment later, the two were covered in Divine Flame. Amanda was watching all this from the side, and she shouted Joseph's name with a sympathetic look. A silhouette could be seen right through the dust that had risen into the air. It belonged to William, who was completely enveloped in fire. Suddenly, the man started laughing, looking smugly straight ahead, and said that such an F-rank trash could only dream of dying with him. At the same time, another silhouette became visible through the dust. A moment later, the boy grabbed his opponent from behind again, which greatly angered him, while the system announced that there were 7 uses of the substitute doll left today. Looking forward, Joseph stated that a fire attack would not collapse the cave, and it was only a question of how many attacks he could withstand. Holding tightly to his opponent, he added that today he was ready to nullify the possibility of using the substitute doll technique, so he suggested continuing. William, greatly upset after hearing this, called him a bastard. At this moment, Mike did not hesitate at all and sent out his whirlwind of flames. A moment later, a loud cry of pain came directly from his skill. The heir of the Fan family leaned on the ground, while he was radiating high temperatures, and said that if they continued to aim straight at him, his strength would not last long. Immediately after that, he activated his skill and said that then they should not hope to stay alive either. A moment later, his skill began to have fun in all directions. At that moment, a boy appeared right behind him, preparing to strike. The traitor immediately sensed this, sharply turning back. William did not have time to react, and the protagonist's strike landed right on him, throwing him back. Lying directly on the ground, the heir of the Fan family used his skill to reflect another attack on him. The power of his skill was so great that it broke through the cave and burst out. The assassins were waiting for their boss to return in the forest, and one of them said that now the cave had definitely been blown up, and according to William's plan, they had to take him away, and the other said that he would then remove the seals so that people could come and see how their leader heroically tried to save the daughter of the head of the Fan family, risking his life. At the same time, the rest of the awakened entered the dungeon, watching an unknown surge of power from the front, and did not believe that the path was open, worrying about the head of the Fan family, his daughter and adopted son. Finding himself among these people, the assassin, pointing his finger forward, said that smoke and dust rose over there, and suggested going there. At this time, the place where the cave was located was completely destroyed, and only fragments of stones were on the ground. Someone's leg was sticking out right from these very fragments. It belonged to William, who suddenly jumped up, throwing off the stones. Having come to his senses, the family heir looked sharply to the side. Seeing no one there, he smiled broadly, saying that the head of the family and his daughter had been killed by the kidnappers, and he had killed those villains. With a sarcastic expression, the traitor said that now all he could do was bury them with tears in his eyes, and then inherit everything that belonged to the Fan family, and that was a very beautiful story. A moment later, he shuddered and was very dumbfounded when he heard the words that he would have to kill him first. Joseph rose right from the rubble, claiming that he was still alive, and the system notification window announced that the remaining number of uses of the substitute doll was 5. Mike, who was right behind him, looked at his ally in shock, wondering to himself that he had really covered him with himself, but still managed to stand on his feet. Noticing that his opponent had come out, William was very angry, calling him a bastard. Gritting his teeth in displeasure, the heir of the Fan family asked why he couldn't just die. Immediately after that, the traitor directed his attack forward, asking again why he didn't just die. Seeing something right in front of him, William was very surprised. Sharply looking to the side, he noticed the protagonist approaching him. William was beside himself with anger, activated his skill and wished his opponent would die already. A moment later, he directed his skill forward, when suddenly Joseph was right behind him. Sharply looking back, the heir of the Fan family noticed him and was very angry. At the same time, the boy sharply jumped back. The protagonist managed to dodge the enemy's attacks with great speed. The traitor continued to attack with his skill, from which Joseph quickly ran away. William watched everything happening with great displeasure, and wondered what kind of skill he even had, because it seemed like he became much faster in a couple of moments. Immediately after, the heir of the Fan family looked to the side at the rest of his opponents there. With a malicious grin, the traitor gathered a large amount of energy in his hand, asking that he really thought that he could hold him back any longer. Understanding his plan, the protagonist was greatly dumbfounded, thinking that he was just a bastard. A moment later, William aimed his skill straight at the defenseless people. Noticing this, Amanda and Steve were greatly frightened. The traitor's attack was heading straight at them, and Joseph, who noticed this, was quickly heading to help them. A moment later, an explosion occurred right in front of William, destroying everything around him. After some time, an image of a boy covered in blood became visible through the dust. Smirking smugly upon seeing him, the heir of the Fan family asked that he really decided to serve as a human shield. Immediately after that, he raised his hand up, preparing to attack with a huge number of his skills. At this time, Amanda stood right behind the protagonist with tears in her eyes and said his name. A moment later, William's huge number of blows destroyed everything in front of Steve and the girl. The two could be seen through an unknown hole. Joseph, gritting his teeth and bleeding, continued to look forward. A huge hole was made right in his body, and he himself lost both arms, which scared Amanda very much. Seeing the result of his actions, William laughed happily. A moment later, his expression changed to surprise. He watched as the boy's body was assembled as if from unknown particles, and the system notified that there were only 4 more times to use the replacement doll. Having created several more energy spheres around himself, the heir of the Fan family could not believe that he had a recovery skill, and was going to see how quickly he would recover this time. Looking straight ahead with displeasure, watching everything that was happening, Amanda thought that he was protecting her, not sparing his life. Suddenly, she ran straight towards him, thinking that she could protect him too. The girl stood right in front of the protagonist, and released her energy. Her body was enveloped in an unknown green energy. This same energy repelled all the blows that the traitor dealt with his skill. Seeing this, the other guys were very stunned, and Joe explained that before her death, her mother awarded her with protective armor in exchange for her life so that she could not die from the effects of external forces, and he did not know that the armor was so strong. Immediately after this, the head of the Fan family turned to Joseph, saying that he could not protect his daughter, because the armor protected her, and must direct all his strength to curb the enemy, while he, turning back, thought that thanks to the substitute doll, his body had already been restored. At this time, William was adjusting his tie with displeasure, saying that everything was very bad. Looking ahead, Joe said that the destructive power of his light cores was very strong, but his body was only approaching rank A, so the explosions of his own balls could cause significant damage to him, and he would not use them near himself, so it was necessary to get closer to him. Hearing this, Joseph rushed forward, as if he had disappeared from his place. In an instant, he appeared right next to the heir of the Fan family, who was very surprised by his appearance. The boy with fury in his eyes swung his fist to strike. The traitor parried his attack with his hand. William stopped his opponent's fist without much effort. Noticing this, the protagonist was very dumbfounded. At this moment, the heir of the Fong family asked him with a sly grin on his face if he really believed that his body was not even a rank, and explained that it was actually S rank. As he was talking about the highest rank, a fist hit him right in the face. After receiving damage, the traitor was sent flying. Leaning on the ground and coughing up blood, William thought that this was incomprehensible and his fist had tremendous power. As he continued to bleed, he realized that his power surpassed S rank. At the same time, the heir of the Fong family noticed Joseph appearing right in front of him again, when suddenly someone told him not to move. People in business suits ran straight to the two and took orders to protect Mr. William. At this moment, Amanda, looking straight ahead with a menacing look, declared that they had misunderstood everything. As they approached the battlefield, the girl explained that the heir of the Fan family had hired kidnappers to kill her and her father, and that Joseph was saving them. The men in business suits were stunned when they heard this. At the same time, the traitor, holding on to his assassin ally, declared that he had not yet lost and that he still had ways to retreat. At that moment, the assassin used an unknown object in his hand, noting that they had made a cutlet out of it, and he still did not shut up. Immediately after that, a portal appeared right in front of them. Realizing that they wanted to leave with its help, the boy, slowly walking forward, gave the order to detain them. A moment later, the assassins and the traitor disappeared, leaving behind only a trace of blue energy. Holding a blue bottle in his hand, Joseph thought that he had gotten this object in the fight with the turtle, and it should help with the restoration. Immediately after that, the boy used it on himself, and the system began to heal him, while he himself was thinking that otherwise the side effects of using the substitution and the doll would knock him down. Suddenly, Monica appeared right on the battlefield, kneeling on one knee, apologizing for coming so late and asking Amanda if she was okay. Sharply turning in her direction, the girl answered that she was fine. Then she looked straight at the protagonist, asking how he was feeling, and he, showing a finger up, answered that everything was fine. Watching their conversation, the witch was very angry and did not understand what he was doing to her, and why he had such an influence on her. Suddenly, a man in a business suit ran up to her, declaring that they were ready, and asked to activate the portal for movement. Looking straight ahead, the girl agreed to do it. When she said to get ready and announced that they were leaving, a circle of blue energy appeared right on the ground. Immediately after this, the story moves to the hospital, where Joe was in serious condition. Amanda was very scared, watching her father, and asked the doctor and the magician what they could say about his condition. The sorcerer standing in front of her explained that if they wanted to save him, they could use one forbidden method of his ancestors, and the doctor said that her father was in very serious condition. After which he pointed his finger directly at the magician with displeasure, saying that there was no need to believe this charlatan. Very angry from what he heard, the magician concluded that since he did not understand anything about magic, there was no need to desecrate the methods of his ancestors, until Amanda, standing right in front of them, asked them to stop swearing. Suddenly, Steve turned to Monica, standing in front, asking if they could let them go, because they were not involved in the kidnapping. Looking in his direction, the girl with red hair apologized, explaining that she believed that they were innocent, but let the head of Fong decide for himself what to do with them all when he wakes up. Mike, very angry at her words, asked if she was really kidding. At this time, Joseph looked at Kate standing next to him, and asked how she got there. With a downcast expression on her face, the girl explained that at first they decided that he was the one who kidnapped Amanda, so they grabbed her. Gritting his teeth in displeasure after hearing this, the boy said that it was all because of that bastard William. Suddenly, the device showing the heartbeat began to beep, notifying that the heart had stopped beating. The guys, noticing this, were very dumbfounded. Amanda, standing right in front of her father, asked not to scare her. Suddenly, a girl with pink hair intervened in the conversation, spreading her arms out to the sides, asking if she could try. Looking at his friend, the protagonist was upset that he had not managed to hide her powers from everyone. A moment later, Kate, spreading her hands in front of her, used her power directly on Joe. After some time, he began to twitch, as if he had come to life again, and Amanda, who noticed this, asked her father if he could hear her. The guy with red hair, watching everything that was happening, was amazed that she had a powerful healing skill. Still feeling pain all over his body, the head of the Fong family turned to Monica, giving the order to gather all their people tomorrow, because he would need to make a statement. Worriedly looking straight at him, the sorceress said that she understood everything, and asked the head what to do with these people. Looking straight ahead, Joe told Joseph that he should thank him and his friends, because they were their benefactors. He then asked everyone to leave the room, but asked the protagonist and his daughter to stay behind because he had something he wanted to tell them, and his subordinates who heard this were very surprised. Immediately after this narration, the story moves to the next day in the Great Hall, while clouds were floating in the sky. Standing on the stage right in front of all his subordinates, Joe declared that the past few days had been extremely difficult for his family, and he thought they all knew the details by now. Staring forward with a menacing gaze, he announced that William had colluded with their enemies, for which he had been expelled from the Fong family. The people in business suits were very dumbfounded by what they heard and could not believe that it was true, saying that they had never liked him. The red-haired girl in the crowd gritted her teeth in dissatisfaction after hearing all this. Memories of kneeling in front of William, asking him if he really liked Amanda, came to her mind. After her question, the former heir of the Fan family hugged the girl, saying that he had explained everything to her many times, and the head of the family wanted his position to go to his daughter in the future. With a sly grin on his face, he added that in order to take a high position, he must gain the trust of the heiress. Looking slyly straight ahead, the traitor declared that he truly loved only her. Still very angry, Jonna thought that this couple had probably set up her beloved. At this time, Joe, still standing on the stage, declared that due to health reasons, he could not continue to manage the company. Pointing his hand directly at the girl, he said that, taking this opportunity, he officially handed over the position of head to his daughter Amanda. Hearing this, his subordinates were very happy, saying that she would do a great job and they supported her candidacy. Pointing his hand at Joseph standing next to him, the head of the Fan family announced that, in addition to this, Amanda had decided that he would become her first deputy. Hearing this, the family members were very surprised, asking why him and wasn't he an F rank, not understanding on what basis he would become her main deputy. At that moment, the A-rank hunter sister Jean stepped forward, declaring that she was against it. Steve, who was right on the stage, was very angry at her behavior and stated that the protagonist was an exceptionally talented guy, and what right did she have to speak out against it? Folding her arms across her chest with a clearly angry look, the girl stated that Joseph was only an F rank and why on earth did he deserve to push ahead of everyone else and become the new head's first deputy. Immediately after her words, the members of the Fan family began to be indignant, saying that if Amanda chose him only because she fell in love with him, then what was the point of all of them straining their veins for so many years in the hope of promotion, because Joseph's only merit was that he was able to turn her head, and he was a nobody there. Looking straight ahead, Jean concluded that the head of the Fan family always evaluated people by talent and merit, and this girl did whatever she wanted. Suddenly, Joe's daughter joined the conversation, moving her hand to the side, asking if that meant they wanted to be evaluated by talent and merit, to which she received a positive answer. At that moment, the unknown warrior swung his leg to strike. Noticing this, Amanda was very surprised. At this time, the A-rank hunter was thinking with a sly grin on her face that although he was only a B-rank, but with his special high-rank sneakers, his roundhouse kick was comparable in strength to an S-rank. At this time, the man was heading straight towards Joseph, who was asking what he wanted. With a look full of rage, the warrior wished death on his opponent. Hearing this, the boy was very dissatisfied. Immediately after that, the protagonist used a super fast fist technique, repelling all of the enemy's attacks. Then, he struck directly at the body of his attacker, throwing his opponent back, hitting him with great force. Joseph asked why a weakling like him wore such huge sneakers and did he even realize how disharmonious it looked. At that moment, the man who attacked him was slammed right into the wall. Watching the boy fall to the ground after receiving a blow from Joseph, the rest of the Fan family were confused about what had happened and wondered what rank that boy was that he could do such a thing. At this time, Amanda was looking straight at the boy standing on the stage in front of her. With a serious look, she thought that back in the dungeon, he had used the same move on William. Suddenly stepping forward and raising her hand above her head, she asked who else wanted to challenge him, thinking that she had definitely made the right choice. At this time, the A-rank hunter looked at her defeated subordinate with displeasure. With great anger on her face, she looked away, stating that she would have to answer for hurting her disciple. Hearing this, Joseph was very confused, asking if he was really her disciple. Even more angry because of his reaction, Jonna put on gloves on her hands, saying that he was too early to rejoice and happy moments are fleeting, like his life. Suddenly, an unknown man, standing right behind her, asked her sister to wait. Gritting her teeth in displeasure, she looked straight at him while he, with a worried expression on his face, explained that this guy's strength was difficult to estimate, so you shouldn't give in to emotions, no matter what happens, and you need to choose a better moment. The warrior did not like everything she heard at all, but she was forced to agree. Turning her back to the stage, Jonna told him to live for now. Watching her go, Joseph asked to tell the student to change his shoes. At this time, another of her subordinates, with a malicious grin on his face, apologized for the mess. After which he released an unknown device from his mouth. It was some kind of tracking mechanism, which immediately flew forward. We continued to be in the large hall while the plot told us that after this scene ended, the meeting ended and there were no more objections to Amanda and Joseph's new positions. The boy was holding his head in his hands, wondering what was wrong with that guy and why he was wearing such big sneakers, noting that this picture really tormented him. Suddenly, Amanda came into his room with Steve, and he, noticing them, asked what was going on. The girl, with gratitude in her eyes, declared that he had really helped her out today. Smiling, looking straight at her, the boy explained that it was nothing special, and they had already agreed on everything, so he couldn't do otherwise, and she thanked him. Suddenly, the protagonist looked at Steve, asking what about him and why he continued to follow him, and did he really have something to say. In response to this, the guy in the green suit just waved his hand, explaining that he wanted to know how he was doing with his free time, and suggested putting together a team to explore the abandoned dungeon. Hearing this, Joseph was very surprised, as was Amanda, who asked him again. Then the girl, looking seriously to the side, noted that she had just wanted to talk to him about the same thing. Steve was telling his sister Amanda that great minds think alike, his hand moving to the side. Suddenly, a young boy joined the conversation, looking puzzled, and asked if any of them would explain it to him. Then the heiress of the Fan family, taking a pointer in her hand, said that she would start from the beginning. Visualizing a fortress with knights and magicians, Amanda was telling that dungeon resources were very limited all over the world, and in an unknown country. Dungeons were mostly controlled by government agencies, when John suddenly asked that their corporation was a non-governmental organization. Looking straight at him, the girl confirmed his arguments, explaining that such a status had its pros and cons. Imagining the king giving energy balls to ordinary warriors, Joe's daughter said that non-governmental organizations like them could receive dungeon resources, but their distribution was completely regulated by the state, and it also occurred at a specific time and in a specific volume. Visualizing the disappearance of one magic tower and the appearance of another, Amanda explained that when after some time the resources of a dungeon are exhausted, then it is necessary to move on to the next one. With a look full of seriousness, the girl stated that this is why many non-governmental organizations essentially fall into decline. Then with a smile on her face, she explained that this is exactly why they need to explore new abandoned dungeons, and Steve, standing right next to her, enthusiastically stated that undiscovered abandoned dungeons contain huge deposits of all kinds of resources. Looking warily straight at them after hearing everything, Joseph noted that, frankly, he was not particularly interested in this. Hearing this, the guys were very dumbfounded and could not believe his words. With tears in his eyes, throwing up a huge number of different maps, the guy in the green suit begged him to go at least once, because he had been collecting all the maps made by other dungeon hunters for so long. At that moment, the boy kicked him with his foot, telling him not to spit snot in his direction. Taking the map in his hands and looking straight at it, the protagonist asked why this route was so chaotic. Looking straight ahead seriously, Steve explained that there was probably a need to lay out this particular route. As if shaking with displeasure, Joseph asked if this was really a joke, because it was complete horror. Smiling widely, the guy in the green suit asked if maybe then they would lay out their route much better than the previous one, to which Amanda agreed. A moment later, the boy screamed in anger, spreading his arms out to the sides. Tightly clutching the dungeon map in his hand, he declared that they would start from it. Imagining a direct route from the starting point to the end, the protagonist declared that he wanted to get to the western dungeons by the most direct route possible, and thoroughly comb them. Joseph looked like a villain while saying all this, and the guys standing behind him were completely in agreement with this plan. Amanda was very happy with everything that was happening, while an unknown device was flying next to her. The tracking device was right next to her shoulder. At this time, Jean's subordinate, spreading his arms to the sides, said that the information was successfully intercepted and the chase was going to explore the ownerless dungeons in the west. The girl with red hair, looking menacingly straight ahead, said that this was excellent and their brother knew those parts well. Immediately after that, she turned to Luke, who was holding a blade in his hands, saying that they were counting on him, because Joseph needed to be finished off. Holding a cup in his hands, the man with red hair asked her not to worry. It was a rank S hunter, swordsman brother Luke, who grinned maliciously, declaring that he would pay for everything in full. Immediately after this story, it transfers to the team, who were working on their laptop. Right on her desktop, she found a file about the investigation of William's betrayal. Looking straight at the monitor of her laptop, she was very surprised. Right on the screen, the girl saw a huge number of files about the Chien family. At that moment, her father came into her office, asking how she was doing and whether she was coping with her new position. With a look full of seriousness, looking straight at him, Amanda asked to take a look at it. Coming closer, Joe asked what it was, to which she received the answer that it contained information about Willem's contacts. Looking at the screen of her laptop, she explained that he contacted the Chien family for almost all matters, including the issues of introducing their hunters to them as internal spies. Hearing this, the former head of the Fan family was very angry, calling him a bastard. Suddenly, he made a sharp blow to something behind his daughter's head. Looking straight at him, Amanda asked what he did. There were spare parts in her palm when someone said that she had a listening device, in other words, a bug, and that if it weren't for his S-rank vision, she would hardly have discovered it herself. Then she asked him again, inquiring about when this could have happened. Amanda opened her mouth wide when she cursed and exclaimed that this meant that someone knew Joseph's plans to visit the dungeon in the west. The screen showed a brunette, who replied that since he was heading to the dungeon in the west, they should follow him. Luke had a blade of grass in his mouth when William added that the protagonist hadn't met him yet, so they would introduce this guy as their agent, warning that they would need to gain his trust. Then he accepted the order. The girl crossed her arms over her chest when she and her two comrades were told to wait for them in ambush, then they replied that it would be done. William looked ahead with a smirk when he said that after the protagonist lost all his strength during the dungeon clearing, Luke would strike him suddenly, and then the three of them would join in, and that together they would be able to finish off Joseph and his friend, and then asked them not to forget to take all their treasures. The brunette opened his mouth wide when he said the name of the protagonist, and promised that this time he would pay for everything with interest. His minion stood in front of the screen when he said that they would have a twofold numerical advantage and that they should not screw up. Then they answered that they could handle it. A long road led to the tower. The structure was shown from above when someone said that this was the first post on their way. The protagonist stood straight when he suggested going. He and his companion looked at each other when Steve warned him that he had never been to the local dungeons before, and that it would be safer to go there in a larger group. Joseph looked upset when he asked if he had just thought of that. The companion ran after the protagonist when he answered that everything was fine and that they would find companions on the spot, because those dungeons were constantly cleared by free mercenaries. The sun illuminated Luke's face, who grinned. The protagonist closed one eye. A man in a hat stood at the top of the tower. He took off. The protagonist looked at the dark silhouette. The man in the cloak landed deftly. The stranger in the hat stood with his back to them when he suggested that they were going to explore the local dungeon, and then asked if they wanted to join him. The guys were standing behind him when Steve asked if he was one of the local hunters. Joseph looked ahead with a frown when he answered that he was against it. Luke was standing in front of him when he said that he had been working in these parts for a long time and knew the area well, and then asked if he was sure that he didn't need him. There was a ladder behind the guys when the protagonist answered that he was all dirty and covered him with dust when he jumped down, summing up that he was already causing a lot of trouble. The girl looked out from behind the shelter when she wondered why they were messing around there. The man in the hat stood sideways when he said that they shouldn't judge him harshly, because he usually pays more attention to his appearance. It's just that lately he hasn't left the dungeons, so his clothes are a little shabby. Steve looked at the protagonist seriously when he offered to go with him, reminding them that they need a partner who knows the area well. The boys headed towards the portal when Luke agreed with him. The man had a blade of grass in his mouth when he thought about Joseph being a villain and how he would look at him after he chopped him into mush. The protagonist looked at the guy in the hat when he asked his name, to which he replied that for many years everyone he knew called him Brother Luke. The men disappeared into the portal. The tower was watched by people who noticed them entering, deciding that they needed to watch the exit, and that as soon as they came out, they would immediately attack them. The building was shown from above. Steve looked ahead with displeasure when he said that it was a deserted dungeon and that there was nothing but sand. The protagonist looked away attentively. Warriors in armor appeared. Luke put his hand out to the side and twirled it. He took out his blade from its sheath when he said that he would take these guys on himself. Warriors with spears rushed towards him. The guy in the hat cut them in half with a swing of his sword. The bodies of the attackers began to crumble. Steve smiled, clenching his fist when he exclaimed that it was cool, and that Luke's attack was at least rank A. The man in the hat looked at the young man when he replied that he was just warming up. Unknown objects lay on the sand. The protagonist opened his mouth wide. The warrior in the helmet appeared again. A small army appeared in front of the guy, then he asked about what was going on there. Luke looked at Joseph carefully as he explained that he had encountered one before and that if the key node was not disabled, these soldiers would continue to appear without end. There was a tree growing behind them as the man added that it was the key mechanism of the sand dungeon, the Vessel of Nightmares. A creepy grimace appeared on the trunk as Luke thought about the withered tree under the node being a hidden boss, and that once he swung at the Vessel of Nightmares, he would have a great opportunity. The protagonist stood in front of him as he asked if he really claimed that these warriors would continue to renew themselves. Then he was answered in the affirmative. Steve covered his face with his hand as he cursed, saying that it seemed like they were there for a long time. Stars shone from the night sky. The protagonist ran towards the warriors. The man in the hat looked worried when he asked if it wouldn't be better to destroy the nightmare vessel first. Then it was explained to him that it wouldn't destroy something that allowed him to gain bonuses infinitely. The warriors were thrown in different directions from the force of the blow. Rectangular objects fell in front of the guy. The man closed his eyes and sneezed. The people were sitting near the rocks when one of them asked if the deserts were always so cold after dark. Then another asked why they were still inside, suggesting that there might be another way out. The girl glared at the guy when she asked him to stop complaining and advised him to bring her some black iced tea, explaining that at least it would be of some use. The starry sky was visible behind the boy when he wondered where he would find her black iced tea at night in the middle of the desert. The warriors blocked the protagonist's path. The protagonist swung his blade, attacking them. A whirlwind of sand appeared. Joseph crept up on the warrior who appeared. He cut him with his sword. The case fell to the ground. The guys were holding the boxes in their hands when Luke asked how long he planned to do this and if he ever got tired. Steve's eyes were closed when he answered that he thought he wouldn't stop until he collected all the bonuses. There was a mountain of cases in front of the man when he wondered if this was some kind of joke. Luke gritted his teeth, looking away when he mentally cursed and thought that if he continued like this, he would not have a chance to finish him off. The man in the hat took out his blade when he decided it was time to take matters into his own hands. His foot hit the ground, then he screamed. The protagonist held a sword in front of him. Steve looked away. Luke headed towards the tree when he thought about finishing the quest first, and then taking it on at the exit. The tip of the blade almost touched the object. The man frowned when he thought about the hidden boss about to appear. A terrible grimace appeared on the trunk. The guy in the bandage opened his mouth when he advised him to take care of himself. The hidden boss opened his mouth wide. Luke held it with his blade. The man crouched down, putting his hands out to the sides. The guys looked at the blue sphere when the protagonist asked if there was another hidden boss there, then they answered in the affirmative, adding that they themselves were shocked. Sweat appeared on Luke's face when he thought about the fact that although in fact he had arranged his plans taking this monster into account. The huge wooden monster swung its limb. Steve looked up intently. The red-haired man opened his mouth. Joseph raised his head, looking up. Tree roots emerged from the sand. The protagonist spread his arms out. He ran towards the wooden boss, shouting that the last time he used joint attacks in situ, he had an idea. The protagonist flexed both arms, jumping up as he explained that in order to be prepared for anything in the dungeon, one must have items of different elements. The monster's roots rushed towards the guy as Luke advised him to stop. The red-haired man looked down as he cursed in his mind and thought that he hoped that by trying to stop him, he didn't reveal the fact that he already knew what this boss's gimmick was. The dark roots of the monster rushed upward. The protagonist cut them with his blade. A lighter appeared in someone's hand. The protagonist swung, clenching his fist. He leaned forward, throwing it, calling for him to catch it. The item fell into the boss's mouth. The tree's bark began to bulge. Its trunk grew in size. Sweat appeared on Joseph's face. A huge bright sphere appeared in front of the people. There was smoke everywhere. The guys watched it. A system window appeared above the protagonist, which said that there were 3 replacement dolls left. Then he admitted that it was dangerous. A wooden hidden boss appeared in front of the guy, who thought about what was happening and how this monster seemed to have become stronger. Luke gritted his teeth, looking ahead as he cursed, realizing that he twisted his ankle in the explosion. The red-haired man looked at the brunette and thanked him, wondering how long until the enemy saves him. The protagonist smiled when he replied that it was okay, after all, they were one team. The 3 boys were standing nearby when the spy decided that it didn't matter and that for now he would help him deal with the tree, so to speak, he would repay the favor for the favor, summing up that it shouldn't be considered betrayal of William. The huge monster towered in front of them. Steve looked forward seriously when he cursed, saying that this boss had modes for both melee attacks and attacks at a distance. Luke pointed at the monster when he asked him not to worry, explaining that, judging by his observations, it had rather weak defense in close combat. The monster's face was shown up close when he added that they just needed to choose the right moment and finish it off. The boys were standing in the middle of the desert when the guy answered that it was not for nothing that he worked in these parts for so many years. Luke looked at the protagonist when he asked if he understood that if the attack was not successful, then they would not have time to hide from the explosion. The dark-haired boy looked forward as he suggested that they should give it their all in that case. A white bolt of energy flew off the tree. The boys tried to dodge it by jumping. The roots of the wooden boss appeared in front of them. The man in the cloak swung his blade as he said he would attack the outer branches to distract him and provoke an explosive attack. He cut the roots, swinging his sword as Steve said he would help too, then Luke told the brunette that the rest was on him. Joseph's eyes lit up as he replied that he understood. The boy ran towards the dark roots. The boy in the bandage crossed his arms, using a new angry shadow. The sharp roots headed towards the boys. A stream of light energy rushed towards the monster. The hidden boss threw bolts of energy. The protagonist's eyes glowed yellow. A powerful explosion occurred. Luke raised his fist to his face. The brunette soared into the air, rushing forward. He plunged the blade into the tree. The protagonist ran along the bark, cutting it. The body of the hidden boss was revealed. Joseph headed towards his comrades. There was smoke behind him. The guys looked carefully in one direction. Cracks appeared on the tree bark. Rays of light came out of them. A stream of energy rushed upward. The blue sphere was collapsing. Its glow began to fade. The protagonist ended up upside down. His comrades appeared behind him. The men were enveloped in white smoke. Parts of the tree lay on the sand. Steve and the protagonist looked in one direction. Sand was visible in the center of the smoke. The guys headed towards the body of the monster. The air above it sparkled. Joseph picked up the magic sphere when the system reported that the zero-gravity space is a space-cutting ball that creates an area of zero gravity with a diameter of 100 meters, and that all moving objects within this subspace enter a state of slow motion and weightlessness. The comrades were standing next to the guy when they said that it was finally over, after which they suggested that they leave. Luke looked ahead intently when he thought about how he had paid him his debt, and now he could finish it, and also about how he didn't even know if the guys were still waiting for him outside. The brunette stood in front of the men when he called them to follow him. Steve and Luke looked straight ahead when the boy asked where. The protagonist was flexing his arms when he answered that the next dungeon was coming and that he wanted to clear out all the dungeons to the west. There was a red dragon on top of the tower. The boy decapitated it. The dark-skinned warrior held a scepter in his hand. The comrades stepped away from him, taking the treasure. Then the system notifications appeared that everything was done perfectly. The protagonist stood in front of his comrades, crossing his arms. Luke and Steve smiled widely when they called him a real meat and a fierce guy, admitting that they didn't think they would get this far along this route. The boy in the blindfold held a map in his hand when he said that. Judging by it, the next dungeon was the westernmost in this area, and that further on there was only the border. The brunette raised his hand up when he exclaimed that this was great and that they would clear it out and be done with it. The castle towers were shown. The boys were walking down the street. The protagonist looked straight ahead. People were crowded in front of the monument. The blonde turned around, looking back. The monster bared its sharp fangs. A dragon appeared above the city. It grabbed the girl in the pink dress. The lizard spread its wings, heading forward. It flew over the desert. The bearded man opened his mouth wide and shouted the name of Princess Jenny. The crowd of people stood with their backs turned when the protagonist asked what that was. He and Steve looked ahead when the comrade replied that the scene looked like an in-game video, and then wondered where something like that would come from in the dungeon. Luke looked shocked when he started talking. The men stood in front of them when they were called foreign warriors and asked if they would like to kill the evil dragon and save the princess. Steam came out of the lizard's nostrils. The dragon suddenly opened its mouth wide. A yellow light appeared in the sky. The lizard flew towards the guy. The protagonist gritted his teeth, looking ahead. He quickly ran. The red dragon bent its paws, growling. Sweat appeared on the protagonist's face. The monster's paw appeared in front of him. Joseph took a step, coming out of the smoke. He looked ahead with anger. The guy deftly moved along the monster's body. His comrades looked ahead carefully. The protagonist crouched, holding the blade. He ran along the dragon's flesh. The protagonist approached its open mouth. The bearded man looked out from behind cover when he said that he had just seen with his own eyes how the brave hero slew the evil dragon with a sword, and that he believed that he could save the princess. The three guys stood nearby when Steve said that he talked like an NPC from a video game, and that it seemed like a dungeon with a story. Joseph looked seriously at Luke when he asked what was going on, adding that he looked like he had seen a ghost. The companion stood in front of the crowd when he spoke about his son. The protagonist and Steve stared ahead when they asked him again. Luke closed his eyes, crying when he explained that many years ago his son went exploring the western dungeons and has been missing since then, and that all these years he has been scouring these dungeons looking for his son. Kane looked at him and said that he did not know him. The red-haired man looked surprised when he asked him again, saying that he was his father. Luke turned to the protagonist, who asked him to stop crying and wipe his snot, because it looked disgusting. Kane handed the man an object and offered to wipe it with. There was something white in the bag. When he asked what it was, he assumed it was a cookie. The bearded man opened his mouth and explained that it was not a cookie, but a compressed magic carpet. He walked up to the fountain with the monument. A red carpet appeared over the water. Joseph stared ahead. A view of the city opened up. Frowning, the hero wondered where such a strange phenomenon came from in the dungeon. The man stretched his hand forward. The man frowned and screamed. Closing his eyes, Steve asked that he must have gotten something wrong. How could a non-player character in the dungeon be his son? Putting his hand to his face, the protagonist thought that they really did look like non-player characters. Apparently, when he cried bitterly, he was simply uttering a line set for him. A view of the settlement opened up. Standing in front of the hero, Steve asked what he was doing. Stretching his hand out to the side, Joseph said that he was just an indifferent character, therefore he did not react to his actions, he simply uttered preset lines. The man looked ahead in bewilderment. Raising his hand, the guy said that it was still strange that he was behaving like this. Everyone they had met in the dungeons before interacted with them somehow. Frowning, the hero asked if he had ever heard of such a thing. Buildings appeared, and he heard that no, he had never heard of dungeons with a plot. Looking to the side, the protagonist said that they would go, first kill the local boss, and then maybe figure out what was going on here. They were flying on a magic carpet. Suddenly, a drone appeared from behind the arch. It was watching them. A view of the desert opened up. People were lying in sleeping bags. The girl stood up, hearing the notification. The guy frowned. Looking at the squad, he said that he told them to deal with Joseph, why he never received news from them. Looking straight ahead, the girl replied that she did not even know how. Frowning, William asked why they still had not done this. The view of the building opened up. It was heard that the thing is that Brother Klaus entered the dungeon with them but they never came out. Gritting his teeth, the guy added that they still haven't come out. The three of them are having fun cleaning out dungeon after dungeon or something. Stretching his hand forward, he said that he needed to read the message, he would contact them later. Putting her hands on her hips, the girl asked that they were definitely keeping an eye on the entrance. Were they sure they didn't come out? Gritting his teeth, the man said that it wasn't his turn last night. Frowning, the guy said that yes, he hadn't slept, he had all the time. Clenching his fist, William said that they were a bunch of idiots, they had already reached the westernmost dungeon. Stretching his hand forward, he added that they should go after them, finish off Joseph already. The squad moved forward. The car suddenly rushed forward. She jumped up. Looking to the side, the girl asked if she could handle it alone. Walking forward, she added that it could be very dangerous, she did not have to follow her. Frowning, Kate said that she and Joseph had been friends since childhood, so she could not come to his aid. A view of a high-rise building opened up. The man was sitting at the table. He was looking at the tablet. It was said about the incident in the western dungeon. Suddenly a message appeared that the entire group was destroyed. Joe's eyes widened in amazement. Clenching his fist, he said that since everything was not so simple there, he would have to go himself. The man exclaimed in surprise, hearing that he would advise him not to get involved in this matter. Standing behind him, the stranger said that it was better not to make any sudden movements, he was just getting better, there was no need to aggravate the situation. To which Joe replied that what was he even counting on, that he would just put up with it. Holding the knife to his throat, the man said that whether he would resign himself or not was not so important now. Stretching his hand to the side, he added that however, taking the man by the shoulder, the stranger said that they should not explore the western dungeons, he would insistently ask him to recall his people. Standing behind him, Joe shouted that anyone can freely explore the western unattended dungeons. This is a general rule for everyone, no one has the right to impose such restrictions. Looking to the side, the man asked what that means. He will not give the order to his people to return. Looking straight ahead, he added that perhaps a good reason for their return would be the news of his death. Suddenly, Joe activated the body enhancement. He swung his fist sharply. The man snapped his finger. The man's eyes widened in amazement. Suddenly he was cut into pieces. A view of the blue sky opened up. The hero was sitting on the carpet of the plane. They sharply sank down. Falling down, the protagonist said that after completing the dungeon, the NPCs should update. Perhaps after that it will become clear whether the shorty was his son. A view of stone cliffs opened up. Frowning, the man thought, damn, he had to infiltrate them as a spy, but in the end, they were standing in front of a tunnel. Looking at the map, Steve asked that this was apparently the dragon's cave. A glow appeared in the distance. It was heard that, apparently, the boss's element is fire. The protagonist clenched his fist tightly. They examined the dungeon. Joseph opened his eyes in bewilderment. The girl was tied with chains. She was unconscious. Smiling, the man asked that they just had to free her, and the dungeon would be completed. Frowning, the hero replied that it was unlikely to be that easy. First they would clearly be trapped. Standing near the lava, the protagonist added that she was hung as bait. It is not yet clear whether she is alive, and the enemy is nowhere to be seen. The man took a step forward. The rock fell into the lava. It slowly melted. Looking straight ahead, Luke said he was right. He hurried. Frowning, Steve asked if she was alive. The princess was unconscious. Suddenly, a rock hit her head. The hero threw the rock up. Looking at it, the guy asked what he was doing. She was a tied-up hostage, and he was throwing rocks at her. Looking straight ahead, the protagonist answered that she was just an NPC. He was just trying to wake her up. Suddenly, the path began to fall down. She fell into the lava. Joseph looked at her in confusion. The monster raised its paw. Its eyes lit up brightly. The dragon flew up. Smiling, the hero said, "Here comes the boss." Suddenly, flames appeared from the dragon's mouth. He abruptly released them. The people opened their eyes in amazement. The protagonist began to run away from the flames. They jumped up. The flame hit right in front of them. The lava went down. The hero stood in front of the cliff. The rocks under the man's foot cracked. Suddenly he started falling backwards. Steve stretched his arms forward and shouted for help. The protagonist extended his hand to him. He grabbed the guy abruptly. The dragon looked at them. Luke looked at him in fear. Gritting his teeth, he thought, okay, he'll consider himself returning the favor. Suddenly a tornado appeared in front of him. The guys flew up. The protagonist fell to the ground. Smiling, the guys thanked him. The man looked at them in bewilderment. The dragon headed towards Joseph. The hero frowned, looking at him. Steve stretched his hand forward and shouted about the angry shadow. The monster turned its head to the side. The protagonist looked to the side. Suddenly he started hitting the dragon. Joseph swung his hand. He tightly clutched the weapon in his hands. The hero clenched his teeth. The monster looked at him furiously. Suddenly the protagonist struck him. The monster gritted its teeth in pain. A bright glow appeared. Frowning, the protagonist thought, damn. He jumped up sharply. The man looked at him in amazement. Joseph landed on the ground. He was lying with his feet up. Taking a step forward, the hero said that his weak spot was on his head. Holding the weapon in his hands, he added that he should hit right at the mark on the top of his head. Steve rushed forward and shouted that he should hold on. The monster looked at them angrily. The protagonist smiled broadly. Rushing forward, he gave the command. Suddenly, blows flew at the monster. The dragon's eyes glowed red. The people swung their weapons at him. A glow appeared around his hand. The guy used the skill. The dragon's head suddenly trembled. He looked to the side. Swinging his weapon, the protagonist shouted that now. Luke looked down angrily. The monster was hit hard twice. Blood was coming out of its head. Suddenly it started to disappear. The monster fell to the ground. It started to crumble into small particles. The particles were flying in the sky. Looking straight ahead, Luke asked if it was over, to which Steve added that it was really that simple. Frowning, the hero thought, why didn't the reward appear? The box was on the ground. Looking at it, the protagonist asked what it was. Lightning appeared around the box. Joseph threw the box aside. Suddenly, smoke appeared around the box. It started to burn. The people looked away, hearing a cry for rescue. The princess screamed, her eyes wide open. Rushing forward, Luke replied that they would save her now. Frowning, the hero thought that something was wrong. Standing in front of the girl, the man said that she was safe. Looking straight ahead, Jenny laughed. Suddenly, she transformed into a snake. The protagonist looked at him in surprise and thought that was it. The people froze in amazement in front of the monster. They quickly jumped to the side. Joseph extended his hand forward. He swung it towards the monster. The creature smiled widely. The hero looked at her. His gaze froze in surprise. The monster stuck out its tongue. The creature stood in front of them. Suddenly, its head shrank. The girl smiled widely. Lowering her head, she laughed. Sitting on the ground, the man asked what was going on here, to which the protagonist replied that she looked crazy. This must be the hidden boss. Steve looked at him in surprise and asked how he figured that out. Standing behind him, Joseph replied that all the previous dungeons included two types of constituent elements. Firstly, monsters, and secondly, rewards. All normal dungeons consist of this. Standing in front of the girl, he added that in this case, after killing the dragon, which they considered the boss, they did not receive a reward. It should not be like this. Frowning, the guy said that now it is clear why many who wandered into this dungeon never returned from here. There is an additional trap. Looking straight ahead, the man thought that the boy was a good boy. Without him it was possible to die. Standing in front of them, the girl laughed. Suddenly, she swung the chains. Raising her hand up, the princess said that it is curious. He is the first to guess her true nature. Smiling, she added that she is amazed that he was able to advance so far. Gritting her teeth, Jenny said that now he will have to engage in a fight with her. Raising her hands up, she laughed. Swinging the chains, the girl asked that they are ready to die. She frowned angrily. The protagonist looked at the chains in surprise. Suddenly, a blow flew at him. Joseph put his hands out to the sides. He slid along the ground. The girl puffed out her cheeks. Suddenly, she spat poison. The poison flew towards the fighters, to which Steve said, "What an abomination, it will distract her." The guy frowned. The man looked at the slime in amazement. The liquid flew at the guy. Steve screamed, his eyes wide open. The people froze in bewilderment. Frowning, the guy asked that this liquid was toxic. Looking at him, the hero exclaimed. Luke looked angrily and thought, damn, now he is in debt to this fat man. Looking at the hero, he added that he should fight Jenny. The girl hit the ground with a chain. Looking straight ahead, Steve said that he should not do anything stupid. Stretching his hand forward, the protagonist asked why her chains. Standing in front of the girl, he added that they were of different lengths. Frowning, the man said that now was not the time to be distracted by that. Standing behind the hero, the guy said that he was right. He thought there was a reason why one chain was short and the other long. Putting his hand to his face, he added that the long chain was used for ranged attacks, and the short one for close combat. With such a set, she can be classified as a strong boss. Frowning, Luke said that he would be able to neutralize her attacks from a distance. Standing next to him, the hero replied that he could hold her off in close combat. But what should they do when she starts injecting poison? Clenching his fist, the protagonist said that he had an idea. Standing in front of him, the girl replied that their discussions were pointless. Anyway, they were all going to die here today. Frowning, Joseph said that he expected him to take her attack with the long chain, to which the man responded approvingly. Suddenly, Jenny swung her chains. She clenched her teeth angrily. Luke swung his sword. A typhoon appeared in front of him. The chains got stuck inside him. Raising her hand up, the girl asked him if he wanted to engage in close combat with her. The protagonist crouched down on the ground. Suddenly, he rushed forward. Frowning, the girl shouted for him to die. A blow flew at Joseph. Smiling, he said that at least he could compensate for the damage with a substitute doll. The girl looked at him in surprise and asked again. Raising her head up, she shouted that he was so naive. That was not all. The hero was holding a bag in his hands. He bent down to the ground. The protagonist swung his hand sharply. Jenny opened her eyes wide. Luke frowned and said that it was the same. Joseph was standing near the fountain. A magic carpet appeared on the water. Smiling, the man shouted about it. The guy looked forward happily. Jenny frowned in pain. She stretched her arms out to the sides. The hero swung his weapon sharply. Beams from the blows appeared. The protagonist slid along the ground. Particles appeared around the box. Joseph turned around in amazement. Frowning, he asked what it was. A glow suddenly appeared from the box. The people looked at it in amazement. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to collapse. Gray smoke appeared around the people. A passage appeared in the distance. The hero opened his eyes in surprise. The doors began to slowly open. They stood in front of the passage. Entering inside, the protagonist asked where they were. He looked ahead in bewilderment. The monsters were in capsules. Bubbles were flying around them. Running up to the capsule, the man shouted about his son. The guy closed his eyes. The hero clenched his teeth. Standing in front of the window, he asked what kind of dungeon this was anyway. Standing behind him, Steve said that the border of the westernmost dungeon should end here. So where did this door lead them? The man turned his head to the side. Suddenly, they heard a loud scream. Luke fell to the ground. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Crouching on the ground, the protagonist asked what was wrong with him, to which the man replied that he seemed to remember something. Putting his hand to his face, he added that many years ago, this was a region with dungeons for free exploration. A river appeared. It was heard that the territory under the country's control ended here. People were standing on a mountain. It was said that but then the country's military took over this place, and the research stopped. The man was holding a device in his hands. The girl was lying on the ground. It was heard that the military made this dungeon experimental, for which they used local residents. Lowering his head, Luke said that this was an artificial dungeon, to which the hero asked who was capable of doing such a thing. Frowning, the man replied that the first military commander of Country X, a rank S hunter. The car drove forward. Looking to the side, the girl asked why the signal was so bad here. You can't even send a message home. People looked at the illustration. With wide eyes, Kate asked what those three were doing there. Sitting behind the wheel, Amanda asked again that maybe they were streaming a walk in the desert. The car passed by the people. Gritting his teeth, William asked why they had lost them. Flexing his fists, he added that they were such idiots, they couldn't even handle such a simple task. The guy shuddered and asked what he was doing here. The device moved forward. It was heard that they had already found his experimental site. He had failed the task. The young man's eyes widened. He shouted that no, he was asking him to give him another chance. Suddenly, the hologram disappeared. Frowning, the girl asked what was going on. Suddenly, the guy was pierced through. He was tied up by the device. William gritted his teeth, hearing that he had already given him new power. Looking at him, the hunter said that they needed to kill everyone in the experimental dungeon. The people looked at him in fear, hearing this. The guy stretched his arms out to the sides. Standing in front of him, the girl asked what this meant, what the three of them should do now. The people were standing near the capsules. Steve closed his eyes and said that everything was very bad. They had wandered into a secret military territory. They needed to get out quickly. The protagonist looked at him and asked if this wasn't a great field for research. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. They looked in amazement. The entrance began to close. Green liquid splashed out of the capsules. The man clenched his fists. He screamed furiously. The creatures were released from the capsules. Frowning, the guy screamed, "Damn it, now they were really stuck." The people clenched their teeth. They slowly moved forward. The creatures gradually approached them. Clenching his fists, the hero screamed that they had nowhere to retreat, they would have to fight. Suddenly, something thundered on the ceiling. A teleporter appeared on it. He began to descend. Steve's eyes widened and he screamed that a spatial teleporter is a key technology of the military of X countries. A bright glow appeared on the ceiling. Suddenly, a beam hit the ground. The portal fell to the ground. The doors to it opened. William came out of it. He took a step forward. The protagonist froze, watching him. The guy looked forward furiously. Suddenly, he lowered his head. The young man tensed his hand. His eyes filled with anger. The creature stood in front of the people. The squad froze in bewilderment. Frowning, Luke thought, William, why did he come himself? It's time for him to reveal his cards. No, these guys saved him more than once. Looking to the side, he added that he did not want to fight them under any circumstances. Holding a weapon in his hands, the hero turned to him. Raising his eyebrows, the protagonist asked that he came to finish what he started. Standing behind him, Steve said that he should stop. He looked more like the local experimental characters than like himself. Suddenly, the guy's eyes lit up red. The letter X appeared on the pupils. The monsters stood in front of the squad. The eyes of the creatures lit up. Suddenly, they rushed forward. Luke lowered his head and said that it was a curse. Gritting his teeth, he added that he had to find a way to save his son. The man struck the creature. The monster flew to the side. It began to fall backwards. Luke caught it. The creatures ran forward at a rapid pace. Steve stretched his arms out to the side and said that just after William's eyes turned red, the others also immediately went crazy. Frowning, Joseph replied that he understood. They had to eliminate him first. He rushed forward sharply. The man fell to the ground. The hero swung his weapon and screamed. The guy stretched his arms out to the sides and exclaimed. Looking at him, the protagonist wondered why he had become so slow. Suddenly, William blocked his blow. He raised his head up. Tentacles appeared from the guy's back. Joseph asked again with his eyes wide open. The guy's eyes lit up brightly. The hero jumped up sharply. The protagonist jumped to the side. Frowning, he wondered how he had turned into such a monster. The guy's eyes lit up brightly. Suddenly, something thundered on the ceiling. Joseph raised his head up. Opening his eyes in surprise, he asked what was going on. The guy was standing in front of them. Devices appeared on his tentacles. William put his hands out to the sides. He was holding a huge gun in his hands. The hero froze in amazement. The camera was looking straight ahead. The man was watching what was happening. Videos from the cameras appeared. The man reached out to the control panel. The girl was sitting behind the wheel. Information about her appeared. Frowning, the hunter said that at the moment she still had practical value. He stood still. The man touched the screen. The man looked forward angrily. The people were standing in front of the creatures. William's eyes lit up brightly. He was holding a gun in his hands. Looking at him, the hero shouted that they should take care of themselves. Suddenly, the guy fired the gun. The protagonist clenched his teeth. A bright glow appeared. Joseph frowned. A bright beam flew between the people. William grinned slightly. The beam bounced off the floor. The hero ducked from the blow. He looked to the side in amazement. Suddenly, the protagonist jumped up. He slid along the ground. Joseph ducked down. He looked in surprise. Looking at the beams, the hero thought that he needed to think of something urgently. The shells bounced off the walls. The protagonist clenched his teeth. He frowned angrily. A blow flew at the creatures. A glow appeared around the man. He fell to the ground. Jenny fell to the floor. Joseph quickly ran forward. Steve bounced off the blow to the side. Turning around, he asked that he had any ideas what to do. Frowning, the guy added that they wouldn't be able to dodge laser shells ricocheting off the walls of a confined space for long. William pointed the gun towards the hero. The protagonist clenched his teeth. Steve, looking at him, shouted what he was doing. Joseph started running towards the guy, shouting that after turning into a monster, he became much slower, and so, kicking him with his foot, he added that let him die from his own weapon. The guy fell to the ground. The charge flew towards him. William screamed in pain. A bright glow appeared. Suddenly, a devastating explosion thundered. The people fell to the floor. The hero got into a fighting stance. They looked at the gray smoke. From it appeared the image of a man. Frowning, the protagonist asked again. William held the gun on his shoulder. Looking straight ahead, the guy said that they barely dodged one ricocheting shell, but if he continues to fire. Holding the gun in his hands, Joseph replied that he wanted to try something. His eyes suddenly lit up. The guy sharply fired the gun. The hero rushed towards him. He swung his weapon sharply. The protagonist raised his sword above his head. The guy stretched his hand forward in fear. Suddenly Joseph cut off his hand. William looked away in amazement. The hand fell to the floor. Holding it in his hands, the hero thought that since his skin was able to reflect a laser projectile. The guy lowered his head down. He frowned furiously. William pointed the gun forward. Suddenly a sphere flew out of it. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist said that this was a chance. He deftly blocked the attack. The sphere rushed towards the guy. A bright flame